Hello, everybody. Welcome back to CUBECon. Andy Mangold here in the booth with Emma Partlow, who
Hello.
traveled across the ocean here to be with us today at
Yep.
CUBECon.
4,000 miles away.
That's good. It's not the longest someone traveled to be here.
My cube now has air miles. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and traveling with your cube, not always the most fun thing. So we're glad you're here. Glad
Thank
you
you.
came out to this event. We are here with our last draft of the day. We are 2 drafts in. This is the 3rd draft of the day, and we are going to be watching Reed Duke, who has basically not lost a match all weekend. He did drop a match by going to do something else. So took a match loss to go take care of something.
Took some magic. Did some magic trivia in one of the panels.
Exactly. So that was a loss,
Yep.
technically on the books. But if he's actually sitting at the table, if he shows up, he has not dropped a match all weekend. And we're going to be watching him draft the regular cube, designed by Anthony Maddox of Lucky Paper Radio. This cube, Emma, is something I've played a whole bunch.
Yep.
I've played this cube many, many times. And it really feels like something like Time Spiral Remastered or like a Modern Horizons draft format. One of these
Ooh, okay.
more complicated, a little more rich, a little more powerful draft formats than a typical draft format, but still very much limited style Magic. And I think you like limited style Magic from your Peasant Cube I played earlier.
I like a lot of what they call bread and butter limited. So stuff with lots of permanents, lots of creatures, lots of combat. Just nice, just ways to just have some inevitability and close out those games with just being aggressive or just having a bunch of creatures.
Yeah, so this cube, I think, is actually probably one of the more skill-testing cubes here.
Oh, okay.
A lot of the more powerful cubes, if you're trying to run the most powerful cards in Magic's history,
Yep.
if you want to play Ragavan or Fable the Mirror Breaker or your what have yous, then you're kind of accepting a certain amount of variance in the power curve, right?
Yep.
Ragavan's a lot better than the 6th best red 1 drop in Magic. That's just how it goes.
Yep.
This cube is at a lower power level. We are not going to see some of the common vintage cube cards in this list. There's no Lightning Bolt, there's no Counterspell, there's no Snapcaster Mage. Instead, everything is tuned down a little bit, but because of that, it's a much narrower power level band.
Yep.
And because of that, I think it's a very, very skill-testing environment that I think we're going to see Reed Duke shine at.
Yep. Oh, we'll see if Rejic actually drops around today or this
yeah,
weekend.
I mean, we're going to get to watch. So we'll be following Reed's draft, and then we're going to follow Reed's round 1, and then we're going to follow the winner of each round. So
Probably
if,
Rejic, let's be honest.
Honestly, I would love to watch Reed Duke play 3 rounds at this cube.
Yep.
I would love to see how he handles this environment. So part of me wishes that happens, but, we love an underdog story here in America. So I would also not be mad to see somebody take the crown from Reed Duke, give him his first match loss of the weekend, remind him that he's not the only good Magic player here at CubeCon in Madison. Security! Security!
Give him some Fraben inspectors.
J-Bro, of course, the grand poobah of CubeCon here, one of the organizing members that have made this whole event happen. Want to give a quick shout out to NRG, who has helped us with all of the coverage this weekend. This whole team has been fantastic. The setup is great. The monitors are great. Very thankful to everybody on that team for putting in their hard work and making this coverage happen. So, let's talk about some of the best decks in this cube before we get into this draft. Like I said, think retail limited, but a little more powerful, a little plussed up. But and you can take away some of the dregs. You're not going to have the D- cards you end up running just because you have nothing else but to find playables. But just kind of that middle meaty part of the curve in retail limited. I think one of the best decks here is a red-black sacrifice kind of aristocrats deck.
Sure.
Unlike a lot of other very synergy-driven cubes, the decks here are varied. They're diverse. So you can play red-black and not be playing sacrifice at all.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, there's little
cool.
sacrifice themes woven through here. There's little heroic themes. There's little spells matter themes. There's little draw your second card a turn themes. But ultimately, the drafter is going to have to combine these in new and weird and interesting ways because the designer of this cube does not like to commit whole hog to just individual archetypes so that the one color combination always drafts the same way.
Okay, that's interesting. That means we'll get some nice diversity in our games when we go down to the booth.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways you can make a successful deck here. So red-black is great. Most people think that right now the best card in the cube is Legolas Master Archer from Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
It's in the cube because one of the biggest differences between this cube and a lot of other cubes here this weekend is that there's no ramp in green. There's no ramp really happening in this cube at all. So green is a color all about creature combat, all about playing efficient threats, and as such is a lot more aggressive than we're used to seeing in the cubes we've been covering this weekend.
That would be good.
Then we've got a control deck. You can definitely play something that resembles control. It tends to be more of a tap-out control deck in this cube than a draw-go control. You're not just playing counterspells and board wipes and answering every single one of your opponent's threats. It's more like you're playing Mole Drifters and targeted removal for the stuff you have to get rid of, and you're just trying to go a little bigger and outpace your opponent by having the better threats and going into the late game. Then there's red.
Yes.
Red is always capable of being aggressive. There's that red-black deck I mentioned. Red-white and red-green, I think, are the two most aggressive decks in the cube.
Okay.
That Naya color triangle is where you're going to find the most aggression in this environment, and that's where we can get any combination of those being aggressive. And I hope we get to see an aggressive green deck because we're used to seeing aggressive red decks. We're used to seeing aggressive white decks. Very common in a lot of cubes, but the aggressive green cards here, I think, can really show what's different about this cube from other environments.
Be nice to see. A lot of people assume green does ramp, and it does that really well. It would just be nice to see a green-white heroic deck, like a Bogle-style deck that can just wants to go wide, wants to beef up some creatures, and just turn sideways.
The other thing I would love to see is there is a card that's a relatively recent addition to this cube, which is Ivy Gleeful Spell Thief.
Ooh, okay, that's a fun one.
And that card copies spells that target it, and you can target other things with those copies. So you can turn your your combat tricks, your pump spells into things that copied. You can copy your auras even. It'll copy an aura and then make a token of that aura that'll come into play. So there's like a Curiosity-style deck. Thank you, production, for bringing that one up. There's like a Curiosity-style deck here that I think is quite good if you can get it, but hasn't been fully tested in our local playgroup yet. So I'm curious to see if somebody pulls this off and makes it really shine. We should be on the lookout for a couple of cards that we're breaking Singleton for.
Okay.
There are 8 Prismatic Vistas in this list.
Okay, fixing's good then.
Yeah, the fixing is good. So there's no regular fetch lands, no, Onslaught / Zendikar style fetch lands. But instead there are 8 Prismatic Vistas, mainly to help bolster sort of landfall strategies without giving every deck access to abundant fixing. 2 colors is very common here.
Yep.
3 is a little harder because Prismatic Vista not as good for your splash color because
no, so it only gets basics.
Only gets basics, and if you have to play a basic of your splash color, you're not as happy to do that because it might be in your opening hand, kind of throws off your mana base. So the Prismatic Vistas have that effect of being much better in the 2-color decks than they are in the 3, 4, or 5-color decks. There's also, I think, 4 copies of Ash Barons for similar
okay, that's
reasons.
interesting, yeah.
So the abundant fixing cares about what basic land types you have,
Yeah.
which means that it's going to be, again, much better for those fewer color decks than those many color decks. I've played this cube a lot. Emma, do you have any questions about it that I can maybe answer for you or answer for our viewers?
So, as you played this cube quite a bit, do you have a favorite archetype you like to draft with this cube?
I love to play the blue-red Spellslinger deck in this cube.
Ooh, okay.
And this does have a lot of the cards you might be expecting, your young Pyromancers and whatnot, and just, play counter spells, play burn spells, play things that benefit from you casting a lot of spells. I am like give me a deck, a 40-card deck with 6 cantrips, and I'm happy. I love to have some card selection, hit my land drops, and not be stuck top decking. That's one of the worst feelings to me is like, I have no control. I hope I draw a good card. Never want to feel that.
Spoken like a true blue mage. And another question, I guess, I'd like to... So we talked about like how Legolas Master Archer is probably one of the best cards in this cube.
Absolutely.
Is there other cards people in the main feature area should be looking out for or looking to build around?
Absolutely. So a card I really love, which is kind of in a similar space, is Illuminator Virtuoso.
Yep.
This card, seeing some play in Pioneer, saw some play in Standard, and another payoff for combat tricks, for targeting your own creatures, getting those connives, giving that double strike. Really, really explosive card that can do a lot. A card that often goes underappreciated here is Untethered Express.
Oh, Pain Train.
The Pain Train. A lot of the removal in this cube is for smaller creatures because the curve is lower.
Yeah.
It's not that the curve is lower in the sense that it's a really fast cube. We're not going to see super fast games. But instead, there's not a lot of 6-drops running around, not a lot of 5-drops running around. So once you get to attack with this thing, turn it into a 5 toughness creature. If you're on the attack, your opponent's never going to have a sorcery speed window where you can interact with the train.
Yep.
So now you're on just instant speed removal that can deal with something with 5 toughness, which has a pretty narrow range of answers in this cube. So
also it has trample, so it's gonna push in some damage, and it's just if you don't deal with it, the game's over.
And we mentioned that those red-black token generating aristocrat style decks are some of the better things you can be doing, and the train just laughs right in the face of that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Throw your goblin tokens on the tracks of this train. That's fine. We are unbothered by that.
I'm getting flashbacks from Kaladesh Limited now.
Yeah. Another card I love here that I think people maybe don't appreciate the power level of is Saddled Rhymestag.
Okay.
This is one of those commons or uncommons from Modern Horizons where I think a lot of times sets that aren't in Standard that you don't draft a lot of you don't often realize how powerful some of these commons and uncommons are. But Saddle Rhymestag, incredible in a beatdown deck. Enough of our blabbering, though. We are going down to the table, looking over Reed Duke's shoulder as we are drafting the regular cube. There may be some readers here for Reed, I will say.
Yeah.
Because, again, these cards are not complicated for the most part, but they are a lot of cards here that you will not see in typical powerful cubes.
He should be prepared after doing the Live the Dream cube on Thursday, because that has a lot of cards that aren't, you know, they're from supplemental sets and they're very like commander focused cards.
All right, looks like Reed has pulled Quick Study and launched the fleet to the front here, maybe considering one of those two. Quick Study, just an instant speed divination, a great addition to this cube. Grateful Apparition here, also pulled to the front. This is a great example, the Grateful Apparition. So there is not a deck that is all about +1/+1 counters in this cube.
Okay.
That proliferate rather on the Graceful Apparition is a sometimes treat, right? You'll have a couple things you can maybe make a little better with it, but you are not going to be able to draft an all-out +1/+1 counters deck in this environment.
What would you take here?
You know, I mentioned my proclivities, and I'm probably taking the Quick Study.
Sure. An instant speed divination is nice now. It took us 13 years to get one, but we finally got one.
Yeah, and I think it's a great card in this environment, and it also leaves you open to be more proactive if you want to have that blue-red tempo style deck, more controlling, pretty flexible. Whereas Launch the Fleet, Grateful Apparition, definitely much less flexible in terms of the kinds of decks they go in. I will say Graceful Restoration there, that black, white, gold card is a very powerful card in this environment.
Yeah.
Getting back 2 small creatures or 1 big creature, it's hard to come by 2-for-1s in this cube. There's not a lot of easy 2-for-1s. That's why Quick Study jumps out. Graceful Apparition for Reed Duke, though.
Here comes the pain train.
There is the Untethered Express we talked about. And Reed
puts it to the front.
It. He can't hear me, but he knows. He knows what's good. Also taking a second look at Fairy Vandal, it seems like.
We have a Sphinx Summoner. We have a Perilous Mirror, which seems pretty good. Captured by the Legax.
Yes.
Azorius Chancery is also fine.
Yeah, a lot of good. And Bolas the Citadel back there, one of the spicier inclusions in this cube.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
So, yeah, I think Captured by Legax is one of the better removal spells in this cube. We talked about the Train.
Yep.
One card that Reed maybe passed over that I think outperforms expectations is Perilous Mirror here.
Yes.
Combat matters so much. 2 damage matters so much. Also, if you're aggressive, it just becomes unblockable at some point because it's just going to kill you. So that card does a lot more than people expect. What do you like here, Emma?
I would take the Pain Train personally. I just based on what you've been saying, the fact that it's just so hard to remove and it just presents that inevitability. I want to end games, and I think the Untethered Express is a good start. It's also colorless, so we're not completely committed to white right now because we've only taken 1 card. I like taking this colorless option.
It also has +1/+1 counters, and we just have a Graceful Apparition, so we already got a little synergy going on.
Also, the flip side, the card's great. I don't want to die to it in this pod either.
True. Nothing more embarrassing than getting run over by a train. Looter Il Core pulled to the front here, along with Gutter Snipe, Planar Outburst. The board wipes in this environment start at 5 mana. There's nothing under 5 mana that can wipe the board. Fairy Guidemother, perhaps Reed looking to be an aggressive white deck based on the cards that seem to be being pulled to the front of the pack. There's a Flesh Taker.
Tide Hollow Scholar is a nice one as well. We're not committed to our second color. We're not even committed to our first color yet. But there is some nice options in white here.
Definitely a fork in the road here, right?
Yes.
Taking the Planar Outburst sends you down one path. Taking the Fairy Guidemother or the Flesh Taker or the Tide Hollow Scholar sends you down a very different path.
Yeah.
Even though they're both in the same color. And it looks like Reed perhaps looking to be more controlling.
Also, Planar Outburst does not destroy the Untethered Express because it's a vehicle. So you can just keep that back and then just play something in crew and just
absolutely
keep dealing damage. Hopeful Initiate's really nice here because we have some loose counters theme right now.
Reading Depose Deploy. One of these split cards that doesn't see as much love. One of the only uncards, I think the only uncard in the cube, Earl of Squirrel, a pet card of the designer. Not particularly good in my personal opinion. Don't think we'll see Reed being drawn in by that here.
I do like this Hopeful Initiate. I know we have some loose counters. Untethered Express also makes counters, so we can remove those to deal with any artifacts and enchantments.
And it is, in fact, Hopeful Initiate for Reed Duke.
One thing people don't realize with Hopeful Initiate is that you can remove counters from any of your creatures, not just Hopeful Initiate itself.
Absolutely.
I've seen that crop up before.
Here's a Sunbaked Canyon and a Yoshin. What's the name of that card again? The front. It's one of those
Ooh, got a
unearthed
Fiend Hunters.
creatures.
Yeah, it's from the Brothers War. It's a colorless one, I believe.
Frontliner. Yoshin Frontliner
Yeah.
is the card. Looks like a Sunbaked Canyon for Reed Duke. Passing up that Fiend Hunter, too.
Yep. Reed likes to eat his vegetables.
There's one of those multiple copies of Ash Barons we talked about. Taking a good read of Flare Husk here, a card that definitely does work.
Here's a card that you would like to pick, I imagine, in Sprite Dragon.
Yeah, if I saw a Sprite Dragon this late, there'd be no stopping me from playing blue-red.
Yeah.
And then Audric's Outrider also pulled to the front. Or do we take a Fixing Land? What do you like here, Emma?
I like the Ash Barons. I'm someone that likes to eat their vegetables. We're not pivoted into red, but Sunbaked Canyon's just great in like a mono white deck anyway. I like the Audric Audric Outrider here.
Looks like the Battlefield Forge, the red-white Fixing Land here for Reed Duke. So definitely leaning aggressive. And I'm not sure how much or if at all, if Reed's looked at this list before. I heard murmurs that Reed was not bothering to look at lists, just going to kind of go in blind and see.
That's pretty impressive
considering
Reed is 17-1 this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, when you're that good, I guess you don't have to do your homework.
No.
Arcbound Prototype and Feet of Resistance pulled to the front here.
Reckless Rage is also quite nice as well. If you've got all these counters coming around, 2 damage to your creature is nothing in comparison, and dealing 4 damage is quite nice.
That's a card that always impresses me in this cube.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's just instant speed bone shards. You're like, okay, fine, I'll kill my creature, but I get to kill your big thing. That's what matters.
It's also really nice in the heroic decks as well.
Fantastic in the heroic decks, and a lot of times you just have a 3 toughness creature, and you're like, well, fine, this is just a free, instant speed flame slash, basically.
He's eyeing up this Rugged Prairie as
Yeah,
well.
I
So it
think-
looks like we're going into Boris here.
Yeah, I think another fork in the road here. Are we going to try to be very heavily white or mono white, or actually try and lean into red? And we do have 3 Fixing Lands for red already, so
All pretty good ones as well.
yeah. And the fixing is not symmetrical in this cube. So the more aggressive colors have untapped Fixing Lands.
Yep.
The more controlling colors may have things like the Ravnica Bounce lands or creature lands, things that a slower deck would prefer.
Yeah. Expedite is a nice one if you go the heroic route.
And we do have that planar cleansing, which, taking on another board wipe here, the sort of red-white control deck is certainly something I have not seen happen here before, but
we also have one of the many copies of Prismatic Vista, which is also
still in the
good
pack.
deck.
To my surprise, to be honest. I mean, I think
Really?
it is a really high pick, the Prismatic Vistas here, because you'll play them in any deck pretty much, taking a second copy of that board wipe. So Reed making the assessment that this cube is entirely about creatures, pretty much.
Yep.
There are no alternate win conditions. You're not going to mill your opponent out. There is very little burn that goes directly to your opponent's face. So the way you're going to kill people is with your creatures. Reed may be saying, all right, well, let's just get rid of those.
Yep.
Then I can live forever.
And never lose.
Do you think Reed is looking to keep his options open here and say, maybe I'll be a red-white aggressive deck, maybe I'll be a white something control deck?
Well, we're definitely in white. I think that's clear.
For sure.
I think Reed is hedging on the fact there's going to be some nice red cards on the wheel by taking these Rugged Prairie and Sunbaked Canyons. But again, he's not like committed to that, right?
I guess my question is, do you think he intends to play aggressive red cards in the same deck as these board wipes, or do you think it's like, all right, I'm definitely playing white.
Yes.
I could take white in 2 directions. We'll see how the second pack shakes out to see if I'm going to actually play all these cards in the same deck.
For sure.
Or
He might not play the board wipes for what it's worth.
For sure, yeah.
He might have, for all we know, Reed could just be hate drafting them because he's just decided to be this aggro deck.
Yeah, it's true. Anything's possible. I think the best board wipe in this cube is by invitation only.
Sure, yes, that's a good one.
That one has a really
so
unique...
this launched the
fleet,
feet,
which
still in the
was-
pack.
Yeah, so I will say, I think if no one is touching the sort of aggressive heroic deck, then it can be the best deck at the table, and by a big margin.
Yeah.
It's the kind of deck that you need people to be competing over. Otherwise, you just get fed all the perfect pieces for it. And
Captured
the
is
by
back.
Legax is still here.
No one's respecting the
Oh
Legac.
my goodness gracious. With all this red-white fixing, too, not that hard to imagine Reed ending up in a sort of Naya aggressive deck.
Maybe like a Boris like splashing a green, maybe.
Yeah, I didn't mention earlier because I'd much rather watch Reed Duke draft than hear my thoughts of what I should take.
Yeah.
But the Capture by Legax would have been my pick after the Grateful
Yeah.
Apparition. Both the Train and the Capture by Legax work really well with the Proliferate.
Oh, we're taking the Gruul card.
Yeah, that is the split Gruul card that can either deal damage to a flyer or make a beast. I will pull up that name for us real quick here.
Looks like Reed also took the Fairy Guide Mother.
So the white cards are flowing.
Just waiting for our next pack here. We're definitely in white, and we're probably playing some heroic deck.
Yeah, I
There's just a lot of
believe
good
that
things around.
was Thrash Threat that we saw Reed Duke take. It looks very similar to Collision Colossus, both of which are in the cube. So
Yeah.
definitely one of the two. I believe it was Thrash Threat. Boone Satyr still in the pack.
Do love me a Boonsay. Bushwhack's also really nice. Not that we're going to be playing green, but it's a card worth noting.
Yeah, it seems like we're not playing green after not taking that capture by
Yeah.
Legax. I think Reed is off it, not interested in those cards. Though, you know, being a good Spike he is, still reading them all and considering them carefully.
A lot of green cards going around as well.
Yeah, like I said, I think if the players in this cube maybe don't know how the design principles behind this cube, it's very easy to not really understand what green is supposed to do.
Yeah.
Because you're expecting to see mana dorks or something. You're expecting to see 5, 6, 7 drops. They're just not here.
Yeah.
Here you're looking at really good 2 and 3 drops. Sylvan Advocate, Saddle Rhymestag, stuff like that. That's what green's all about.
So a lot of green cards going around.
All the fight spells wheeling. Somebody could have, was that a last pick white card?
Yeah.
Was that the Arcbound prototype?
That was, yes.
That seems like a great pickup for Reed Duke here.
So we're definitely in white. We have a bunch of board wipes, and we do have
was in fact the Arcbound prototype. So really great late pickup here for Reed Duke.
We're not married to these green cards, but they can see play.
It was in fact Thrash Threat. Thank you, Reed, for so graciously and clearly fanning out your cards. Reed, no stranger to playing on coverage, being a featured drafter. How do you feel about this start, Emma?
I think it's a pretty good start. It's wild to me that the launch of the fleet wheeled round. I think that's a really good sign that Reed is the white drafter at this table. I
would be very surprised if anybody else thought they were doing anything in the heroic vein.
Right, this is it. It would be good to get some red cards maybe if we're married to these land choices.
Yeah, we didn't see a lot of good red in this pack. But
Reckless Rage was the only one that came to mind. That didn't wheel, unfortunately.
Right, but that could mean that in this second pack, going the opposite direction, the people we were passing to also didn't see any red in those packs because we were passing the packs to them. So we could get fed a little bit of red in the second pack here, depending on how our players to the left have shaken out. I cannot wait to see if Reed builds this sort of creature-based, white, somewhat aggressive deck and main decks one or more board wipes.
Yep.
Which there's plenty of arguments to do that, but it'd be an interesting angle to take on this deck, and I'm really excited to see what happens.
Ooh, we have a Swift Spear.
On to pack 2 we go. Now going through quite a bit faster.
Got a Rimrock Knight, we've got a Monastery Swift Spear. We also have a Dragon's Rage Channeler. We're not kind of the Spells Matters deck. There's a lot of blue in this pack as well.
There's also just a Ginger Brute, which
Ginger Brute is also
being pulled
fine.
to the front here, this is just a good, colorless, aggressive threat.
It does also wear those auras pretty well, giving it pseudo haste as well.
Big round of applause going up in the venue right now for our staff, for all of our judges that have done such a great job this weekend running this event.
Judging cubes is not that easy. There's a lot of weird rulings and intricate nuances. So good job on the judges this weekend for keeping everything going.
Now maybe reconsidering some green cards. Amara, Soul of the Accord, and Hero of Lena Tower pulled to the front here. Hero of Lena Tower being a clear payoff for a heroic style deck. Amara more of a sort of good stuff, creature.
Makes tokens when it's tapped.
Really cool with the train, for what it's worth.
Yeah, it's really good with crew.
Which there's not a ton of vehicles running around, right? Again, there's not a vehicles theme here, so there's a vehicle here or there. You got the train, and Amara's a really good train conductor. We are learning tonight. Really sad to pass up on. Really sad, I would say, to not be the best deck to take advantage of this Dragon Race Channeler or Monastery Swift Spear.
There's some really nice red payoffs for that aggressive, even that Spells Matter style deck. We had the Sprite Dragon in the previous pack as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that me and this team would have a perfect deck, but of course not. Yeah, so still considering it nonetheless. I mean,
there comes a point where you have to decide which color you're going to be in, right?
It seems like Reed is really in a tank about this and going with the Dragon's Race Channeler. I like this pick.
I think it's a good pick.
We didn't take the green cards before. We have no fixing for green. We have kind of some free fixing for white. And I think what Reed might be responding to is the idea that that
Hole's nice here.
Portable Hole is going to be a great pickup if we
Yeah.
pick up that card. Is that Dragon's Rage Channeler is absolutely not going to be maximized the way it is in a more powerful cube.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
Everything here is scaled down a little bit. So
Fortunately, there's no red cards in this pack, but this Portable Hole is a really nice pickup.
yeah, I love Portable Hole here. We also have some green-white fixing lands if we do want to. I mean, reading the signals on the last pack saying green is open.
Yeah.
And, you know, every pick you take is also a hedge against your future picks. So if green remains open in these next 2 packs, then taking a Stirring Wildwood here could really pay off dividends for Reed.
Looks like Reed went for the Portable Hole. It's nice.
I like that pick.
Nice clean removal. It also triggers Dragon's Rage Channeler here as well.
Our white cards are going to be Law Rune Enforcer out of this pack. Precinct
Captain's a nice one.
One of the luxuries that Anthony, the designer of this cube, has is when you play at a lower power level, you can be more precise about where you put your power.
Yeah.
And a card like Precinct Captain is well above the curve for what 2-drops can do in this cube because it costs exactly white.
Yes.
And you have to be really committed to white to play that on turn 2.
And he's gone for it.
I mean, Reed is nothing in this draft if not committed to white.
Yeah. There hasn't been a lot of red in these packs, so maybe he's seeing the signals.
Yeah, and I do think red is one of the best colors in the cube because so much of its removal is so flexible and can play multiple roles. A lot of really good cards.
Heroic
for Reed
Reinforcement's a really nice one here.
Yeah, I mean, Heroic Reinforcements, Fledgling, Ardenvale Tactician, even Gird for Battle is really, really strong.
It's really good with this Hopeful Initiate that we picked as well.
Absolutely. I would expect that we can pretty safely wheel one of these 3 white cards.
Yeah, I would take the Reinforcements. The card is just...
I agree with you, and so does Reed. So, and that's the perfect card to splash in a mostly white deck with the 3 red-white fixing lands we already have.
Yeah. Oh, it's one of my favorite cards in the pack, Figure of Destiny.
Figure of Destiny right there.
Hopeful Favored Hoplite is a really nice heroic payoff as well.
Also seeing Prayer of Binding back there, and Oblivion Ring with Flash, and a little bit of life gain attached to it.
We are seeing a lot of green, but not much
There's
red.
that Saddle Rhyme Stag I mentioned. Figure of Destiny is the pick, a little unsurprisingly. I think that's quite a good pickup here.
Yeah.
Seems like Reed definitely, you know, committing to this aggressive line now. We may see those board wipes be sideboard cards when he's on the draw against certain matchups, or maybe end up being main decked for some reason. We'll see. I think we're going to get this Favorite Hoplite on the wheel. What do you think?
I agree. There's a lot of green cards in these packs, so no one's really fighting for green. But
no one took
no one's
Launch
fighting
the
for
Fleet in pack 1, so I think no one's
it.
going to take Favorite Hoplite in pack 2. Heartfire pulled to the front. Survivor of Corliss, another 1-drop, perhaps. Oh, Emma, it's your favorite.
It's my favorite card. We've got to take Fraven Inspector.
Fraven Inspector, and that's the pick immediately. Didn't even really take a second look at Oblivion Ring, Prismatic Vista.
He's got good taste. What
right
can I say?
Just, immediate pickup for Fraven Inspector, showing his great taste in class. A great pickup for this deck, too.
Yes.
Like I said, 2-for-1s are hard to come by here. And Thraben Inspector, albeit a little slow. I'm not insulting Thraben Inspector.
No, of course.
It is a little slow, though, but it is going to be a 1/2 and a card for 1 card's worth of investment. So that is a 2-for-1, and they're a little hard to come by in this environment. You got to work for them mostly.
Also, Reed just wants to establish a really low curve. He wants just to go 1, 2, 3, Heroic Reinforcements pop.
Yes. And so far, the deck is looking quite good, I dare say. I've heard that Reed has been drafting a lot of aggro this weekend.
Yes, I heard that too.
I think a lot of cube designers, or rather a lot of cube players, maybe like to do the more complicated, tricky stuff. And if you show up and you want to win,
sometimes you
maybe
just
draft aggro.
Like Reed played my cube yesterday. He played it twice, once extra by accident. And the second draft that he did was just like a mono red aggro deck because he just values that, aggro is also really good. I imagine there are people thinking, yeah, Reed's just going to force Jund every time and force the most mid-range of decks, which hasn't been the case here.
Yeah. Players taking their time here, making the right picks out of these packs, which you love to see.
Yeah.
I cannot overemphasize how thrilled I am to get to watch Reed Duke draft this cube,
right?
which I have played probably over 100 times, and see how my evaluations differ from Reed's. Weaponize the Monsters, a card that always impresses me in this cube. I think a lot of people look at it and say, well, this is just Goblin Bombardment at home.
Yes.
Why would I want Goblin Bombardment at home? And the reality in this cube is that the sort of combo potential of Goblin Bombardment doesn't exist here. You're not going to make 7 tokens in a turn and just immediately kill your opponent.
Yeah.
It's a much more sort of slow, value-oriented thing, and that being 2 damage instead of 1 damage, I think is well worth the investment of 2
Agreed.
mana.
It's a nice way to protect yourself from any removal, so you can just punish the opponent in the process.
Swift Blade Vindicator
Lose it,
here.
Virtuoso.
And Virtuoso.
Oh, this pack is
2 of the
gas.
best cards for the heroic deck. Which one do you take here?
I think I take the Virtuoso.
I think I do too. I mean, you're way more likely to wield the Vindicator,
This
right?
is it, right?
I mean, you got to be exactly red-white and still care about it. How many cards are left in this pack? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to get 1 card on the wheel?
Yeah.
2 cards on the wheel?
I think we are definitely in white, and Virtuoso is just so important for what we need to do.
It is not out of the question to get that back. There's a couple good cards still in this pack here.
Yeah.
I think maybe the one problem might be that no one's taking green cards. So
yeah.
that may be the reason we have no chance of getting that Vindicator back, but we will definitely be happy with the
Virtuoso is a very good pick here.
What a great card.
Doesn't this deck look nice?
I mean,
isn't it lovely?
I do love an aggro deck.
Me too.
You know, we're the same in that sense. You're preaching my choir.
I'm a big fan of lunch, you see.
Great curve from Reed here.
And you got this pain train at the top end as well, along with this heroic reinforcements.
For sure. And we got such great fixing in pack 1. None really coming in pack 2. We passed 1 Prismatic Vista.
I think we passed the second one as well. So, Reed doesn't need it because he got this Inspiring Vintage, which is also great for the aggro deck.
Emerge Unscathed.
Clarion Spirit is a really nice one.
I love Clarion Spirit with a curve like this.
I love Clarion Spirit too.
I think Reed is going to have no problems double spelling. And
once again, plays really well with that heroic reinforcements that we drafted.
It sure does. So, Clarion Spirit is the pick. Looking through the rest of the pack.
Hopefully get this.
I think there's only
advantage on the wheel, maybe.
I think the most likely thing we can get on the wheel there is maybe that Emerged Unscathed.
Yes.
I don't think that's going to be very appealing for most players. And there were a couple white cards floating around there, so we may get that as the last card in this pack. I'm trying to think of the decks that I think Reed's going to have to be the most scared of. And I do come back to this red-black token sacrifice deck. Again, the decks are not rigidly archetypal here, so it doesn't play, you know, like a pure aristocrats deck like you may be imagining. But what that deck does have is tons of small creatures, better removal than you're going to get in a mono-white deck or a heavily white deck. I mean, so far we have Portable Hole, we have Heartfire. Did we get Heartfire? I don't think so.
I think we got Heartfire.
I think we're really just Portable Hole right now in terms of our direct interaction. Hero of Lena Tower and Amara coming back around. So the cards that Reed is looking at have been wheeling, but we are fully off green now. Now just looking at Borrowed Hostility, which is quite good with the Heroic Matters stuff. And that is, in fact, the pick. One of the combat tricks in this cube. This cube does highlight combat tricks, a type of card that you maybe don't see as often in other cubes. The white-black and green-white fixing is still there. We'll take the Stirring Wild, what it looks like, and maybe in some world end up splashing a green card.
Yeah.
It's not out of the question.
We did pick a couple of green cards at the start.
And we're just getting them for free at the end of the pack.
Yeah.
So, you know, who knows? There could be a really good card for our deck that just comes around for free. All the white cards still left in this pack.
Things you love to see.
Sunhome Stalwart being pulled to the front here. Mentor First Strike. Very simple card, but does exactly what you want. Also, Enduring Bottom Warden being considered, and Law Rune Enforcer. I think this is mostly a question of curve.
I would like to take the Stalwart here. I would like some two mana value creatures. Also, Mentor is relevant. It's +1/+1 counters. Reed is deciding to change his mind.
You know, it feels really good to see Reed do that. I do it all the time, and I feel like I'm a scrub. So to see Reed Duke do it is heartening to my self-esteem here. Law Rune Enforcer now looks like it's going to be the pick.
Also a fine pick. It allows you just to pave way to do that aggression, that game plan you want to do.
Perhaps the math Reed doing in his head there is, I actually don't have that much removal.
Sure.
Maybe I will need to be tapping down some sort of giant threat out of my opponent. Oh, the Fearless Fledgling and the Gird for Battle still in the pack. Two incredible cards for this deck. Fledgling is the pick.
Yep.
This card is one of the cards that can solo a game in this cube.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it
really
really
and the favorite hoplite came back.
We did. We got the favorite hoplite. We speculated we might get on the wheel. That's great to see. Our lane is open.
Yep.
And I got to say, I'm starting to get a little bit worried for this table.
Not only because Reed Duke's here.
Well, I mean, I was already baseline worried because Reed Duke's at the table. But now that this deck is wide open, it appears, Reed's going to get all the cards that he wants or needs for this deck. Survivor of Corliss maybe even ends up playing that. It does have First Strike. So
a fine card. Maybe
Yeah.
a 23rd card in a pinch. Or does he take this Witch's Vengeance?
I mean, it seems like maybe he's considering it. That could be a very good card against him with such a low
Yeah.
curve.
There's a lot of humans in his
There are a ton of humans in his deck.
deck. Can he deal with a
Real
Witch's
decision,
Vengeance?
it looks like.
Gotta respect it. Are you gonna play this? Are you gonna? Nope. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. It looks like a hate draft for the Witch's Vengeance. A really small edge either way, right?
It makes sense because you're probably not gonna play that white card.
Yeah, I think remaking the assessment that I'm very low likelihood to play this
Yeah.
card, and so because of that,
I have
even
enough
though-
one drops already.
even though there's a also very small chance that I'm going to end up playing this opponent, I'm potentially giving this Witch's Vengeance to.
Yeah.
That chance is actually bigger than the chances that this card matters in my deck.
Yes.
I think I agree with that assessment given
I
how
agree.
many playables Reed has. Looks like we're getting some pack counts here. Maybe a pack got confused a little bit, counting everyone's pools. We will get this sorted out thanks to our fantastic judging staff here at CubeCon. A lot of these judges are explicitly cube enthusiasts.
Yes.
A lot of these judges have cubes in the event. This is a labor of love for everybody involved. So the red-black deck could pose a problem.
Yep.
And
What would make it a problem? So if Reed was to sit down and drafted this really strong Boros aggro deck, what makes red black so good against Boros aggro?
I think the challenge is that the red-black deck is going to have a lot of cheap creatures to get in the way, and can benefit a lot just from chump blocking or making trades in combat in a incremental way that the white deck won't be able to benefit from.
Sure.
So, and also if the deck has enough targeted removal for those key pieces, like let's get that Illumina Virtuoso right out of here.
Yeah.
We don't need that at all. Let's get that Clarion Spirit out of here. Clear that Precinct Captain. Some of these standouts in terms of power level in Reed's deck. Let's leave you with that Sunhome Stalwart. We can deal with that. We can deal with those things. So I think that is one of the risks that might happen here is Reed could find himself just dealing with a deck that is equally able to flood the board and more so able to actually answer specific synergistic pieces out of his deck.
And considering Reed hasn't really drafted any removal right now, we have that Portable Hole and we have that 1-mana tap creature.
Yeah, and we have passed an Oblivion Ring. We've passed a Prayer of Binding, the instant speed Oblivion Ring.
The Legat card as well,
We've
granted.
passed Captured by Legax.
Yep.
So we have had a chance to take removal, but I think I agreed with Reed's assessment at each point that the other cards that offered threats, filled out our curve, were worth taking over those removal spells, which pound for pound are less efficient than you're used to in a more powerful cube. You will not find Source of Plowshares in this cube.
Okay.
Portable Hole's about as good as it gets. So Reed's going to have to make a real assessment in Pack 3 here about how much removal he wants to play and how much mana he's willing to pay for it. Well, we got a little break here. Let's talk about one of our sponsors for CubeCon while these judges get this pack situation sorted out. This is why you zone draft, kids.
Yeah.
Always zone draft, because otherwise this might happen to you. But CubeCon is brought to you in part by Card Conduit. I have so many Magic cards in boxes at home that I am doing absolutely nothing with.
Yep.
They are merely taking up space, and they're providing me absolutely no value. What I should absolutely do is go home, go to cardconduit.com, and send them these unsorted boxes of Magic cards, because what they do is go through your unsorted bulk for you, find the best prices from their network of major retailers, and then sell your cards off. You get cash, you get credit, do whatever you want, turn those into more Magic cards even.
Yep.
We're not even saying, make your collection smaller. Just concentrate it in ways that
Eventually it will be small enough that you won't have piles of Magic cards.
Yeah, I mean, I am very lucky to have some, of the chase cards I've always wanted for my collection in my cube, and how I got them. Every single one of them was trading in all of my draft, chaff from 6 months or a year's worth for store credit. Because it can really sting to, shell out 3 figures, maybe more sometimes. 4.
I'm not going to talk about my full peasant cube.
Yeah, sometimes it can sting a little bit, but you know what doesn't sting? Saying, well, I have all these cards I don't really care about. Let's just, oh, no.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness gracious. We have just gotten word from production that the problem is that someone accidentally picked up a third pack from production. You going to come explain what's going on here? Yes, please.
Yes.
Absolutely. Please do. So that's your headset right there. If you can put it on, please. Big thank you to our judging staff. Thank you for the help, and we love to hear what's going on over there.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the booth.
I've never been in a booth. So it looks like somebody picked up their third pack and started drafting at some point. Basically, like a Lore Seeker, adding the extra pack in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it must have happened early, too, because we didn't see a larger pack floating around until the very end of the draft when someone must have noticed there was a couple
they're
extra
passing
cards.
2 and then 2 again.
Yeah.
Basically.
Okay.
So we have the options of completely restarting the draft and making everyone redraft entirely, or we have the ability to let it ride, act like a Lore Seeker, even though this cube doesn't technically have that, and continue on from the draft from there, adding the extra cards in as if it's just an extra pack.
So you basically replace that pack that the drafter accidentally picked up with a new third pack, so
Mhm.
15 more cards.
Yep. So everyone's gonna have a bigger pool in that sense.
Oh, okay.
And is that where we're going to go? Is that the direction?
I believe that's where we're gonna go. That
Okay.
seems
Okay.
seasonably easier because it's less of a disruption for the cube, and then while this normally doesn't have a lore seeker in this cube in a sense,
Yeah.
we won't have to redraft the entire thing.
Yes, that's cool.
Well, thank you for the clarification. Really helpful. And thank you for all your work this weekend making this event happen.
Thank you.
It is really appreciated. So we're going to get a few extra cards. Everyone's deck is going to be, what, I guess 1/24th better because we're going to get an extra pack. So
Pretty much.
we're looking at an even more powerful
Yeah.
draft of the regular cube
Thank you
here.
very much.
Thank you so much for explaining that and for all your hard work.
Got it.
All right, so they're gonna get that squared away over there at the table, and I gotta just say again, this is why you zone draft,
Yeah.
right?
And like, I'm glad they went with that resolution because it would have been really sad to not see that Boros deck that Reed is
Well, it's funny
drafting.
you say that. My heart did jump a little bit. I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, I guess you watch redraft a second deck on the regular cube. Maybe we'll see something totally different. But no, I think it's best, obviously, for our players, for you at home on coverage, that we don't waste everyone's time and just ignore what just happened for the last 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get restarted over there, and we'll pick up that draft when we can. One of my favorite things to do to prevent this from happening, put your phone on top of your undrafted packs. And this is a unique problem to Cube, right? Because when you're doing booster draft, your booster's sealed. You're not going to accidentally open another booster in the middle of the draft. But of course, all these cards in matching sleeves at the table, very easy to accidentally pick up the wrong stack, and you end up in a situation like this. But it did happen so early that I think I agree with the judge's assessment that
agree.
it's going to have a very minimal impact on the overall draft.
And it values everyone's time, right? We don't want to
Absolutely.
really want to restart the draft again. This is the last draft of the day.
Yes.
It's going to get really late otherwise.
Yeah, and this is a competitive event, right? People are here
Right.
trying to do their best, but also the stakes are very low. I
Yeah.
mean, we saw Reduke win a cheese plate when he won a draft on Thursday.
Yeah.
Not to minimize the value of a cheese
Hey,
plate.
I'd be happy with a cheese
we
plate.
love cheese. This booth is very pro
We're
cheese.
in Madison, Wisconsin. We all love cheese.
Right, this booth is very pro cheese, but it's not like somebody maybe just got shafted at a 5K because some draft
Right,
got
this
messed
is
up,
it, yeah.
which is nice. So everyone here, I've had such great positive interactions with everybody I've drafted
Yeah.
with here. Everyone is here to have fun. They're here because they love Cube, and it's been a great weekend.
Love Cube and love cheese. What more could you want?
Yeah. So we're gonna head back to the draft. Pack 2. I'm not sure we're gonna see the last couple picks. We'll probably get those couple green cards on the wheel. It sounds
Yeah.
like, and then we're gonna pick up on Pack 3. What are you looking for your deck if you are reduking this position?
I would like some removal, but I don't know what kind of removal in white or even in red that is worth picking. Like we saw the Oblivion Ring in the last pack, but Reed didn't take it.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see if there's anything like Portable Hold, like these 1 mana, 2 mana removal spells, just to make sure we can clear the board and
Yeah.
encourage that aggression that we want to do.
I think some of the best removal spells in white that we haven't seen tabling yet are Journey to Nowhere.
Well, that's a good one.
Journey to Nowhere is really good here. There's not a lot of non-creature permanents you need to be answering. There's similarly Glass Casket, which fills a very similar role.
Mm-hmm.
And there is Oust. Oust is a very efficient removal spell that you really prefer to be the aggressive deck using that Oust because you want to clear that blocker. It's going to come back later, but you're going to take advantage of those couple turns while you don't have that creature in play to get in for a lot of damage. We got the Swiftblade Vindicator on the wheel.
Oh,
We
boy.
got the Swiftblade Vindicator. That must have been the last card in the pack, or maybe one of the last 2 cards in the pack. That is incredible.
Yes.
What a pickup for this deck. I got to say, I think what I would like to see most, frankly, is actually some more combat tricks.
Okay,
I mean,
yep, sure.
we do have a lot of things that benefit from being targeted, and the combat tricks actually work really nicely with Dragon's Rage Channeler. You're going to get a little bit of card selection, get to churn through your deck a little bit, but I want ways to make that Illuminated Virtuoso, that Swiftblade Vindicator, as good as they possibly can be.
What are some of the best combat tricks in this cube, or in red at least?
That's a really good question. Judges, yes? Yeah,
Yep.
come on, by all means. So we've got one more update from the judging staff here. Welcome, welcome.
Welcome to the booth.
Welcome to our humble booth.
So we had the players actually suggest a third option, which,
Oh,
was,
Okay.
interesting.
which was to not add an extra pack. The player's concern was the player who got the extra pack would get 4 first picks, which is obviously a
Yep,
big advantage.
that's true.
This is a bit of an unorthodox deviation. We were going with it because the players asked for it, and they all agree that they think that that would be better.
Okay.
Fantastic. All right, well, thank you, Jennifer. I
Thank
appreciate
you
the
for the
update.
update.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, so slight deviation. I think that does make sense. Essentially, this player just used up their first pick twice in this
Yeah.
pack, so they won't get a first pick in pack 3, and the card pool will remain the same size. We're not adding 15 more cards in. So perhaps a little bit cleaner of a solution, even though unorthodox. And that's the kind of flexibility we have here,
Yeah.
right? Probably wouldn't be able to do that if this was a Pro Tour draft. We'd probably be starting this whole thing over.
Not in Comp REL, for example, you would not be able to
Exactly.
do that. But if everyone agreed at the table, let's do it.
So yeah, then that is really to me the spirit of CubeCon, right? Like this is a competitive event. People came here because they want to win, they want to be good at Magic, but at the end of the day, everybody's kind of mutually interested in everybody's good time
Yes.
and having a good experience. So anyway, I'd love to see some more combat tricks. Some of the best ones left. Shelter is in this cube.
Okay, that's a good one.
I think Shelter is great. We missed the Gird for Battle, not strictly a combat trick, but really good with these creatures to put +1/+1 counters on them. And the rate on Gird for Battle is just really, really good.
Yes.
1 mana for 2 power across 2 creatures is quite strong. Feat of Resistance, also a really good combat trick that I would love to see pop up. Reminding myself now of some of the better red ones. We passed Expedite, actually, which is probably my favorite red combat trick.
Yep.
I say in big air quotes because it doesn't affect the creature's power toughness at all. What it does do is draw you a card and give you all of your targeting your creature triggers.
Yes.
So that is a card I love, particularly in this deck. We also missed the Reckless Rage, so missing out on maybe some of the premier red options. There is something else we can look forward to possibly happening here.
Yep.
There is a lot of divided damage burn here, specifically for this heroic deck. So we've got our favorite Hoplite. We've got our Illuminator Virtuoso. Maybe we pick up something like an Arc Lightning, and we point 1 damage at our own creature, trigger that heroic, 2 damage at our opponent's creatures, and get the best of both worlds.
Arc Lightning. One of my favorite red cards in Cube.
I also think Arc Lightning is probably one of the strongest cards in this cube, period. And I know it's gotten a little bit of a pass for being really strong because of a specific interaction.
Yes.
Because it's not just, 3 damage, like really powerful burn spell. It also has these synergistic fringe applications that the cube designer is really interested in supporting and pursuing. So those are the cards you should be looking for, I think, as premier pickups for Reed. I'm not really worried about it, though. I agree. I think a little more removal would be good.
Yep.
Some combat tricks could make this deck more explosive and maybe a little more exciting, but the curve is great. The card quality is really high. The fixing is good. Our red splash is pretty trivial.
Reed picking those lands like the Sunbait Canyon and the Rugged Prairie early on is a really nice foresight just to think, yep, I'm probably going to be Boris. I'm got a white-based aggro deck. I'm seeing these heroic cards. Red is the best color to pair with that.
Yeah, or even just giving himself the option, right? Like, if you're looking at the pack and you're like, well, all these cards are kind of replaceable. I'm not excited about putting any of them in my main deck. Take the fixing land, and maybe you'll pick up a really good card later that makes that pick really strong. Because at the time, we took those running red lands with no red cards in our pool, right? We had just taken white cards at that point. So, again, an investment in the future packs that Reed made that I think is paying dividends, even if it's just for heroic reinforcements.
Yeah, it's making future Reed very happy. So
for Swiftblade Vindicator and heroic reinforcements, I'm thrilled with that. I think we're probably also going to play this Dragon's Rage Channeler as well. And red also gives us way more options in this pack 3, hopefully, for some removal.
Yes.
The removal options in white, a little more limited. The removal options in red are abundant. There are a lot of burn spells that are going to be floating around. So
we want some removal, and we want some combat tricks just to trigger these heroic creatures.
And then we can figure out, place some little bets in the booth here, how many times people are going to die to the train. That's going to be the question.
I think it's going to be pretty high, because no one respects the pain train.
We are back finally on pack 3. Thanks again to our great judging staff for sorting this out. There's that shelter I was mentioning.
Yeah.
Anax and Psymead, one of the big payoffs for this deck, though I will say at this point, we actually don't have that many ways to trigger heroic, right?
Resolute Reinforcements is a nice one. If you want Arc Lightning. Speaking as the Arc Lightning, this is a really good pack for Reed.
So, oh my goodness.
And the Owls.
Oh my goodness gracious.
My days.
All right, Emma, hot seat. What are you taking here?
I'm taking Arc Lightning.
I'm also taking Arc Lightning. I think we're going to wheel that Anax and Psymead. I think that's easy.
There is so many cards in this pack that Reed can just wheel.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good white and red cards in this pack, and also we've wheeled every white-red card that we've seen open.
This is it. I would prioritize the Arc Lightning because we do need some cheap, efficient removal. And as you say, Arc Lightning is one of the best removal spells in this cube for if you're in red.
Yeah, so I'm personally on the Arc Lightning. I think we're guaranteed to wheel a really, really good white card and probably the Anax and Psymead if we want it.
Reed has been wheeling the multicolored Boros cards and the white cards. We haven't seen much on the wheel on the red cards, so I would probably prioritize the
There's
the Arc
absolutely
Lightning.
no way this Arc Lightning is tabling. I would bet my mortgage on it. Looks like Reed does not agree. Anax and Psymead it is. That is one of Reed's first 3-drop threats, so perhaps a curve consideration.
Yeah.
Perhaps Reed just not that worried about what his opponents are going to be doing.
Maybe he just wants some deads early on.
Yeah, I mean, if you plan on going under everybody, then the removal is a little less important. Definitely in the tank here, taking these picks very seriously.
What do you say?
I know Reed wants to win this event.
Yeah, he's very serious about winning this event. He was much more serious about winning the cheese,
Of course, sure. And
because it's cheese. Why wouldn't you? But no, he's here to win, and the 17-1 result from this weekend so far clearly means that.
And here we see Integrity Intervention, which is
And
a really good combat trick here with a Lightning Helix attached to the other side, albeit for 4 mana, but
Yep.
still. We also see a Bomat Courier, one of the premier 1-drops for the red deck, and also a great splash. You don't have to have your
Yeah.
red on turn 1. You just
This
got to get it at some point later
Also,
on.
the shock is quite nice.
The
as
shock
well.
is fantastic. I mean, these, and based on the cards we've wheeled from previous packs, I think we can expect to wheel quite a bit from this pack as
Right.
well. So I feel like we're going to see, and I honestly, I think Reed is
Yeah.
making the same assessment and saying, I'm going to wheel a guaranteed banger out of this pack.
Yeah.
I'm going to be flush with playables.
So I'm going to eat my vegetables.
Let me take another fixing land to make my deck even easier to hit my colors on time and on schedule. That brings us to 4 untapped red-white fixing duels, which is a
pretty
great
good.
number.
It's
Really
pretty
good
good.
number for a deck like this.
All
Here
right.
we go into pack 3.
Lots of green cards and a Bloodbraid Elf.
Bloodbraid
So
Elf.
A lot of green cards in this pack.
Bloodbraid Elf, one of the power outliers here for sure. Core Skyfisher pulled to the front as the lone white card in the
Yep.
pack.
Skyfish is
Looks like Shuffler Bug.
Yep. Skyfisher is quite nice with Fraven Inspector because you can always bounce back the clue token if you want like a turn 2 play.
And it is going to be Thraben Inspector for
It also has
Reduke.
flying, which is relevant as well. Nice bit of invasion.
A
It's
really
always
cool
nice.
card, I think, in that
Yeah.
you can do what you described just now. Phalanx Leader here, one of the payoffs for the
Define
white
is
deck.
not Defiant
Also,
yet?
Elspeth's Smite is
That's
the
it.
white card we have there. Ephemerate, Ancestral Blade, lots of options in white in this pack. What was I just saying? It's completely escaped me. I got distracted by doing my play-by-play job, and my beautiful, hilarious, charming anecdote is gone.
Phalanx is a really nice pick here.
Yeah, that's a really high pick. I mean, we again see
I'm really
Reed prioritizing threats over removal at every turn.
I'm really enjoying this Feroz blocker heroic deck that Reed seems to be drafting.
Yeah, and you know, Reed is turning down,
Ooh, Glass Casket's a nice one here.
and also Valorous Stance. I actually think not very likely to be used as a removal spell here. Much more likely to be a protection spell.
Yes.
Not a ton of threats are going to have 4 power or greater, 4 toughness or greater. My mistake. For the most part, in this pack, though, Reed has been prioritizing even more threats over
Yes.
the removal available. We're passing Arc Lightning for Anax and Cymede. We're passing Elspeth Smite for Phalanx Leader.
We're passing the shock as well.
Yep, past the shock. So it's not as though Reed hasn't had a chance. It's that his assessment is that I want to be threat dense, and I don't want to be stuck with removal spells that don't have targets. And instead, I'd rather just be asking the questions and making my
Yep.
opponents have the answer.
And there's a very good chance some of these removal spells and combat tricks are going to come back on the wheel.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think pretty few of the removal spells.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see Shock, Arc Lightning, Wheel. I do think we're going to see some of these combat
Dante Vanguard's a
Oof.
really nice one as well.
Yeah, if you're planning on just being aggressive, a Danto Vanguard is about as good as it gets in this cube. Also, I think really great with the combat tricks because it's almost impossible to get blown out,
Yes.
right? Your combat trick is going to get to resolve unless they have some sort of instant speed exile, which is extraordinarily rare in this cube.
So far, so good for Reed.
There's a friend of mine in this pod across the table, and I'm sitting here hoping that it was actually them that messed up the draft so I can razz them about it later.
sure.
I can razz them about it later, maybe. Territorial Hammer Skull, Pilgrim's Eye.
Oh, I love me a Battle Wise Hot
Ooh.
Plate.
Oh, talk about a combat trick.
Prepare
Now,
is a nice one.
Prepare is so good on its own, even if you never get to fight.
Yep.
The life link is huge. It can totally change a race, right?
Yes.
You may be in it comes up pretty often in this cube that you're racing back and forth.
Yep.
Both you and your opponent think that you can get each other dead before the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And one little injection of life gain can absolutely change that math
Yep.
in a big way.
It's also nice. It goes quite nicely with the Adante Vanguard. If you want to pay the 4 life to give it instructable, it allows you to just get some life back if you're wanting to keep your threats around.
This cube is a little bigger than 360.
Okay.
It's 400 some cards. So I'm sitting here thinking, did somebody first pick a Legolas because the card is so good? That's
Yeah.
why we haven't seen it going around. Green's been fairly open,
Yep.
but I don't think it means nobody's drafting green. I think
Yep.
it probably means one player's drafting green instead of 2 or 3. And I think if Legolas was opened, I think the person playing Legolas is definitely not playing white because we have wheeled all of the cards that will be really, really good with Legolas. The fight spells even were going around really
Yeah.
late. So if that deck is at the table, then let's look at some questions here about maybe Sentinel's Eyes or
Is
Toshiro
Toshiro?
Umezawa. Toshiro, a really cool card in this cube that lets you flashback instants basically every time an opponent's creature dies, which you can chain together sometimes into really powerful sequences.
Just getting some clarification from the judges here.
Got to understand the picks you're making.
Yep.
Reed's Curve looking great.
Yeah. This is a really sweet deck.
Now, as this draft has gone on, I think with every pick, it is less and less and less likely that we are playing those 5-mana board wipes at all.
Yes.
Out of the sideboard, I'd even be surprised. I think we are wholeheartedly committed to this strategy of just getting our opponent's dead as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Maybe even considering those pickups of board wipes minor hate drafts.
Yeah, I did say that earlier.
Yeah.
It's just there was nothing to lose by taking those cards. You're either going to play them, and if you don't, you're not going to be blown out to them.
We are back to our first pack, which had so much for us and still does.
And the
Shelter
and
Sentinel's Eyes, Resolute Reinforcements, all there. Now we're taking the combat trick.
Yeah.
Resolute Reinforcements, not appealing enough to keep us taking threats.
Shelter is
Let's take
really
that
nice.
Shelter.
Nice for the heroic decks here.
And Integrity Intervention also came back around. Integrity Intervention, a fantastic card. Definitely the pick here, I think. Absolutely. There we go. That is both. That's a combat trick, and it is also removal in the late game. It's also just remove your opponent in the late enough game. If you get him down to 3, you can just hit him with Intervention.
It's a nice top deck.
I think a lot of these double cards go overlooked because they have a hybrid side, right?
Yes.
But they look like gold cards. And if you are not being really careful and thorough when you're looking at the pack, I think a lot of, for example, red-green or red-black drafters might have overlooked that when they might have actually wanted a combat trick. So how many ways do we have to target our own creatures? We have Shelter, Prepare, Launch the Fleet.
We have
Borrowed Hostility.
Valorous Stance.
Valorous Stance. So we've got enough, I think. Ancestral Blade here. A little curve filler. I feel like Reed's threat density is going to be high enough that maybe that Ancestral Blade not going to be as appealing, although does work really nicely with Swiftblade Vindicator specifically and also Illuminated Virtuoso. The next best thing to giving a combat trick to one of those creatures is just a permanent buff of +1/+1.
It's also nice with the heroic reinforcements because it does make a creature. Here we get to the dregs of the pack.
I've seen this Karazda Guild Mage go last many, many times in this cube. Looks like our last card was a red-green fixing land, which, you know, if this draft had gone slightly differently, you could see that being an amazing last pickup if we're actually playing full Naya. This draft, I think, went really, really nicely, for Reed Duke. Yeah, we staked out a lane pretty early, and we definitely got fed. Our deck was open. The last pick, Swiftbladed Vindicator, or second to last pick. We actually didn't see that because we were sorting out a situation with the judges, but really, really wait Swiftbladed Vindicator. We wheeled our favorite Hoplite. We wheeled our Shelter. Wheeled a lot of the best cards for this deck, and yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be a mess.
And also, Reed managed to hate draft some sweepers that just blows you out if you're the Boros aggro player. So the Planner Outburst, the Witch's Vengeance was a really nice call as well.
Yeah.
Just Witch's Vengeance naming humans. The Boros aggro deck has a lot of humans. That could just be a massive blowout.
For sure.
Also gets around the whole indestructible thing that Reed's been drafting with the Valorous Stances and the Shelters. I think Reed did this really well. I'm really excited to see this deck.
Yeah, you know, if Reed does go the distance and win this draft, I can't wait to get him in the booth so I can ask him. When you took those board wipes early on, were you thinking maybe I will play these board wipes and be a slower deck, or were you mostly thinking this is a hedge against me not wanting to play against these cards?
I cannot beat these cards. The best way for me to beat these cards is just to take them so no one else can play them.
Yeah, we'll see. So Reed did get 2 of, I believe, the 4 board wipes in the cube.
That's impressive.
Not counting Witch's Vengeance. If you count that one, then I guess 3 of the 5, rather. By invitation only, still the strongest one, I think, that we didn't see floating around. That card is so good because you can take it in a deck that is even full of creatures, right? Like, I think you absolutely would main deck by invitation only in this deck of Reeds because if you have more creatures than your opponent, it's just like an eliminate the competition style card where you sacrifice your worst stuff, they sacrifice their whole board. If you do happen to be on the draw and just stumble a little bit, you can just sandbag and then just actually have a regular board wipe in your creature deck. You get to free play that, which is really powerful to have that option. Oh, boy. Are you excited about this?
I'm very excited.
What color deck do you want to see Reed playing against most in round 1?
So I'm going to be biased. I would like Reed to Frio because it's Reed, let's be honest.
We get to talk to him in the booth.
And we get to talk to him, and he's drafting a Boros deck. Like, I have to support the Fraven Inspector player, right?
That's true.
Then the rules.
Yeah.
I guess Reed would really like to play against these tap-out control decks just because going under them is just going to be really hard for the control player to, you know, establish a board state. But yeah, we'll see what's going on. I'll be interested to see what green decks are at the table.
Yes.
Because we saw a lot of green cards in the later picks in those drafts.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
I'm curious to see if there is a dedicated green player at the table.
I agree that I think these slower decks are maybe going to get smoked by this
Yes.
aggro deck. If you're planning to go slow, if you took that quick study, good luck to you. I think maybe the problem decks, if they come up, are going to be decks that are also low to the ground, but maybe just a little bigger. And green's exactly where that could come in.
Okay.
In green, you get your 2-drop 2/3, and there's a lot of things in this deck that cannot attack into a 2/3, and we have very little removal for those kind of cards.
Okay, we're looking at some.
We are going to get to watch Reed's opponent deck build here. Reed's opponent is on the right side of the screen. You can disregard the left side for now. Maybe we'll get to see that deck later. Right side of the screen here is Seth playing a lot of blue cards, it seems. I'm seeing a ton of blue here. This is just the pool registration photo. After this, we'll see Seth start to lay out their main deck, separate their sideboard from their main deck cards, and see where they landed.
Looks like we have a Simic deck of some kind here.
Yeah, I feel like, based on what I'm seeing, I feel like Seth was playing blue and then was like, well, I'm getting green cards for free.
For
so I
sure,
guess I'm
right.
going to play these as well. Looks like some fixing for white, too, though not a ton
We
of
do
white
have a
spells.
Lumbering Falls, which will be, if Seth decides to go Simic, that will be a nice addition.
I see that Earl of Squirrel, and I note that Earl of Squirrel did not wheel. We only saw it once.
Okay.
Which means that Seth prioritized Earl of Squirrel and maybe is a believer. And I know that Anthony, the cube designer out there, would love nothing more than for Earl of Squirrel to get its moment in the sun as the lone uncard in this cube. I mean, how can you not love Squirrel Link?
I know, right?
Just the word Squirrel Link is such a delight. So, I'm a little worried about the, for example, counter spells here. I think this can be maybe a little bit too slow. I see an Exclude, for example, a 3-mana counter spell.
The Make Disappear is quite nice. That's a nice interaction for the aggro.
Absolutely.
For Reed's aggro deck.
But, the Neutralize, the Exclude, the Scatter to the Winds, these are all 3-mana counter spells that are going to be quite a bit too slow, I think, to really matter in this matchup. You're going to want to be interacting a lot sooner than turn 3, especially if you're on the draw.
Yes.
So let's see this deck get laid out. That's Neshin Hornbeetle, Elvish Reclaimer.
We've got a Blossoming Defense. Consider Mana War, I believe that's one.
You know all these cards as well as I do, and I've played this cube 100 times. Shipwreck Dowser up there on the top end. Wing Crafter.
Searing Visions. We've got a Pestamite.
The question must be asked, is Ivy in this pool? I didn't see it in the registration.
I didn't see it. I saw one gold card, and I believe it's a fight spell.
All right, we got Fairy Vandal is here as well. Putting some of those black cards to the side, not playing Applied Biomancy, I believe is that combat trick there. Crawl Harpooner.
Harpooner's really nice one.
Ninja of the Deep Hours, really strong card here. Really, really
love
strong
me a
card.
Ninja of the Deep Hours.
That is the lone card that almost tempted me to not draft mono red in your cube.
Really?
I got a somewhat late Ninja, and I was like, maybe I can play blue red like I love to. I think it was ultimately not correct, so I didn't do it, but I did take it because I was speculating on it a little bit.
Card sweep.
So as this is being laid out, looking kind of like a tempo deck. We have some answers, but we also have some cheap, efficient threats and ones that can actually scale and kind of take over the game. The Neshin Hornbeetle and the Fairy Vandal are 2-drops that will grow as the game goes on under the right circumstances, which means you can get those down early, then use your 3-mana counterspells, use your Pestimites, use your Mana Wars to clean up the sort of mid-game and hopefully ride these snowballing 2-drops to victory.
I did see a Sylvan Advocate in the pool as well, which might be an interesting one to include just because it increases in power and toughness the more lands you have in play. Granted, the Boris deck is looking to kill as quickly as possible.
There is
the
Ivy.
There we go.
There is the Ivy, in fact. So this is the deck I was wondering about. Sylvan Advocate, definitely making the main deck right there.
It's a very good card.
2/3 Vigilance already is just so good against.
And then it becomes, I believe, a 4/5 or a 5/4.
Yeah, it gets +2/+2. And
that is just going to stonewall a lot of Reed's aggression.
Yeah, I mean, even if that other text never matters, a 2/3 Vigilance for 2 is going to really be a headache.
Right.
Yeah, Vigilance so good when you're up against an aggro opponent because it's oftentimes really hard to turn the corner and actually start racing back because of them swinging back at you. Getting to just swinging for free is great. I'll tell you what, I don't know how good this deck is, but I love it. I think this deck is so cool. We've got a couple things here that are going to matter with Ivy, which would be really sick to see. A Terramander there also on the low curve. So definitely these cheap threats that threaten to actually be big enough to end the game.
Yeah.
In terms of interaction, we do see the Exclude, a couple 3-mana counterspells.
You have Fading Hope and you have Make Disappear, which are some premier blue quote-unquote removal spells. And they're low enough mana value that they will be good against the Boros deck. Like, you're not completely tapping out just to deal with this one threat.
Yeah, I
You can
think
play multiple spells in a turn and try and control the board.
Yeah, I think this deck and also Reed's deck are both really great examples of the kind of synergy that's present here, right?
Yeah.
Like we talked about how there's not really an all-in +1/+1 counters deck, and in Reed's deck, there is no way to interact with +1/+1 counters except that Grateful Apparition.
Yes.
But there is also this heroic theme, which kind of has some overlap with the +1/+1 counter theme.
Yeah.
And there's also this Power Matters theme in the form of Swiftblade Vindicator, which has overlap with equipment and also has overlap with the other things the deck is doing. So lots of little overlapping synergies here making that deck work. Very similar thing at play here, right?
Yes.
We've got Ivy and not a deck chock full of ways to trigger Ivy, just a few.
Yep.
But
It's enough, though. It's more than enough.
I think getting one of those triggers and getting that value off of Ivy just once or twice is going to make Ivy really one of the standout cards in this pool.
Also, there is a River Hopo, I believe, in this this deck, which I believe gains life, which is relevant against the aggro deck as well.
It does gain life. It is a 5-mana activated ability to do so you got to be somewhat stable, right?
Yes.
The Hoopu is not going to stabilize on its own, but if you are able to stabilize, that can perhaps get you back out of cheese range. Right?
Yes.
Back out of like, oh no, I left one thing unblocked and then I got hit by 2 combat tricks. Now
Yep.
I'm just all of a sudden dead. A little life gain can make you feel really good in those situations once you get down low. There's the Hoopu. Beautiful art.
The Bane of Hour of Devastation Limited. I remember that quite well.
Yes, it definitely did matter quite a bit. Another card I'll call out here is Reign of Revelation.
Yes.
Again, the pure card advantage, not easy to come by in this cube.
Yeah.
There's not an abundance of easy 2-for-1s, easy 3-for-1s, and Reign of Revelation, just a very good 2-for-1 that gives you selection and allows you to hold up your counter spells, your excludes, your make disappears, your neutralizes, your scatter to the winds, and if you don't need to counter something, keep drawing cards, keep the action flowing.
One thing I like about this Simic deck is you're not tapping out to play a spell. You've got various options to do on an opponent's turn, right? So you can draw some cards, you can remove something, you can counter something. There's just a lot of flexibility. So there will probably be a little of a controlling mindset, but not in a traditional tap-out control way, because there's just so many things you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, another example here, I think, of these great little overlapping synergies. You know, we have the Ninja of the Deep Hours. I think one of the best cards in Seth's deck. And there's not a ninjutsu theme here, right? There are a few ninjas running around. You could get, I think, 3 or 4 of them in your pool if you draft them all. So we don't have a ninjutsu deck, right, with a bunch of cheap creatures at the end of the battlefield abilities and evasion that you then want to re-trigger. But in this pool, we do have Shipwreck Dowser, Manowar, Pestermite, Crawl Harpooner.
Yes.
All of these creatures have end of the battlefield abilities that may be worth re-triggering with the Ninja of the Deep Hours.
Yeah.
So even though we are not a dedicated ninjutsu deck, that sort of sequencing in line is just as likely as a game where we play Ivy and we triggered a couple times with these combat tricks. All overlapping synergies here making this deck tick. I don't envy Seth having to whittle this down to a clean 40 to go up against Reed's Boros aggro deck. Who do you like in this matchup?
I think I like Reed a little more. I'd be a little bit worried if Seth being able to stabilize, because Reed is just so good at going under these decks. It'll be interesting to see if Seth is able to create his own board state just to stem this bleeding from the Boros aggro deck and be like, cool, I want to turn the corner. I'm going to start attacking with these Ninja of the Deep Hours, and then I can flash in these Pestimites, tap down your threats, and start to play a controlling game plan, and then just take over the game.
Yeah, I think one thing that's of note in this deck is that we don't actually see a bunch of creatures that are bigger than Reeds.
Right.
Which I think is where the green deck would have an advantage. I mean, I think Sylvan Advocate is honestly the best example of a card that will be a headache for Reed.
Yes.
Very little removal for it, and that 3 toughness is going to block a huge portion of Reed's decks while still getting to crack back if the board is clear enough. But other than that, Shipwreck Dowser, 3/3 with prowess, pretty good, but, you know, that's up at your 5-mana slot. You don't have a lot of 3s here that are going to stonewall the... Oh, sorry, there's also a Frost Trickster there for the ninjutsu business. One I missed there. And Pilgrim's Eye. Okay, there's plenty of things in ninjutsu, okay? You did it, Seth.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think we actually don't have that like big chunky middle part of the curve, which would give this deck a natural advantage in the matchup. So Seth gonna have to be maybe fighting uphill a little bit. I see the Neshan Hornbeetle, for example, got cut because very few ways to actually go to combat with a creature with 4 power to trigger that Hornbeetle. So if you can't do that, you're just looking at a Grizzly Bear. And unfortunately...
Grizzly Bears don't do well against aggro decks.
Well, that for sure. And the thing that I'm sad to see, and I think we're all sad to see, No Earl of Squirrel in the main deck.
Yeah.
So maybe just a dud pack that Seth took that Earl of Squirrel out of. Not trying to go to 6 mana here, just topping out at 5 with that single Shipwreck Dowser.
Yeah.
You know, I know this cube well. There's a single card I don't recognize. I'm trying to figure out what it is. That sort of blue card at the top there. I think it might be a recent addition for this Ivy deck. Is that a combat trick or evasive spell of sorts? Looking through the
I'm
list.
just having a look.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That is a copy of Curiosity. I didn't
Oh,
recognize
cool.
the art. Yeah. So Curiosity.
Really good with with Ivy as well.
So good with Ivy and going to be really good here because Reed has so little interaction. So
Yes.
you put that on one of your flyers, on your Fairy Vandal, on your River Hoopu, on your Ivy, on your Pilgrim's Eye. You're just going to get to eat. You're going to draw a bunch of cards and hopefully maybe overwhelm your opponent. So, yeah, I didn't recognize the art on that Curiosity, but that is what that is, and that is, I think, a key card in this matchup, especially if we have Ivy online. I can't wait to see these games play out.
Same. It's gonna be really
super,
fun.
super interesting.
Sounds like both players have drafted really well. Like, obviously, we saw Reed's draft and how Reed drafted this really sweet Boros aggro deck, but this Simic tempo-y mid-range deck also looks pretty fun.
Yeah.
It can also hold its own.
One last thing I'll call out here. We talked about how good the Pain Train is, Untethered Express. How many answers do we have to Untethered Express in this deck?
If we're not counting counter spells.
Yeah, and even if we are, the Exclude's not going to do it.
No.
We have Quench, we have Make Disappear, we have a couple 3-mana counter spells. Once that thing resolves, you can't Mana Wart. It's not going to be a creature on your turn.
Yep.
You can't Frost Trickster it. It's not going to be a creature on your turn.
You can Pestamite it
You
for
can
like
Pestamite it.
for a turn.
That'll buy you a little bit of time.
That's a fog in this case.
And nothing here is blocking that train profitably. So the train, we're going to maybe get to see it shine in our round 1 here, assuming Reed decides to main deck it, which I think he will based on how highly he picked it. Can't wait to see these games play out. It's going to be really, really
so
interesting.
exciting.
We're going to take a quick break here at Madison at CubeCon. Don't change the channel, though, because we're going to get to see one of the best players in the world pilot an awesome Boros aggro deck in a really inventive, cool cube. So, yeah, stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Hello and welcome back to CubeCon. Andy Mangold here in the booth with Emma Partlow. And we are lining up for round 1 of the last draft of the main event here at CubeCon. Some of these players are scrapping to try and get in top 64 on tomorrow morning's draft on Sunday.
Can't wait. It's going to be exciting.
I feel bad for the players that are scrapping for top 64.
Yeah, in this pod especially.
In the pot with Reed Duke, because we got to watch Reed Duke draft what turned out to be, I think, a pretty messed up Boros aggro deck, mostly white. White plus red gold cards, basically, and a couple, other red cards
and the
here
best
and there.
red, white, gold cards that you want for this deck. You've got Heroic Reinforcements, which is one of the headline cards you want for this build.
This deck is definitely really scary. We got a little peek at Reed's round 1 opponent deck, which is a blue-green Ivy
Tempo-y.
tempo deck with some cheap threats that it's looking to get down. A lot of evasion, a lot of flying in that list, which Reed will have a lot of problems blocking. Not that I think Reed has a lot of blocking on his schedule for the next 2 hours. We're going to go down here to game 1 and just see how this shakes out. Reed Duke versus Seth Craft. This is the regular cube, CubeCon in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Really matters who's on the play here. We'll see as soon as player plays their first land. In the coverage booth here, we are watching the same feed you all are, doing our best to see cards at an angle in people's hands. I see a Curiosity there in Seth's hand. That's going to go right to the bottom, though.
So it looks like Seth is mulligan to 6.
Seth is mulligan to 6, and it looks like maybe no cheap threats. Doesn't want to risk a blowout that comes from Curiosity. Starting off with the Serum Visions. Forest and blue card on top. I want to say drew Ninja of the Deep Hours off that Serum Visions. Such a unique skill. It wasn't Ninja Deep Hours. Such a unique skill trying to get good at recognizing cards from colorful shapes at a weird angle with glare on them. But
it is challenge mode, isn't it?
Keeping both those cards on top. Forest and unknown blue card. Unknown to us, at least, so far. Reed on the draw here definitely has a little more work cut out for him than if he was on the play. On the play, this deck has got to be heavily favored. We're going to see a turn 1 Figure of Destiny. How do you feel about these level-up creatures in cubes?
I'm a big fan of them. So Figure of Destiny is one of my favorite cards. It was one of the cards I first saw when I played Magic, and I was like, holy moly, this card seems sweet. Like, it's the most powerful thing ever. When at a point where you don't really understand the design and the power level of Magic cards, on an innate level, I thought this was sweet. I really like them. There's a couple of others that I'm a big fan of, like Evolved Sleeper from Dominaria United.
Yeah.
And Warden of the First Tree from, I believe, Dragons of Katakir. I just think they're just really cool design. And given that they're hybrid, it means you can play these in one color or the other.
Reed getting it for one, opting not to scale up that figure of destiny and trying now to put a precinct captain on the battlefield.
And here comes the Fading Hope.
We're going to see it resolve, and then end of turn Fading Hope. Just buy some time.
And
Seth says, I need to buy some time to find some answers to that, find some blockers.
Yeah. What Seth wants to do here is just interact,
Did Seth miss a scry on that Fading Hope? He should be scrying if it's a smaller creature. I don't think Seth did scry. Might have just missed that one. Oh, you know what? Actually,
matter
scried
anyway.
that land already to the top with Serum
It doesn't matter.
Knew what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, what Steph's looking to do here is just to cheaply interact with Reed's board and hopefully come to the point where he can turn the corner, play these Ivies, play these Sylvan Advocates, maybe even try and put down this Ninja of the Deep Hours and try and push through for some damage.
Here's a Fearless Fledgling from Reed. We see the Scatter to the Winds, one of the 3-mana counterspells here in Seth's hand, maybe coming out on this Fearless Fledgling, and in fact, there it goes.
Yeah.
I think you got to use it. I mean, your counterspells are not always going to have windows. If you have a chance to counter a key spell out of Reed's deck, I think you got to do it.
As an aggro player, you just got to make them have it.
Yep.
They're going to run out eventually, you'd like to think. So you just got to play your spells, and if they have it, they have it.
This figure of destiny so far on eager cadet duty, just staying a 1/1, getting him for some damage. And we see a Law Rune Enforcer as the follow-up for Reed after that countered Fearless Fledgling. We've got Reign of Revelation and Ninja of the Deep Hours in hand. Really does not feel good to just pay 4 mana for Ninja of the Deep Hours. That's not why you put it in your deck.
This Reign of Revelation is going to be fired off, I think, at the end of Reed's turn.
Yeah, we just have land, Reign of Revelation, Ninja of the Deep Hours. So get a little more information about what Reed is doing.
And
fire off that Reign of Revelation.
Also,
hopefully.
Seth will need some more interaction as well because he's already used the Scatter to the Winds and the Fading Hope just to stem the bleeding that these aggro decks can do.
Now we're getting that figure of destiny leveled up a little bit. So this is going to be an attack for 3 instead of just 2. I will say these cards, like Figure of Destiny, can be a little tricky from tracking the board state because they don't actually get counters, right?
Right.
You just have to remember now that is, in fact, a 2/2 instead of a 1/1.
Yeah.
Can we have a Precinct Captain again? Mother, may I?
One time, please.
Yes, you may have a Precinct Captain now. And here's that Reign of Revelation on the end step. Fairy Vandal. I think that's Warrant Warden, which is the blue-white.
I believe it taps a creature and does create some Thopters.
Let's see here. Again, those
That's
split cards, particularly tricky to figure out which one it is.
If it's the Ravnica one I'm thinking of.
There are 3 here. It could be Depose, Deploy, Warden, or even maybe Discovery Dispersal.
It's this one. It's the Warrant.
Warden. Okay,
Yeah.
what's the first one? Discarding land, untapping. Needs to start putting some creatures in play. That's Make Disappear off the top. So we got an answer for the next thing. Lumbering Falls, the Simic creature land, is the land for turn. I don't actually know if we have white mana in this deck or if we are playing Warden for just the Warrant side. This is what I mentioned in the draft, that the front side of all these cards, or the left side of all these cards, rather, is hybrid. So you don't have to have white mana to put it in your deck. Really good opportunities for extremely light splashes, too.
Yes.
Maybe you have 1 white mana source or 2 white mana sources in your whole deck. If you're just happy to play the blue side of that spell, then you can pretty safely have that splash.
And splashing those cards is really easy when you have access to Prismatic Vista and Ash Barrens, where it's really easy to get these one-off basics that you're looking to splash.
Big attack here, especially because this Precinct Captain, if it hits, is going to make a token, and this board is going to start growing at a fast pace. And Seth, no real way to answer multiple creatures, no sort of board wipe. Going to have to play this game incrementally. If you get behind, you're going to stay behind. We do have that Fairy Vandal we can flash in to block here, but none of these blocks are profitable. That's just going to be a 1/2. We can bounce off the Law Rune Enforcer, or we can chump the Figure of Destiny or the Precinct Captain.
And it also depends what's in Reed's hand as well, because he's just left all his mana open. You might have some interaction just to deal here.
Yeah, unless, we do have Make Disappear as well.
And you can also make this Figure of Destiny even bigger if nothing happens.
Yeah, a lot of options for Seth here. We can flash in the Fairy Vandal. We can use Warrant to put one of these cards back on top of Reed's deck.
Yep.
We can do both. We can do just one and hold up the Make Disappear for what's going to happen second main phase. So Seth, understandably in the tank here a little bit. Looks like we are going to see Warrant, I imagine, topping the figure of, or the Precinct Captain, rather?
Yeah.
Yeah.
had to use 2 cards to deal with this precinct captain. Unless Reed has a shelter.
Reed definitely thinking. And some mana is being tapped. You hate to see that if you're Seth.
Yeah.
Shelter kind of a blowout here, it must be
Right,
said.
yeah. And here it
And
is.
there it is.
Give it Pro Blue.
Yeah, you're going to choose Pro Blue here. Pro Blue or White would work for this exact spell, but your opponent has no white lands, so let's also give it protection from Blue in case something else happens. That's countered. Reed's going to draw a card.
Damage happens.
We've just made a 2-for-1 happen here. We still have an opportunity to flash in the Fairy Vandal. Not sure. Yeah, see, that's why Seth is stopping here. Maybe just deciding, I can't afford to let you make a token. Let me just chump that thing now, or instead just save 1 damage, bounce off the Law Rune Enforcer. And you're going to take 4, and Reed's going to get a token. We are now also tapped out of Make Disappear.
Yep. Seth is also just putting a load of resources in trying to get rid of this precinct captain, right? Like it was counted, it was bounced the first time.
Yep.
Now we had the warden, and then Reed just had the shelter, the 1 card.
I'm not sure I like playing this Fairy Vandal to save a single point of damage from the Law Rune Enforcer rather than keeping our options open, because now he's a Phalanx leader.
Yeah.
If Reed has another way to target a creature, get that heroic trigger, that's basically GG's on the spot.
Which is very easy for Reed. There's a lot of that in this deck.
Yeah, we definitely have, I think we counted like 5 or 6 that we thought he might main deck, which is quite a few.
Yes.
So now we got a Phalanx leader, and that could just be going to get in with the Fairy Vandal and Ninjutsu it. This is what you want to do with your Ninja of the Deep Hours, though not usually when you're this far behind on board. Pestermite was the draw for turn, or the draw off the Ninja of the Deep Hours, rather, I believe. Pestermite will buy you a little time. You can flash that in, tap down a big attacker, maybe trade with something else. There is a unique interaction here that viewers may not be aware of, which is that the heroic triggers happen when you target a creature with a spell.
Yeah.
Does not matter if that spell resolves.
Yeah.
So that Make Disappear, even if we see Reed Duke, for example, tap out for like an entwined borrowed hostility, still going to get the trigger on Phalanx Leader, which is going to do a ton of damage regardless of whether that spell resolves or not.
Exactly, yeah.
What sort of outs does Seth have in this spot?
I think he has many. So he has this Make Disappear, which kind of does something. Oh, here comes the Launch the Fleet.
There is a Launch the Fleet.
Reed respecting that people don't know what Launch the Fleet is and playing it upside down.
Exactly. Essentially playing it upside down. Now,
big respect.
We see this only for 2. Do we think Reed is potentially playing around potential counter magic? I mean, this it almost seems like Reed has X-ray vision.
Yeah.
I
mean, if I'm playing against a blue mage that has like 4 blue mana up, well, Seth's going to scoop it up here because you just can't beat this quick clock. But if I'm against like open blue mana, you have to respect something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the right call by Reed there, saying this is enough. Yeah. And I'm just, instead of possibly leading into some sort of weird blowout, I'm just going to do just enough, keep some other mana up just in case.
And this is Reed on the draw as well.
I was just going to say, great minds, Emma Partlow. That was Reed on the draw.
And he just demolished.
It was Seth on a mulligan to 6.
Yep.
And cardboard matters in this matchup.
And Shelter was just pivotal on that turn as well.
Yeah, it was a huge shelter. That really kind of sealed things up, I would say, for Reed. He was already ahead, and not getting to put that Precinct Captain back on top, which could then maybe get Make Disappear, depending on how Reed sequenced his plays after that, just meant that the game was kind of wrapped up by Shelter. While we are waiting for our players to do some sideboarding, maybe adjust their main deck a little bit, we got to thank one more sponsor here at CubeCon, and that is CubeHeads. Have you met Steve before?
I haven't, no.
Steve is this wonderful fellow from Delaware who is a big Cube fan, big member of the Cube community, and he has taken it upon himself to document really the human interest stories of the people behind Cube. You know, there are tons of podcasts, articles, whatever out there telling you what the 10 best cards in this set are for your Cube, all this kind of stuff. But really nobody out there that's just showing you the people behind the scenes, showing you the people that are part of this vibrant community that we see on display here in Madison, Wisconsin. And that's exactly what Steve's doing. I'm sure he'll want to interview you at some point.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Is Steve at CubeCon right now?
Yeah, Steve is.
Okay.
You may notice him because every single article of clothing he has is somehow magic swagged out.
Okay.
He has a Black Lotus jacket and all kinds of other stuff. So if you want to check out some of these videos, go to youtube.com/cubeheads, CUBEHEADS. Check out these videos. I'll personally recommend an interview with Parker Lamascus, a friend of mine, great Cube curator, great Cube theorist, and a really good interview with him and Steve in Philadelphia in a park. So
Nice.
real nice
Nice
video to watch.
backdrop.
Nice if you just want to.
It sounds very quaint.
If you just, it is very quaint. It's very quaint. If you just want, some good vibes. They're both very nice, soft-spoken gentlemen. So check it out.
It's like
Cube heads.
It's like Cube ASMR.
Yeah, pretty much. It is a lot.
That sounds great.
All right, back to the business at hand. What kind of sideboard are we looking for Seth?
Oh, I didn't really see much in Seth's sideboard that anything that could do against this Boros aggro deck.
Well, what I wonder is if we see cards like Nesh and Hornbeetle, which were cut for being just Grizzly Bears.
Maybe those Grizzly Bears is just enough to stem the bleeding.
Yeah, I mean, you know what would have been better in this situation than a lot of cards is Grizzly Bears. I mean, at least would have traded with something in combat. It would have done more than Reign of Revelation or Fading Hope, honestly, even did.
That was the problem, and something I kind of realized, as we were looking at when Seth was building his deck, it's just yes, there are some early creatures, but Seth didn't see any of those. He had this Fairy Vandal, which didn't really do a lot. Tapping out for a Reign of Revelation is fine when you're ahead.
Yeah, or at parity.
Or at parity,
but not when you're way behind.
Not when you're facing down 6 to 7 power against Reduke of all people.
Yeah, and it must be said, Seth on a pretty rough opening hand. We had Curiosity, Reign of Revelation, Ninja of Deep Hours, some lands, and Fading Hope, I believe. And that was on a mull, so maybe you don't even keep that on 7, but on 6, you're kind of forced to keep it.
Yeah.
Bottoming that Curiosity, which was definitely the right call.
Agreed.
That would have done absolutely nothing in this game. But Ninja of Deep Hours, not showing off what it's really capable of. You don't really want your 4-mana card draw spell in your opening hand under any circumstances. You want to develop your role before you get to that part of the game. You want to top deck that late. So hopefully we see an explosive, strong, reactive opening hand from Seth here and some good, close magic. If you're Reed, just run it back.
I mean, I just run it back.
Just run it back,
I
right?
would be thrilled to have that game 1 on the play as the aggro player and just didn't really have much of a sweat.
Yeah. Like we said, it was...
Not that I've ever seen Reduke sweat it out in a Magic game, ever, because he's the most cool and calm and collected person I think I've ever seen in Magic.
I feel like that is one of the most common constants in really good players is not getting emotionally invested in the outcome of what's going on.
Deadpan. I don't know how people do it.
All the best players I know are so good at... I mean, it's not that they're, robots. We're not talking about emotionless machines here, but they're really good at looking at the game from an emotional remove. And not...
It's almost like they just flick a switch. It's like, yep.
Yeah. Whereas I think
really
a lot of people, there's these subtle ways that your emotions will inform plays where, you really want this to work. And so you might make a slightly suboptimal play because it's something you really want to happen. Or, you've talked yourself into some line and the idea of changing your strategy is like, well, I'm already down this road, so I better not change because that feels bad. Who cares if it feels bad? If it's optimal, do it. And we're going to see Reduke do just that. Make some optimal decisions here. Let's see what Seth's opening hand is. Lumbering Falls, Land, Fairy Vandal, Fading Hope.
I can't see the other card.
Couple more lands, maybe it looks like.
Yeah, maybe.
Gold card there. Certainly looks like a better opening hand than we saw last game. That's Elvish Reclaimer and maybe River Hoopu.
Yeah, those are early creatures. Yes, they're not going to do the things that you would ideally like them to do, but it might save you 2-3 points of damage.
Seems like an easy keep to me. If you can just play a Fairy Vandal and a River Hoopu, that's going to be way better than last game in terms of just having early blockers in play.
Having some creature presence just allows you to not die as quickly as we did in game 1.
And as far as Seth knows, I mean, Seth doesn't necessarily know that Reed has so little interaction for creatures. Because a 1/3 and on its baseline, not the most exciting power toughness line, not the most exciting stat line, but we know from looking at Reed's deck that that's actually going to be, that's going to buy a ton of time.
High toughness is relevant here. Stuff like Sylvan Advocate is a really good example. That being a 2/3 is just really relevant in this matchup.
Looks like Seth was in the tank there, deciding whether or not to lead on Elvish Reclaimer or just lead on Lumbering Falls, and choosing instead to put a body in play, which I respect. No turn 1 play from Reed Duke. It is worth noting that compared to maybe a traditional mono-white aggro deck from like a Vintage Cube or something, Reed's deck definitely does not have the density of 1-drops you would want in a deck like that. It's definitely a little higher curving. That's the nature of this cube. Here comes the 3-2. That's a Crawl Harpooner.
Yeah. This is a much better start for Seth compared to the first game.
Absolutely.
Just having some early creatures just allows you to not get blown out by something like a Heroic Reinforcements.
Now, Fearless Legend coming down on turn 2 here for Reed Duke. Oftentimes, you don't want to play this fledgling until turn 3,
Yeah.
so you can follow up with land immediately. But I think Reed making a good read here that there's not going to be any damage-based removal coming out of this blue-green deck, so if they got removal, it's going to be bounce. It's going to be something that doesn't care about that +1/+1 counter. They'll only play on curve and just get this thing in play as soon as possible.
And Seth's getting in the red zone here, trying to just try and race the aggro player.
Yeah, which I think is definitely the right call given the current board state. And we know that Seth has a couple more cheap threats in hand here.
Yep.
And it looks like a 3-drop.
Oh, the
That's
Mana War.
a Mana War.
That's a really nice one here.
Fantastic.
Just you want to put this Boris aggro deck on the back foot as much as possible. And Seth is just doing that as well.
Dowser. Sorry to interrupt there.
No, it's fine.
Shipwreck Dowser, the other card in hand from Seth. I'll be honest, I'm not sure I love bouncing that creature with the Mana War here because...
You do get an extra counter.
Well, yeah, you get the counter, but also you could have played the Lumbering Falls there and still deployed the Fairy Vandal.
Yeah.
And then untapped and then bounced the Fearless Fledgling, which maybe you take a hit for 2. You know, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think maybe that sequence could have been a little more advantageous. Now we're staring down a blocker that can actually trade with something, but anytime Reed Duke is forced to block, I think you're feeling pretty good if you're Seth.
And Seth's going to play this Warren and try and bounce the Fledgling.
Here's a question. Why do you do that after blocks? Why not before combat so you get through with that extra damage?
Yeah, I think Seth might have been slow on the timing there.
I'm not sure. There could be reasons too. I
Sure.
definitely put all trust in our players. These are some really skilled players down there, but I do wonder why we didn't see that before combat just to get in for 1 more point of damage.
Yeah.
There's Lumbering Falls now. No more board development at this time for Seth, but we will see that Fairy Vandal coming down next turn.
Here comes the Fledgling again.
The bird is back.
For a third time.
The bird just keep coming back, and here is a Ancestral Blade.
Just... With Reed being on the back foot, he just trying to stay alive because he is on 10 right now.
10 life already. I mean, this is actually a faster clock than we saw out of Reed Duke's deck in the last game, even though that is ostensibly the aggro deck. There's River Hoopu that I think I mislabeled another card as previously.
Can just also, don't know if we have enough mana to animate this Lumbering Falls. I believe it's 4 mana.
Yeah, we don't have land in hand. We have River Hoopu, Fairy Vandal.
And a gold.
That
Something
last card
else.
is evading me. I want to say it's...
I want to say it's
Is it
Fading Hope. That's what I think it is.
I think it's Fading Hope, which would be great. Fading Hope is great in this board state because you are getting under a Reed Duke right now.
Yep. Here comes
the Hoopu.
Hoopu.
A beautiful little bird. Who could be mad at this guy?
Right.
It's bird on bird violence here at CubeCon. Hoopu versus Fledgling. I want to get a ruling on this from you, Emma.
Yeah.
I think it is egregious that Fledgling doesn't always have flying. It only has flying till end of turn when you play a land. It's a bird.
Right.
But people have told me, no, it's a fledgling.
Is it a
Fledglings, by
baby
definition,
bird?
are not always flying. What's your ruling?
Considering the art is of it flying.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's what I would do.
I think you shouldn't be allowed to put wings on something in art unless it's flying. That's just me.
Okay. Good thing the Balrog doesn't have flying then from Lord of the Rings.
Precisely. One more counter here on this Fearless Fledgling, and now the biggest thing on the board. We do have a 3-2 with Reach that's going to keep it at bay for a little longer. And again, Reed on blocking duty, so going to be a while before we can actually turn.
Reed is also light on red mana as well, which might be relevant in the late stages of the game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty unlikely for Reed to want to double spell with 2 red cards because there are so few in his deck. Here comes Heroic Reinforcements. Are we going to see an attack here, you think? I mean, you want to benefit from that temporary buff.
Yep, but you also want to make 2 soldiers, which just helps.
Right, this could just be a very expensive raise the alarm. No, it's not. So these have a temporary buff till end of turn. That's a 4/4 Fearless Fledgling and a 3/3 Soldier carrying an Ancestral Blade, getting into the red zone.
The Harpooner can block the Fledgling, because I believe it does have reach, but it would die in combat.
Yeah, it would just get sacrificed here. And Reed, I believe, on 1 or 2 cards in hand, running out of resources here. At some point, it's going to have to stop hitting land drops.
Yeah.
And if it's now, if there's no more further land drops, then that Harpooner threatens to actually trade with the Fledgling on a turn where we don't have a Heroic Reinforcements buff. If you're Seth, are you saying, I'm just going to race? Are you going to Fading Hope a token, take all this damage, use your life as a resource, and just swing back?
I think I like swinging back. It also depends on what else is in Seth's hand. But this Fading Hope's going to be really good here.
We know it's a Fading Hope. We also know it's a Fairy Vandal. It's going to be committed to the board on end step here.
Yep.
And Seth making that assessment saying, yep, I take it. moving that equipment to a different soldier so that power and toughness can also block. Here comes the Fairy Vandal on end step.
Yep.
We're now attacking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on board.
Also have a land, so we can
Now we could animate the
this
Lumbering Falls and attack for a total of 11 if we wanted to.
3/4 is a notable stat line as well.
You attack with that, you're just going to get 2 blocks. One will be a trade, one will be a chump. But then I think you leave Reed in a place where the next turn, how can he possibly attack?
Right.
If you end up getting rid of your other 2 tokens right now, and you're left with just a soldier token and a fearless fledgling, how do you ever block next turn?
Oh,
We're activating Hoopu, putting a counter on the Fairy Vandal,
And gaining some life.
gaining a little bit of life, just saying, let's play this conservatively, all right? I don't know what you got in your deck. I'm just going to get in with my evasive flyers that you have no way to answer, keep these blockers back, play this a little slow, which
Yep.
I think is just a smart line from Steph.
I agree.
There are definitely ways that Reed Duke's deck could steal a win here explosively, but I think it's going to be really hard from a life total of 15.
Yeah.
I think we have Integrity Intervention in Reed's hand, and then 1 card we just drew for turn. Now that Hoopu and that Fairy Vandal, that's just a pretty powerful engine.
It's just a nice synergy, right?
Even if Seth does nothing else for the rest of the game, but just activate Hoopu, put a counter on the Fairy Vandal. Reed will be dead in 3 attacks that way. On all the while, Seth will be drawing cards and gaining life just in case something goes awry.
Yeah. Reed in the tank here.
3 cards in hand, actually, it looks like.
Yes.
So I missed 1. We know 1 is Integrity Intervention.
Just figuring how he can survive with these flyers in play.
Haven't seen a land drop yet.
Nope.
Reed may be wishing he had one of those board webs in his deck right now.
Right.
Though I doubt it is in there. I'd be very surprised.
I
if
would
we-
also be very surprised. Especially with Seth Seth runs counter spells, right? He's got
Yeah.
Scatter the Winds and stuff. So bringing that in against the tempo we control deck might not be a great idea.
I mean, this game has played out so differently from our first game.
Yeah.
Not only did Seth deploy threats pretty quickly and set up good defenses, but really just went on the offensive immediately.
Yes.
Immediately was attacking and actually presented a faster clock than the aggro deck in the early turns of the game.
Reed also didn't have that turn 1 play, which is really important as well.
That is true.
Even not on the play.
Here comes a Phalanx leader. Now, this is one of the ways that we could potentially have a huge swing in a very short amount of time.
Right.
That heroic trigger on the Phalanx leader is very scary. And is
A
that
certain
a shelter
shelter.
immediately on the Phalanx leader? It is.
Oh my days.
So, that's
Being
quite a bit of power and toughness distributed across the board.
And
we're going to draw a card for our trouble. So that shelter right there just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 power and toughness in play and drew a card for 2 mana.
that's pretty good.
Pretty good. It also, because the Phalanx leader is summoning sick, this is not going to matter here, but in future games, that can also effectively make a creature unblockable if Seth only has green or blue blockers.
Yes.
Give protection from the only color of creatures that can block and swing in without any fear.
Who says white doesn't have card draw?
Look at this. Reed Duke saying, you want to race? Let's race. Swinging in for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 damage now.
Some blocks will have to happen because Seth will be going to 6.
Yeah, I think as far as Seth is concerned, this Crawl Harpooner and Mana War and Elvish Reclaimer, they are just chumps.
Yes.
They are just fodder for the mill. They are to keep him alive long enough for this Fairy Vandal and River Hoopu to go the distance. If we untap and have another way to target that Phalanx leader, that could be it.
That could be
Just
it.
wrap it up. You will no longer have any trade. I mean, honestly, I think you got to take these trades in combat while you can.
Yes.
Because this is a board state where a Grateful Apparition, for example, would be a huge nightmare
Backbreaking.
for Seth.
Yeah.
I believe if we're not mistaken, we believe Seth to have a Fading Hope in hand.
Yep.
Nice little efficient bounce spell that deals with that Fearless Fledgling, which has been growing
Yep.
in a really tidy way. And Reed already proactively committing that shelter to the board,
Yep.
so not able to use it to protect something, which is part of the value of putting him on his back foot like this.
Yes.
Forcing him to use something like a
really powerful protection spell that you don't really want to use as you don't want to treat it as like a sorcery, basically.
yeah, this was, I mean, we talked about how good that shelter was, but
It was
imagine if
really
it did
good.
also counter a spell
Like
of
in the
Seth's.
like in the first game, that shelter blew
Yes.
out that warrant. That's where Shelter is like the best, but also it's really good in this case because it's essentially just grown the
I
board.
think Seth may have just, unless if I didn't misread that hand gesture, I think Seth may have just said, take it.
Oh no.
Just go to
Oh
6.
no.
Is this a borrowed hostility? That is a borrowed hostility.
Oh, no.
You said take it. Now you're taking 3
Uh,
more, putting you to 3. This is exactly how this game can get stolen. Reed Duke doing everything that needs to be done here. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 damage now.
Go to 3.
Putting, and Integrity Intervention is the
Yes,
last card in
and
Reed's
then
hand.
top day.
Now, the River Hoopu activation will put you exactly
Yep.
out of Integrity Intervention range. Right now, Seth doesn't know it, but he is dead. He's
Yes.
a dead man walking to that Integrity Intervention in Reed's hand. Will we see a Hoopu activation, or will we see him trying to get 7 points of damage through somehow? We activate the Lumbering Falls. We'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attackers to 2 blockers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 damage. And we can only block the top 2. That's Lumbering Falls and Crawl Harpooner. We take exactly 6 and go to 1.
Oh my days.
We take exactly 6 and go to 1. There's a
But the
Blossoming
Blossoming
Defense! Do we have land for it, though? Bubble Snare. Bubble Snare on one of the soldier tokens.
Oh my.
A kicked Bubble Snare. That makes... We can't animate the Lumbering Falls, though. Does that make this lethal?
We do have a Blossoming defense as well to chip in.
We do. The Blossoming Defense, I think, is going to make this lethal.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yep, here we go. Yep.
That's lethal.
Yeah.
That's game.
Oh, that was so close.
Stolen. I mean, I can't decide who stole this game. I
Right.
really can't decide. It felt like Reed was so far behind for so long.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, one big turn, and he had
My
Seth dead
days.
to rights.
Yeah.
Dead to rights with that Integrity Intervention in hand. And what seemed like maybe a foolhardy choice to not block by Seth turned out to be exactly what he needed to then steal the win right back from Reed Duke. Incredible gameplay, and this is exactly what I expected out of this cube. You know, people look at these cards sometimes and are like, oh, these cards aren't as exciting as Lightning Bolt or whatever.
They're a bit mopey or whatever,
Look at the games you can have when you have a cube like this with such a narrow power level band. Really thrilling magic here in Madison.
Yeah, it was great. And another exciting thing about Game 3 is that Reed's going to be on the play.
Yeah, that's exciting.
That is
Maybe not exciting if you're Seth, but it's definitely going to be exciting for us.
It's exciting considering how Reed was managed to win the first game, being on the draw, nearly won that game, being on the draw.
My goodness gracious. Being on the draw with no 1-drop, too.
Right.
I mean, a 1-drop getting in a couple points of chip damage before Seth was able to stabilize would have also made the difference in that game. So really, really thrilling magic here. And we're going to see a Game 3, which I love.
Yes.
I just love to see more magic.
More games, more magic, more cube.
The first game with Reed on the play, though, I definitely would be shaking in my boots if I was Seth. I also don't think we saw any cards there that I don't think were in Seth's main deck. So in terms of sideboard cards, was the Harpooner maybe? No, Harpooner was probably in the main deck.
Harpooner was in there.
Yeah.
I think Harpooner is just a fine 3-2 with reach, right?
3-2
And
is
if it can ping a fly, it can ping a flyer. But like stat-wise, it's great.
Yeah.
It's good enough in a against a deck that has a lot of mopey. I wouldn't say mopey, but like one power, 2 power creatures.
I mean, we saw a lot of damage done in the first game with an unleveled up Figure of Destiny and the Tapper. The Tapper, which is just a 1-2 for 1.
Yep.
Those got in for quite a bit of damage. So 3-2
Yeah.
lines up pretty well against those.
Yep.
And I think any cheap body here is really going to help Seth. Amazing that Seth read that.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were Seth, I'd be so proud to have read that situation so perfectly and against one of the greatest players playing the game today. Really, really amazing match.
That Flanax idiot got very scary very quickly.
I mean,
with
we
that
are
shelter.
seeing the I mean, Reed had like the perfect hand basically to have even a chance, even a shot.
And even had the burn spell at the end just to finish Seth off.
Yeah.
Seth read the situation really well.
Yeah, and with one more mana, we could have even seen the integrity side of Integrity Intervention, triggering Phalanx Leader one more time in that turn, which would have been lethal.
Yeah.
So we were one land drop away. We were one life away. We were so close to being lethal on either side of the battlefield.
So many small margins.
My biggest hope for this game, let's get 2 good 7-card hands. I don't want to see anybody mulliganing.
See Reed with a Clarion Spirit, a Battlefield Forge.
A Plains.
A Plains. It looks like the Virtuoso card, I believe, is in there.
That does look like an Illuminator Virtuoso.
That's
We're
the
getting
one.
2 7s. You love to
And
see
here
it.
comes the 1-drop.
Leading off on a hopeful Initiate. I will say not the scariest of one-drops.
It can easily get out of hand. If you manage to have like a Flanax leader and some way to target it, those counters are going to go out of control. Granted, Seth doesn't really have any artifact or enchantments that need to be dealt with. But
Well, I do see Curiosity in Seth's hand right now.
Sure.
A card that Seth chose not to cut. I think it was Curiosity. Yeah, still on
Yeah.
top there.
I
There's a
believe-
Frost Trickster off the top of that Serum Vision.
I believe there's like a Curiosity and a Pilgrim's Eye that can target, but you're just playing it because it's a 1-mana value creature.
Yeah, exactly. You want any warm body to put an equipment on, put a counter on, and just get in there and start chipping away
See
with
the
the
River
damage.
Hopo once again.
I think that card's quite good in this matchup. I mean,
Yeah.
the 1/3 body for 2 and the late game life gain. Late game life gain. Say that 4 times fast. That is, I think, a potent combination in this matchup.
Indeed. Let's see what Reed's going to do here. I'd probably play this Virtuoso, would be my guess. Just try and establish the board.
I think the question does come up. If you have another 2-drop, do you wait? If you have a 2-drop and a 1-mana combat trick or targeting spell in hand, you maybe wait so you can guarantee get some connive value off that Virtuoso.
Sure.
But we know, we see Reed playing it out. So, again, we didn't see a ton of cheap interaction out of Seth.
No.
This is a terrifying start.
It's a very... Virtuoso is just a terrifying card.
I mean, it is not out of the realm of possibility to untap and see this Virtuoso do 8, 12
Yeah.
damage. Like, it is not out of the realm of
and
possibility.
you also get to connive, which just seems great.
Just keep those combat tricks flowing
Yep.
and make this card really quite terrifying. Fading Hope, great in the face of this, though.
Yes.
Because you would love to basically counter all those combat tricks, one-for-one them, while also saving yourself a huge bite of damage from that Virtuoso.
Yep.
Not quite the same with the Phalanx Leader, for example. The Phalanx
course.
Leader, Fading Hope, not that good against.
No, because it's already done the thing, right?
Exactly. The target's already happened. Those counters are going everywhere else. Bouncing the Phalanx Leader doesn't do a whole lot for you. Land Hoopu, probably what you got to do in this spot, but
Yep.
I think Reed might be smelling blood in the water if he has any combat tricks in his hand for this Virtuoso.
Here comes the Battlefield
We
Forge.
got the red mana for it.
What are we going to do here?
Maybe a main phase Shelter. Just another 2-drop.
Clarion Spirit's a
Clarion
nice one.
Spirit.
He has the Entwine Red spell.
Yeah, doing this before combat tells me we definitely are going to see a combat trick
Yeah.
out of Reed Duke. Otherwise, you would just play this Clarion Spirit after
Also,
combat.
also Seth is just tapped out, so you can just do whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a good window of opportunity here.
There's a Borrowed Hostility targeting the Illuminator Virtuoso. This is going to have a couple triggers.
Yep.
Second spell cast. We're going to get a Spirit token.
We're going to connive.
Clarion Spirit has already done its work. That's already made this 2-drop really worth running in this deck.
Yep.
We are going to get to connive, and now we may be looking at 10 damage.
Double strike, because it's 5 and double strike, so it'll
Yeah,
make it 10.
if Reed Duke connives away a non-land card here, it's going to put a +1/+1 counter on the Virtuoso.
And there's
he
the favorite
does
hoplite.
Take 10.
I think this Hoopu's going to be doing some...
Take 10 or I'm going to roast that bird. These are your 2 choices. We also are going to get the training trigger on the Hopeful
Yep.
Initiate, making that a 2/3. What a start, Emma.
Yeah, as I said, being on this is why the Boros Aggregate deck just wants to be on the play. Curving into Initiate, into Virtuoso, and then having a Clarion Spirit and plus Spell just seems fantastic. I don't think Reed could have asked for a much better start than this.
Clarion Spirit, fantastic here because it's essentially building a backup plan.
Yes.
Plan A, I'm going to kill you with Illuminator Virtuoso.
Yeah.
You're going to be dead so fast. Plan B, while I'm doing that, I'm going to make a whole army of Spirit tokens, and we know that Seth has no real way. Look at this. Opting to just absorb some damage, bounce off with the River Hoopu, take 10, go to 9.
And another thing that's really good with this Clarion Spirit, cards like Heroic Reinforcements just become so good with Army of Spirits in play.
Yeah. We do know there's a Frost Trickster in Seth's hand. That's a way to at least make sure you don't die next turn to the Illuminator Virtuoso.
Yep.
And I also see Pestermite in his hand.
Yes.
So we could basically keep this Virtuoso tapped down for quite a while.
Yeah.
Though, Reed could also just use that as a way to connive all the time
Right. This is it.
and continue to essentially pursue his strategy and get card selection. At some point, we're going to be throwing quite a bit of creatures in front of this Illuminator Virtuoso, I imagine.
Yep.
We are desperate for a Manowar, a Fading Hope, something to reset those counters and get this Virtuoso back down to a 1/1.
Either way, this Virtuoso has done more than it's needed to. It's done 10 damage already.
I think it's okay for your 10-drop to for your 2-drop. For your 2-drop.
Oh, here's a portable hole.
Cool, yes.
This is a really nice one.
I'm going to put this bird in a hole. Away it goes. Now
I'm going to play my second spell.
we're going to double spell again because Reed's curve is so low. We're going to be able to double spell very reliably.
Play a
And not
Precinct
only
Captain.
is it another spell, but it's a really good one.
It's a Precinct Captain as
Precinct
well.
Captain, one of the most threatening 2-drops in this deck.
It's
It is nothing but heaters from Reed Duke this game.
It's getting to the point now where, yeah, you probably need to bounce this Virtuoso, but Reed just has so much other good stuff going on, right? He has this Precinct Captain. He has this Clarion Spirit that's just making tokens. Like, dealing with the Virtuoso
Taking 4 here.
won't be enough now.
Still taking 4 in this spot, and you are dead to so much at this point.
Right. And this is just with freelance.
This is just with 3 lands. Even if you, so I think your line here has to be beginning of combat, Pestermite down that Illuminated Virtuoso.
Yep.
Then you have 2 blockers for 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers, and you're going to trade with any of your blocks except for the Spirit token, which I think just leaves you dead. So really tough spot here for Seth. We can see what this Boros aggro deck is capable of if it gets a fast start.
We're going to play Terramander.
All right, we got Terramander and Pestermite, so a little more
Just trying to
board
gum up the board as much as possible.
Going to be a good long time before that Terramander is going to threaten to grow at all.
Yeah, I don't think I would be very surprised if it happens this game.
Oh, yes, that would be very shocking. I feel like Reed's shopping around now for how he wants to dispatch Seth, not if
that
he
is
can.
just terrifying if you're Seth, right? It's like, how do I win this game? I have so many ways to do it. It's almost like Reed's playing with his food.
Rude, TBH. So what can Seth possibly draw here? Is there anything? I mean, fighting valiantly.
Fading Hope would be nice. But here comes the Pestermite pre-combat.
Going to combat. Let's tap down. I don't know. Maybe your creature is going to do 4, possibly way more to me. Get that out of here.
Yeah.
Still swinging in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage. Most of those attacks, except for the Spirit token, are also going to trade in combat.
Yeah.
There's no real profitable blocks here for Seth. Reed considering the attack, though, not immediately going all in, which...
Smart.
Very smart. I mean, we saw that this other deck is capable of racing. Seth's deck can turn things around. I think with this fast of a start, though, being on the back foot this much, it's going to be tricky for Seth to find a way to stem the bleeding and also then start attacking back himself.
Yeah. And considering this Hoopo is also been portable hold, there's like no real way to gain any life either. So, like, Reed just has some really good top decks here.
Yeah, I mean, having what is effectively the 1 removal spell in the deck, in your hand here for one of the better 2-drops against you. A good decision by Reed to draw that card. I think he made a wise decision to draw that card off the top of his deck. All right, Reed opting here to not get in with the Spirit, which would potentially mean that if some blocker was tied up on the Spirit, you get a little more damage through. But instead just saying, none of these are good blocks for you. I expect we'll see a trade for the Clarion Spirit here, though it must be said, Reed has all his mana untapped. We know he's got combat tricks. We know he's got shelter. I don't think you can afford to play around them if you're Seth, though.
There's going to be some more spirits in our future very soon, I think.
It'd be really impressive if the last 2 cards in Reed's hand were both instants and we could double spell in response to a block on the Clarion Spirit. That would be really disgusting.
Also, Seth has to worry next turn that depending on what Seth draws, this Virtuoso might be getting in for the first time in a few turns.
That's true. We have not seen an answer out of Seth's hand. We don't know all the cards right now, but we've expended our use of our Frost Trickster and our Pestermite, so we need to find another answer to that Virtuoso.
It's like, what does Seth need to turn the game here?
I think a miracle. I believe it's a miracle is what Seth's going to need.
Like what? Like an actual miracle card, or
there's no miracle card in the cube. For me here, I think the block is Pestermite on that Clarion Spirit.
Yep.
Try and stem the bleeding, and then I guess maybe throw the Terramander in front of the Precinct Captain to keep from getting another token. Take 2. Keep your Frost Trickster.
See if Reed does anything in response, because he does have 2 cards in hand, so it could very well just have something. Just try and get some value.
Okay, opting to instead trade the Frost Trickster for the Hopeful Initiate by double blocking.
So damage,
letting the Precinct Captain through. The first trick on that Precinct Captain means there's absolutely no way to block that. That is at all advantageous for Seth. Seth falling to 3. Reed making another token. Here is the Law Rune Enforcer.
Nice.
That's our tapper.
Yep, that will keep the Terramander at bay. This also means it's going to get this Virtuoso through as well.
Actually can't tap down the Terramander with Law Rune Enforcer. It can only tap creatures with mana cost 2 or greater.
Okay.
That's the restriction on that. You know, for that tapper, you get a better body. The 1/2 as a baseline is better than a lot of other tappers at 1 mana, like your Gideon's Lawkeepers, etc. The activation is also colorless instead of white, but there is a restriction on what you can tap down. Can't tap down tokens and can't tap down 1-drops. I believe it's Curiosity in hand for Seth, and boy, does that not look good right now. Prismatic Vista, Curiosity, and I believe Make Disappear.
Yeah.
None of these cards are keeping you from dying next turn, my friend.
Yeah.
Looks like we might see Curiosity on Terramander, attack, draw a card.
Just
see
see what
Just
the classic look at the top card of my deck.
see what happens.
I'm still dead. I'm not sure what Seth can draw to get out of this situation. Oh.
As a reminder for those out there,
okay. Seth put Curiosity on the freezing captain.
cheeky little move there.
Yep, giggles
so
all
Seth
round.
controls the Curiosity, so
Yep.
Seth will draw the card.
Yeah.
Reed acknowledging that this is not really a serious play, but if you're going to kill me, I'm going to draw a card along the way. We're going to see a concession here from Seth.
If you're going to get blown out by Reed, you got to have fun with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, he did put it on the first strike creature. So the first strike creature. Am I misreading? Did we both misread Curiosity? Is Reed going to draw the card? Do we misunderstand this?
I believe.
Laughter all around.
It doesn't matter anyway because Reed won that one.
Yeah.
And that's how important it is to be on the play.
Yep. So we are going to pop over to our second match that we have queued up so we can follow another drafter, see what Reed might face in the next round. This is Jake versus Wally. We are looking at a green-red deck versus a red-blue deck. We have a Jehoira in play, Burning Tree Emissary.
I think we're more of a Grixis deck because we do also have this Rakdos Crenarium
That's
as
true.
well.
And I see a Legolas Master Archer with a +1/+1 counter on it.
So we found the green player.
We found the green player, and it's Jake. We are also tied up at 1 game apiece. Reminder for those of you watching out there, this is our last main event draft here at CUBECon. These players are playing for top 64 contention. Some of them, like your Reed Dukes, they're already locked. Others are on the bubble, and they are trying to get in. This is a Traxos Scourge of Krug, a huge threat in this cube, immediately untapped with the legendary spell Fibblethip. Now presenting 7/7 Trample.
Wally's on the back foot here because he's on 3 and Jake's on 19.
Yeah, that's a 7/7 that's going to be blocking.
Yeah.
Jake definitely seems to be in the commanding position in this spot. Tomorrow, we will have coverage of the top 64 draft in the morning here, Central Time. Jay Light Ranger here from Jake. And then tomorrow afternoon is our top 8 draft. The winners of those top 64 drafts, the winners of each pod, will be drafting a copy of the Magic Online Vintage Cube. What a deck we see from Jake here. We have Bloodbraid Elf. We have Legolas. We have Wolfhere's Silverheart, which is this another payoff for targeting your creatures with things. Jake will have gotten fed in this draft by getting those combat tricks late. No one was taking those green spells, so as open as Reed Duke's deck was, Jake's colors were probably equally open.
Plus, Jake managed to draft one of the best cards in the queue, which is Legolas as well. And this Burning Tree Emissary is nice as well. It just allows him to go wide. This looks like based on what I've seen already, this looks like a really nice Gruul splashing black deck.
And just from what we've seen already, this deck could be the kind of deck that could really give Reed Duke a headache.
Yeah.
It looks like it's, I mean, we've already seen 2 bigger creatures in play than are anywhere within Seth's deck at all.
Yeah.
That Legolas, a huge nightmare, and we have no removal for it. Nothing.
No.
Portable Hole's not going to hit it. Tapping it down is not going to do a whole lot because a lot of the value of that Legolas is in the triggered ability.
Yeah.
So we could see a really interesting match, too, here. If it ends up being Jake versus Reed, which I believe it is. I believe our backup match here is going to show the pairing for the next round. Wally on the back foot. Not quite sure what's in Wally's pool. I'll see if I can get it pulled up so we can figure out what Wally could possibly draw to get out of this one.
Wally is still deliberating on what to do here in more of a way to figure out how they can survive. Can't quite see what's in Wally's hand here.
We did see...
Oh, we're going to rumble in with
Well, this is the great thing about Traxos is if you got another historic spell, effectively got Vigilance.
Yeah.
Which could make this not a
Ooh,
ball
go more.
That could make this a tricky proposition for Jake, even though already got him down to 3, got a pretty imposing board, but almost nothing in this entire cube is going to brawl with a 7/7.
Yes.
And so if Wally has drafted and built their deck such that they can consistently untap Traxos, you're not going to be able to block it.
You also have a Jura in the graveyard, which is a very historic focus spell as well.
Yeah, seems like a very focused deck from Wally,
Yeah.
just from what we can see, though he is shaking his head somewhat defeatedly, if I can read the body language correctly. Looks like 3 cards in hand, so plenty of action to work with here. That is, I'm going to check the card name real quick. That's the one that dies into a Thopter token. It's a blue 2/1. A recent addition to the cube, Thopter Mechanic. It also grows when you draw your second card each turn.
Oh, okay. Here comes Bloodbraid Elf.
Bloodbraid Elf does have haste. Changeling Berserker, not going to hit on that Cascade. Need something that costs less than 4 mana. What's it going to be? Oh, my goodness
no.
gracious.
What a hit.
A coy little smile from Jake. Oops, did I do that?
On-crop Crasher. That can just tap down something that if it chooses to be exerted, which is very likely going to be here.
I mean, this has got to be game, I think.
This is an incredible
You
hit.
just put, I mean, it's also got haste. You just put 2 haste creatures onto the battlefield. One of them is going to tap down that Traxos. How do you survive this? Do you have some trick up your sleeve, Wally? A couple of instant speed removal spells to possibly make this work. An instant speed historic spell, maybe, to untap Traxos. How do you get this done? Not even bothering to indicate the exert at the table because there's not going to be a turn where that is not going to untap, I don't think. I think this is going to be lights out for Wally here. Looks like we missed some really great magic over here, too. They went to game 3. This board state already very fascinating.
And there we go.
And Jake gets the win. I am so excited to see.
This is going to be a really fun matchup.
Oh, my goodness
Round 2
gracious.
is going to be sweet.
I mean, when you start Bloodbraid Elfing into Legolas, into On-Crop Crasher, into Burning Tree Emissary, into Jadelight Ranger, these are the cards that are going to pose a real problem to Reed Duke.
Well, that was fun.
Love this cube. Love the games this cube creates. Really awesome stuff.
Yeah.
So we're going to get our players shuffled up here. They're going to move on to the next round. We may have other rounds to finish up before we can get our pairings. Then we're going to come back, and we are going to see Reed Duke's Boros aggro deck with some heroic sub-themes go up against what, as far as we can tell, seems like a pretty terrifying red-green stompy deck.
With Legolas.
With Legolas, and that deck will have gotten every green card it wanted on the wheel based on what we saw out of the packs from Reed's seat. No one else appears to be playing green, so this deck will have had the pick of the litter.
Yep.
It's going to have that Saddle Rhymes tag we saw. That card's great in this matchup. It's already got a bunch of 3-drops that are going to cause a big headache, so can Reed do it? Can Reed pull the rabbit out of the hat? It's been a long day here at CubeCon.
I believe,
forgive my bad speech.
I believe in Reed. I have to believe in Fraben Inspector. Then the rules.
Fraben Inspector is going to go the distance. This is Andy Mangold and Emma Partlow coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin. Don't touch that dial. We got 2 more matches to play here tonight, and it's going to determine what our top 64 is for tomorrow.
Yep.
We'll see you soon. Welcome back to CubeCon. I have the pleasure of being here with Emma Partlow in the booth to watch Reed Duke draft the regular cube, a cube all about retail limited style play patterns, plays a lot like Ultimate Masters, Time Spiral Remastered, something like that, but of its own unique design. We saw some fireworks in round 1.
We definitely did. Reed Duke just drafting this really impressive Boris aggro deck. And it was 2-1. It wasn't like a complete steamroll, but the fact that Reed managed to win game 1 on the draw was a big part of it.
Definitely a feather in his cap to win on the draw, which can be harder for these aggro decks when they don't start with the threat and play before their opponent has some answers. I think, honestly, the bigger fireworks we saw was in the little brief glimpse we got of the deck that Reed is going to go up against here. It's Jake's red-green, I think also aggro deck, to be honest, but it's going to be a little bit bigger.
It's a bit more stompy, I think.
It's going to be a little bit bigger than the red-white aggro deck from Reed Duke. Let's just get down to the games. Let's get down to the action here at CubeCon. Once again, my wish for all games. Good opening 7. That's all I want. Looks like we got no mulligans. Jake is on the play, leading off with a Canyon Slough.
Notably not a Greenland. Which?
Plains pass from Reed Duke. No 1-drop.
Reed on the draw as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably everything you need so far to go right if you want to win. Burning
Burning
Tree
Tree
Emissary. Oh, no.
No.
Burning Tree Emissary pass.
Oh.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was just it resolving. Here we see Dreadhorde Arcanist, a really interesting card in this cube because
Oh, yeah.
I think people are used to seeing this played in cubes alongside of a whole slew of 1-mana spells.
Yeah.
And that's not actually what happens here. There's not that many 1-mana spells. What there are a lot of ways to bump power and toughness and actually allow this thing to flash back a much bigger spell out of the yard. But worth noting, we put 3/5 of power toughness in play
Here
on turn
comes the
2.
Oh, here we go.
But we're not blocking with that. We're
Yeah.
just going to get into the red zone, I think, here. Say, yep. Oh, we're actually even exalting to make it so the soldier can't block.
I mean, against the Boros aggro deck, you just need to out aggro the aggro deck, right?
Yeah.
And if you're on the draw and you have this curve of Burning Tree Emissary, any 2-drop, and then you've got this 3/2 haste creature that can just like tap down a creature.
Swinging in for 6 on turn 3. I'm not sure I like the exalt there. I think I'd be interested in the information of whether Reed blocked or not.
Yeah.
Does Reed think this is the kind of game where he's willing to trade off with the Burning Tree Emissary, the kind of game where he's willing to just bounce off the Dreadhorde Arcanist, or the kind of game where he's willing to trade with the On-Crop Crasher or not block at all?
And here comes a Launch the Fleet.
Launch the fleet for 1. No heroic trigger on this soldier, so not the most amazing launch the fleet ever, but if Reed's got nothing else to do with his mana, then certainly better than nothing. But as far as racing
missing
goes,
a land drop as well.
Missing a land drop. As far as racing goes, that launch the fleet is not going to compete with what we see on Jake's side of the battlefield.
Missing a land drop and also missing a red mana source as well. So that's gonna stifle some of Reed's plans here.
Treetop Village there from Jake, a very relevant card in this matchup. 3/3, a lot of stats for the power and toughness on Reed Duke's side of the battlefield, and that trample means not able to be chump blocked.
Is a Vivian.
Oh boy, this is one of the few planeswalkers in this cube, and I believe the only that is actually at a rare power level. That is Vivian, Champion of the Wilds. It's going to give all of Jake's creature spells flash. Can also temporarily give a creature vigilance and reach. Or what I think we're going to see here is, yes, cashing this in for the -2 to look at the top 3 cards of the library and exile 1 face down under it. That face down card can be cast later on if it is a creature spell. Can we get a peek at what Jake is seeing here? What do we got? We got Prismatic Vista. Reading very carefully, make sure you know exactly. You can tuck any card you want.
Is that
you can
Reckless
only
Rage?
That is Reckless Rage. You can tuck any card you want, but you can only cast it if it is a creature spell. Reckless Rage, amazing with Dreadhorde Arcanist. That would have been a total blowout. So probably a little bit sad to bottom that one, but you never know, right? Reckless Rage could have been further down. Will Reed choose to go after Vivian here? It looks like yes. Let's just clear that, get that out of here. Importantly, you can still cast the creature Vivian exiled. You don't need the Planeswalker in play to be able to cast that creature. So even though that Planeswalker is gone, if that face-down card is a creature, which we don't know if it is, we didn't see it here in the coverage booth, that card advantage still accessible to Jake.
And Reed still hasn't drawn his 3rd land.
Now we have an option to exalt on our attack, tap down that soldier, and get him for 6, put Reed to 5, or in fact even animate Treetop Village, put Reed to 2, pump spell.
I think this is game.
That is going to pump the Dreadhorde Arcanist. Is it going to make it powerful enough to flash back that card? I don't think so, because the mana value of that split card is going to be the combined mana value of both sides. So I believe we're seeing a +4 power on that Dreadhorde Arcanist, bringing it to 5, but the mana value of that split card, I believe, is 6 in totality. Let me confirm here, get that exact split card up so we can confirm, know exactly what's going on.
And here is the Valorous Stance that dealt with the Dreadhorde Arcanist. That would have been a, what, 5/8?
Now, interestingly, it was +4/+2, so it would have been a 5, 6, 4, 5, 5, I guess.
5/5, yeah, so 1/3.
Interestingly there, made the Dreadhorde Arcanist susceptible to Valorous Stance by pumping it.
Yes.
Otherwise, that Valorous Stance would have been a pretty bad card in this situation for Reed. Unable to deal with any of Jake's threats, giving one of his own threats indestructible, really not worth 2 mana in a card, so I don't think a misplay from Jake. Couldn't have expected that Valorous Stance, but
Jake is just, like, acknowledging that Reed doesn't have any lands. He's really strangled for mana, doesn't have any red, which is important as well.
I don't know if we saw that On-Crop Crasher.
Don't think it was exerted.
exerted, I mean, we would see some indication on it probably. Though you had no good blocks there with your 1-1.
But
You were just throwing it away
either
to
way,
save a couple life.
But either way, Jake is just like, yep, I'm the aggressor here. I'm the one that's making my land drops. I'm the one that can play my spells. I just want to.
Jake is right. One card left in hand, but
and
the cards in play will do it already.
And
you don't have to play anything else.
And reads on free.
Like, yep. I mean, this is where Treetop Village becomes impossible to answer. You
sure.
can chump block the On-Crop Crasher and the Burning Emissary for a while, but you cannot chump block that
Reed
Treetop Village.
Reed is looking a little defeated here, unfortunately. Just not drawn into what he needed.
Yeah, it's hard to say even that Jake's deck demonstrated how it can be better than Reed's here. Really just Reed stumbled really hard here. A lot of decks could have possibly... Jake may be a little nervous here, playing under the lights against one of the world's best Magic players.
Right.
Trying to animate that Treetop Village with a black mana, forgetting to untap his creatures.
Now we're exerting with the On-Crop Crasher.
Jake's a good friend of mine. That's why I'm razzing him.
So we're exerting this. On-Crop Crasher is going to tap this soldier token with the Ancestral Blade attached.
Yeah, we did misidentify that a little bit in the last game. Doesn't actually tap it, just says it can't block at the end of turn. No, I missed that as well. So that's why we don't see any tapping actually happening. But that 2/2 is unable to block this turn.
Yeah.
And this is lethal unless Reed has something.
Not sure what.
Still 5 damage coming through. And here's that lifelink we talked about.
Yep.
This is kind of a desperation lifelink. It's going to give +2/+1. That soldier is still going to... +2/+2, rather. I'm sorry.
Oh,
look at this. And integrity as well. I will take a big old bite of life gain here. Reed scrapping, trying to stabilize and stay alive under this. This is going to make that On-Crop Crasher just get eaten by the soldier token and a big old chunk of life gain for Reed. Trying to do the math. So +2, and then integrity is also +2. So it's going to be 5 life gain. Go to 8, take 5. So basically just completely nullified that attack.
Basically fogged.
Yeah, basically fogged, but got rid of that On-Crop Crasher.
Yeah.
And Jake now on, I believe, just 2 cards in hand.
Yes.
That Treetop Village, again,
relevant.
A persistent problem. That demands an answer. Here's the Fearless Fledgling. This not going to do a whole lot on this board.
Just going to block.
Yeah, not a whole lot right now, at least, on this board.
And you need to block a sizable amount as
and
well.
Follow up with a Prismatic Vista, though. Double landfall trigger here. It will cost Reed Duke a life, but that can make this Fledgling a 3/3, the first profitable block on any of Jake's attackers we've had the entire game.
And more importantly, this allows Reed to get the red source that he's been needing for the last few turns.
Yeah. We don't know what the rest of the cards in Reed's hand are, but if he was waiting for red to unlock some cards, he's got it now.
Yep. And with the trample on this Treetop Village, just having creatures with a sizable amount of power and toughness just means you're not going to die to leftover trample damage.
I'm telling you, if Reed somehow pulls this game,
this would be amazing.
That would be absolutely incredible. And it looks like we're going to see an attack.
Let's go.
Really interesting. Why do you think we saw the Fledgling before the attack?
I don't know. It's a really interesting one. Here comes the Dragon's Rage Channeler.
Dragon's Rage Channeler. Do we have Delirium? We have land, instant, sorcery. No, just land, instant, sorcery right now in the graveyard. So we're only 1 away from Delirium, though. Any of those creature spells hit the yard, that's going to be a 3/3. 2 3/3s now. Actually, a 4/4 with the sword in hand is that Fearless Fledgling. All of a sudden, Jake
might be on the back foot here.
Might be on the back foot. Now, based on what we saw out of Jake's deck, there are lots of live draws. That's a land. That goes to your hand, and you don't get a counter. That's how Explorer works. Another land, so that's a pretty cheap Mole Drifter, but not what Jake wanted right now. Jake did not want a 2/1 draw 2. Jake wanted a bigger body. The board is stable, and I dare say, Reed Duke now on the aggressive. Now, the big question I have, how many burn spells does Jake have in this deck?
That would be a good one to find out.
Is Reed going to do all this work to stabilize, somehow turn this game around,
we
and
know,
then just
we
get
know
lightning
about
strikes?
the Reckless Rage. It's not quite a burn spell, but it is a decent removal spell in this instance.
Yeah, I'm talking specifically about burn. Just go right to Reed's face. All right, you stopped me. You got a bigger board, but eat this lightning strike. You know, I got to come back to that early choice to exert the On-Crop Crasher, which seemed like maybe a very small edge. This game definitely is going to come down to those small edges, though. We saw Jake get to within an inch of closing this game out against Reed Duke, and then all of a sudden, the tables have turned.
And considering Reed been stuck on like 3 white mana for so long. The fact that, you know, that Valorous stance killing
borrowed
the,
hostility in hand for Reed.
that Valorous stance that dealt with the Arcanist as well. There has been answers despite Reed being tied up in mana. Trigger.
Put a creature in the graveyard, maybe.
Surveil. Yes, a
Swift
creature.
Blade Vindicator in the graveyard. We have Delirium now.
We are Delirious.
And we are also taking 7, if my math is correct, going to 6. Yeah.
Yep. Second main phase. What are we going to play? Precinct Captain's a nice follow-up.
I mean,
Oof.
that first strike will block quite well. Jake, I think at this point, needs Burn Spell or something like a Bloodbraid Elf to cascade into some real big value. We don't know exactly what Jake's pool looks like. We're learning along with you. Ooh. Cast your own Burn Spell against you. Direfleet Daredevil targeting the intervention side of Integrity Intervention. I don't need my own burn spells. I've got your burn spells. How would you like a 4-mana lightning heal to the face, Reed Duke?
Can't beat that.
Incredible. Shaking it up.
Game 1 handshake.
Jake going for the handshake.
The Game 1 handshake.
Jake wants as many handshakes as he can get from the world champion here, Reed Duke. Really incredible game we saw from Jake there. I got to say.
That was really close. That went right down to the wire.
Here's what I got to say. Jake won, but that was an incredible game by Reed Duke.
Yes.
Reed Duke playing to every single little edge and out that he had, turning that game, which seemed completely lost in the first 3 turns around, to the point that he was in the driver's seat and Jake needed to find some sort of answer, and Direfleet Daredevil provided that in that 4-mana lightning helix to the face. So,
well, there's your burn spell that you're on about.
Exactly. There it is. I mean, I'll just play yours. I don't need to play my own.
All right.
Wow. So
that was an incredible game.
Let's thank another one of our sponsors here while we're waiting for our players to sideboard. And right now, we want to talk about Card Castle. Card Castle provides organizational software to help you sort, catalog, and organize your collection so you can have it accessible at your fingertips, on your mobile phone, on your desktop machine, and know what you've got in your collection. I mean, how many times have you ordered a single that you actually already had 1 or 2 or 3 of?
Way more many times than I'm willing to admit.
It's one of those times that I feel like a disgusting, indulgent American when I'm like, I know I have his $1 card somewhere. I shall simply buy another, though. I can't be bothered to go through these boxes.
I will pay more postage.
Exactly.
Than the actual worth of the card itself.
But if you want to be better than me, if you want to be a better human than me, be a less indulgent American, and also, you know, hurt the environment less with shipping, you can get Card Castle and make sure you have your collection at your fingertips. It says here you can even organize your cube on Card Castle if you would so choose.
That would be good.
So check out Card Castle, and thank you for sponsoring CubeCon. Couldn't put on this event without all the help from our sponsors, and we really appreciate it. We're going to sideboards.
So Reed's on the play.
Yes. Reed is, I honestly forgot who won the game there for a second.
Reed is on the play.
Reed is going to be on the play here after that game was stolen with that intervention. That's going to make a big difference, for sure.
Huge difference.
And I think Jake learned a lot in that game about what Reed's deck is. I think we are not going to see combat tricks into open mana that might turn on a Valorous stance.
Yes.
I think we might see some very careful decisions made around when to exert or not. Reed Duke already mulliganing. Very quick, shuffling that away. Probably a no or 5-lander or something. Jake, given a nod that I assume is indicating keeping a hand.
One thing about Jake's, what we've seen of this Gruul deck is there is a lot of early creatures. So you do have these Burning Tree emissaries that can put in a Dreadhorde Arcanist or any other 2-drops, just gum up that board so early on when Reed's trying to play these 1, 2, 3 creature curves.
Burning Emissary, low-key, I think, an extremely powerful card in this cube. The tempo that provides, especially in the face of an aggro start, just turn 2, play 2 2-drops is really about as stabilizing a play as you can find in this entire environment. Reed going to keep his 6. We see Hopeful Initiate there. Plains, Hopeful Initiate is the turn 1 play. That is a 1-drop, so we are off to the races.
I think I see
Anax
Anax
and Simead,
yeah.
Same tap land, Canyon Slough from Jake. That tap land got to feel a lot worse when you are on the draw.
Yes.
First blood, Jake down to 19. No follow-up, though, from Reed Duke.
Interesting.
Not what you want to see out of the aggro deck. Here is the Dreadhorde Arcanist.
A 1/3, which is a notable body against an aggro deck.
I also think we got a little peek there at Jade Light Ranger in Jake's hand, which will be a lot better at this part of the game.
Yes.
When we're at parity. There you actually are happy to draw a couple more lands. We're going to put that wizard in a hole, get in for 1.
What is this, D&D?
I love seeing that portable hole here. I think that Arcanist is potentially one of the highest ceiling 2-drops in
Yes.
Jake's deck. We saw last turn he's got combat tricks. We saw last game he's got combat tricks in here. Potentially being on a flashback, a big spell is huge.
Which one is this?
Yami Maya Iconoclast kicked. This is the new Gruul aggro hotness. It's going to have haste because it was kicked and also +1/+1 to end of turn. Get in for a big bite of 4. Jake saying, I'm not playing defensively,
Nope.
even though I'm on the draw. Back in for 1. It is 17-16. Prismatic Vista.
Re getting that red mana source, I assume?
We would imagine we're going to see the mountain at this point.
Yep. Be interested to see what else is in return, because we just haven't had any 2-drops, which is quite surprising.
Yeah, the deck is chock-a-block full of 2-drops as far as we
Sure.
can tell. I mean, we don't know exactly how he built the main deck, but he drafted so many great ones. We've seen a lot of them in previous games. Here's 3 mana, Annex and
There's
Siamede.
with a bunch of text and keywords.
That one is important to read. Coverage, if we can get that Annex and Siamede pulled up, that might be helpful for the viewers. I wonder if Jake still feels like they need to be aggressive.
Yep. So
Here's an Ash Barons getting cycled.
we're probably going to play this Jade Light Ranger, I assume. And
Revealing Forest. Lots of laughter at the table. I totally sympathize with Jake here. This is a high-pressure situation. You really don't want to mess up.
yeah. Hopefully this Jade Light Ranger doesn't find just 2 lands.
I mean, at this point, a Jade Light Ranger finding 2 lands might be okay.
Ooh, we're playing Legolas
that's
counter.
Legolas Master Archer. That is a huge problem for Reed Duke's deck.
And considering Reed's used this portable hole.
Can't even put Legolas in the hole.
Oh, for sure.
His
for
butt
sure.
too big. Who knew Legolas was so caked up? But this card is going to be a huge roadblock for Reed Duke and one that he has basically no answers for. I mean, the ways
Right.
he can get this creature off the board are essentially beta block, hit it with a combat trick.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the way to do it. And that's really only going to reliably work while Jake is tapped out, because if Jake has open mana, potentially playing into Jake targeting his own Legolas with a spell in response is potentially a huge blowout. However, Reed's saying, I'm undeterred.
I am going to combat. Training trigger. Happens. Laughter all round. Jake just
Anax
takes
and
the damage.
Siamede does have First Strike and Vigilance here. I think it's bouncing off. Oh, no, just taking the
They're
damage.
taking the damage. Be interested to see what else is in Reed's hand here.
Choosing to take the damage, even though Legolas does have 4 toughness. So Jake respecting combat tricks out of Reed Duke. Here comes a Changeling Berserker. This is a big haste creature that has to eat one of your creatures on ETB. It's
Yep.
going to get into the red zone and either demand a block.
Ooh.
So much excitement down there. Not quite sure about that attack. I mean, Annex and Siamede does have First Strike. Jake shaking his head, maybe
Not
neglecting
realizing.
to read the whole card. Changing Berserker is a 5/3 vanilla creature with haste, and that First Strike on Annex and Siamede just cleaning that right up.
Yeah.
Maybe Reed Duke taking a second to say, am I being baited into something? But no, we're tapped out.
tapped
Let's just go
out,
ahead
yep.
and eat that attacker. Sunbaked Canyon, great land for Reed here. Can cash that in for more cards when and if he wants to. Back into the red zone.
This Hopeful Initiate is slowly getting out of control.
Now will we see
Some
a block with Legolas, or are we still respecting these combat tricks? At some point, you can't afford to respect him anymore.
Nope. Even if it is one of the best cards in your deck and then in the cube.
Just taking the damage, that's another 6, going to 6 for Jake. Oh, no. That is, in fact, quite a bit more than 6. We are going to get Prepare, targeting Annex and Siamede. That's going to trigger Heroic. This is an even bigger bite
Oh
than
no,
we
it's
thought.
got one more.
Oh my god,
days.
this is lethal.
Yeah,
This is lethal.
Yeah.
Integrity Intervention plus Prepare, I believe, is
I'm pretty
lethal.
sure Jake is dead.
Jake might be eager to get out of this game, too, after that foolhardy attack
Yeah.
with the Champion Berserker. Maybe say,
There we go, yep.
let's just go to Game 3, maybe take a deep breath, and yeah, Yeah, I mean, I can totally sympathize with Jake. This is a really tough spot. You
Yep.
are under pressure, playing
You're-
against one of the best players in the world.
You're also on coverage.
You're also on coverage. That's it's a huge pressure here. But we are going to see a game 3.
Yep.
And Reed Duke is going to be on the draw, which is exactly where Jake wants him.
Yeah.
So, I think we need to see perhaps a less explosive start
Yes.
out of Reed Duke, and we need to see Jake playing those big stabilizing threats. And I think the biggest decision point for Jake here is, at what point am I racing versus just playing defensively?
Yeah.
Because we saw out of Reed Duke's deck in round 1 that Phalanx Leader, Combat Trick, Combat Trick. We saw out of Reed Duke's deck just now
Yes.
that Combat Trick
Can just kill you.
all of a sudden 12 you out of nowhere. So really not a very comfortable position to possibly try to race it. Because how do you know how much damage Reed Duke's deck is capable of doing? It's really hard to say. That decision, I think, is going to be the most important one that Jake needs to navigate in this next game, assuming we get 2 clean starts with good opening hands and people playing threats and playing to the board.
Yeah.
Really exciting Magic here in Madison, Wisconsin. As a reminder for everybody, this is the last match of our main event here. We've got players all throughout this convention center room playing for their top 64 contention. Tomorrow, those top 64 players out of the 400-some here at CubeCon are going to play in a draft in the morning, 8 separate pods. We'll be doing coverage in the morning. And what cube will we be doing coverage of tomorrow, Emma?
I think it's my peasant cube, I believe.
Oh, your peasant cube.
Yeah, my peasant
Some
cube.
peasant cube that has traveled across the ocean
That has
to
air
be here at
miles.
CubeCon.
And Reed Duke has played twice this weekend and 6-0'd.
Yes,
He's breaking my cube.
Reed Duke played the cube once, 3-0'd, accidentally played the cube again.
And
with
3-0'd
the premise
again.
has just said, oh, it's okay, I'll just 3-0
With
again.
a different deck.
So if we see Reed
Mono-green
Duke
and
on
mono-red.
coverage tomorrow,
You play it 3
playing
times
his
in a
peasant cube,
weekend.
he may have a pretty easy 9-0 of your peasant cube.
Oh,
That's going to be really exciting. I think peasant cubes, like this regular cube we're seeing here,
Yes.
are really interesting environments to test the skill of our players. Whether cube designers like to hear it or not, a lot of times these lower powered cards make for more challenging gameplay decisions than simply just, I play my Minskin Boo. Now I win because I have a Minskin Boo.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen. That top 64 is going to break to a top 8. The winner from each of those pods going to a top 8 draft tomorrow afternoon, Central Time, of the Magic Online Vintage Cube, the latest iteration. You are not going to want to miss that. Both players keeping 7. Prismatic Vista from Jake. We're off to the races.
Oh,
And
sure.
Just
get-
cycling an Ash Barrens after asking Reed to cut the deck. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle it again, find another basic land. Doing all this main phase on his turn just to maybe save some time.
Save some time and just smooth out your mana and perhaps not try and mitigate drawing any extra land cards as the game progresses. Be interested to see what Reed does here. Hopefully we'll have a turn 1 play.
A little bit about our Reed's opponent here, Jake. Jake, while I don't think he's played this cube before,
Okay.
Jake is intimately familiar with this cube list. I know Jake is a friend of the cube designer, has learned a lot about this list, heard about how it's played. Emma, what do we have here? I got to
We have
give
a
you.
favorite inspector. Hopefully he's gonna use the best
Look at
clue
that.
token of Magic.
We have Emma Barlow on the battlefield. She has arrived. Jake better be shaking in his boots at the sight of that.
Yeah.
Here is an unkicked Yavimaya Iconoclast, just playing a 3-2 now.
Yep. This
Free
is.
Sync Captain, that first strike proving to be a huge problem on this current
Don't
board.
think Jake's gonna have problems with first strike again in this game.
Yes, I think Jake will hopefully
Yeah.
has learned his lesson about first strike. Let's be, and Jake doing
It
the right.
happens to the best of us.
If it were me, it would have happened to me too. Jake doing the right thing, reading these cards as they're
Yeah.
played, even if he thinks he knows them. Make sure we don't make any punts this time.
What is that?
That is a card I don't recognize.
I don't recognize it either.
Despite having played this cube many, many times.
It's not even a fancy version.
No, there are no fancy versions in this cube. I'm looking through the... Oh, okay. This is Hanger Scrounger.
So it has backup.
Yeah, this is 3 mana 2/1 with backup 1, and whenever it becomes tapped, you may discard a card if you do draw a card. That backup ability, essentially giving the Yavimaya Iconoclast that ability to end of turn, so getting to loot away that Wolfheer Silverheart, which may be suggesting that Jake does not have any combat tricks in hand. That Wolfheer Silverheart can be fantastic if you do have ways to target it. You just get to start spitting out tokens, generating a ton of value, but Discarding it here may be indicating none of that in hand. And we mentioned before the game, Jake making the assessment from the early turns of the game,
Yep.
I'm going to race. We'll
Yes.
see if that assessment ends up holding true or if Jake changes his mind, but
Speaking
as
of
of right now,
racing,
it is a race.
Speaking of racing, this precinct captain is going in the red zone.
Now, do you just throw this hanger scrounger under the wheels of this precinct captain here?
He's going to trade for the Fravor Inspector.
Looks like no, trade for the Fravor Inspector, but you're still leaving behind a 1-1. Not sure I love that block. Didn't really change the power on the board at all.
We'll see what Reed's follow-up is here. Annex and Siamede would be a nice follow-up here, based on how ridiculous it was in the previous game. And we're going to play a portable hole targeting the
So
Yavimaya.
you spent time putting that +1/+1 counter on the Yavimaya Iconoclast. Let's now put it in the hole.
And here's a Figure of Destiny.
And just going to immediately
Make it into a 2-2.
level that up. No bother bluffing some sort of 1-mana white interaction. Just going to do that right now.
Could have wanted to kept the mana open for a clue, but I think extending the board here is key.
Got to get that F6 value. Don't want to have to get priority every time and Jake takes an action. Just do that main phase.
Yeah.
This dice here, not actually a counter of any kind, just a visual indicator to remind our players that that Figure of Destiny is in fact a 2-2.
It has been leveled up once.
Here's a Jade Light Ranger. Now, what do you want? Do you want lands or do you want more power and toughness?
So Rimrock Knight, which is not too good here, unfortunately.
Yeah, Rimrock Knight not being able to block. You can see Jake sending it right to the yard with that Explorer. Second Explorer.
This is stomping
Stomping ground in
ground.
hand.
One counter is better than none here.
Jade Light Ranger, one of these cards that you read it and you're like, well, every single one of these is great. It's either 3 mana 2/1, I draw 2 cards, or it's a 3 mana 4/3, or a 3 mana 3/2, draw 1 card. But the fact that you have no control over it does really matter. We saw last game when Jake would have given anything for that to be a 4/3. He just drew 2 lands.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Gotta imagine we're going to see some attacks here. Yeah, here comes Reed into the red zone.
Leaving mana open for this Figure of Destiny, which is also smart.
Yeah, you basically can't afford to block that with the threat of activation unless you're willing to lose your creature.
Yep. Be interesting to see what Jake has in hand. I guess he could have a Reckless Rage, maybe.
I
hard
think
to
if Jake
t-
had a Reckless Rage, we
hard
would
to
have
tell.
not discarded that.
Yeah.
Wolf.
It's hard to tell what's in Jake's hand right now.
Figure of Destiny does become a 4/4 with this next level up. Looks like we are just taking the
Ooh.
damage. Here comes a core Skyfisher.
Nice. Flicking back the land to replay it.
Yeah, Skyfisher, a really interesting card in that you can just play it as essentially a really undercosted creature in this situation. If Reed has no third land in his hand, he essentially just got this for 1 mana into play. Fantastic. Also, you mentioned previously that this can be used in combination with cards like Thraben Inspector to take a totally different tact.
Yes.
Instead of playing a really aggressive body, you can actually just generate a ton of value, recurse them out of the battlefield abilities, and grind to the late
And
game.
here comes the Bloodbraid Elf.
This will be an important cascade, I think,
Yes,
for Jake.
and here comes the Crusher
Here's
again.
the on-crop Crasher. Now, these two creatures much better when you're attacking than when you're blocking. This
Indeed.
could be the flaw of Jake's deck. If these cards are not good blockers but such good attackers, what do you do in this spot, Emma?
I don't think I'm attacking in this spot at all.
You've got a 2/3 flyer in the air. You've got a couple of 1/1s on the ground.
You've
Those
got-
1/1s don't have good blocks.
You
You
got-
could exert on the core Skyfisher. You're getting in for 6, 7, 8, 9,
Oh, yep.
putting Reed to 7.
And it depends what combat tricks Reed has as well. So you could have.
It does have a lot of untapped mana.
I believe Reed has Fairy Godmother in hand that has an adventure ability. For
That one is a
warning.
sorcery.
Oh,
Touched by
okay.
the phase of sorcery, but cracking that clue.
Drawing a card.
Doing that, I wonder, I mean, there's no free interaction in this cube. I wonder why the crew clack, I guess here's what happened. Reed wants his blocks to be informed by what that clue is going to draw him. So after the decision to attack is made, we're no longer presenting potential interaction. The bluff is gone. Let's just crack that clue, see what we're going to draw, which will inform whether or not I'm going to try and race or get defensive. Looks like
we're going to block this Jade Light Ranger.
Looks like we are going to trade these 2 tokens for a J-Light Ranger, take 6, go to 10.
This,
now-
and this Precinct Captain's going to get in. This Figure of Destiny can grow because I believe Reed drew a land off the clue token.
Yeah, it can grow with just the lands in play. It's only
Yeah.
3 to turn into a 4/4. So on board, should Reed decide to continue to build up that Figure of Destiny, we're looking at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, putting Jake to 5.
And Jake can't really attack next turn, I don't think.
We don't know for sure, but I would have to assume that on-crop Crasher is exerted, so it's not
Yes.
going to untap. I think it exerted last turn to keep the core Skyfisher from blocking. So it's not like Jake has a good swing on the next turn.
Can Reed win from here? Is the question.
Really tight play from Reed Duke here. I think
Yes.
some people often have the perception that aggressive decks are mindless. You just
It's
play
very
your
it's very
spells.
smooth brain.
Yeah, you just, no thinkies, just turn sideways. And I think we're seeing from Reed Duke here that,
He's acknowledged this is exerted.
yes, the timing of every
Here we
single
go,
spell, where you choose to use your answers, how you choose to use them is critical. Looks like we are not seeing the Figure of Destiny further enhanced. Just take 6,
Play a favorite hoplite.
favorite hoplite, get a token. Is there another follow-up, or are we just going to hold up mana menacingly?
I think Reed's just going to hold up mana, and if Reed doesn't do anything, we're just going to go with this Figure of Destiny, because Jake is on the back foot here. This Bloodbraid Elf is on chump block duty.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Jake could have done in this spot. Those creatures he had, they weren't great blockers, right? They're much
No.
better on the offensive, but I don't know that swinging was the right move. I don't know that we had the clock in the face of Reed's counterattack to actually be attacking here. That's the decision we talked about in between games that was going to matter so much here.
Yes. Agreed.
I think Jake has to be asking himself, do I have the late game that if I just stall and stall and stall,
Yeah.
I can eventually
What do you
grind
need?
out?
What do you need to draw in the late game to stabilize? And
I
I'm not
see
quite sure what that is.
We see a Thrash Threat, a Champion Berserker in hand here.
You're playing a Vivian.
Vivian, interesting choice. That is not going to contribute to the board at all, no matter what option Jake chooses. It will give this Vigilance, which I guess is sort of contributing to the board. Though I think Reed probably happy
To trade.
to just trade here.
Or is he
Also,
going to play the... Yeah.
there is the +4/+2 combat trick, Thrash Threat.
See what Reed does in response here. I'm pretty
My
sure.
mistake. Sorry, we're talking Collision
Oh,
Colossus.
here comes the
not
Valorous stance,
Thrash Threat.
which blew him out in the first game
We've
with the
done it
Dreadhorde
again,
Arcanist.
and
there
that's
we
gonna
go.
be
Yeah.
it. Reed Duke, having every card he needs at every moment, showing us
Must be nice, right?
showing us that aggro does require a lot of skill to pilot correctly. It does
Yeah.
not just mean turning your card sideways and casting your spells on curve.
It's not haha, cards go brr.
We are going to break to our second backup match here to see who might be playing Reed Duke in the finals. This is going to be Steven versus Lincoln. I can see we are going right to game 3, and we get to see a whole game 3. Perfect timing
So many
here.
game threes in this cube. This is great. More
Perfect.
magic and more cube.
Perfect timing here. So great job, Lincoln and Steven, for doing that for us. We really appreciate it in the production booth.
We appreciate your service.
So we have, oh no, Steven missing a second land
Oh,
drop
no.
and not even having a 1-drop. What? Maybe on a deep mulligan. We don't actually know. We didn't see the mulligans. Toshiro Umezawa is the play for, okay, never didn't have it. Hissing Quagmire there for Steven.
So interestingly, it looks like Lincoln's on this red-black deck that you've been talking about, which is probably one of the more stronger archetypes in this cube.
I think a really good red-black deck is among the best decks in this cube, for sure.
Yeah.
Not sure exactly what this red-black deck looks like quite yet. We've only seen one non-land card, though it is a good one.
Yeah.
The Toshiro Umezawa, if you have enough instant speed removal, can have some really explosive snowballing play patterns.
For sure, for sure. See what the follow-up play is here. I believe Lincoln has a Gutter Snipe in hand. So a quick flick.
You know, I can't help as we watch this, Emma, but figure out whoever wins this, how is their deck going to hang against a
Ooh, a Judith is pretty nice.
Judith pre-combat, because it does give Toshiro an additional point of power, getting in for 3.
Will either of these players beat Reduke, do you think? I know it's early days.
It's really hard to say at this point. I think, like I said, if any deck in this cube has a chance, the red-black deck, I think, does have among the highest ceiling. But what I want to see right now is Steven put up a good fight. Let's not see continual mana screw. It looks like there was no mulligan from Steven here. We just kept a 1-land hand.
That is ambitious.
If the card count is right. Well, maybe it was a multi 6. We're at 8 now. We played our first land, then we missed land drop on the draw.
And you can, as you can see, Reed is just having a little nose.
That's an eliminate.
Just to see what he's up against in the finals.
1 damage off that trigger to your face, Steven.
Simic Growth Chamber bouncing a Swamp back to hand. So it seems like
Okay.
Steven's sorted out his mana issues.
Well, so actually, on the draw, it's possible Steven did have Simic Growth Chamber, was not willing to bounce a Swamping, be forced to discard as his second land drop.
Sure.
There are reasons I could see that being right. There is the Gutter Snipe you saw.
Yep.
Don't know why we saw that one before combat, but Steven's tapped out, so not going to matter much. Get in for 2 with Toshiro Umezawa.
I believe I see Akari Zev's Expertise, I believe.
I see
And a
red
cut down.
card in Steven's hand, too.
I think it's a cut down as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what we got in Lincoln's hand over there, which,
Yeah.
got to be said, not a whole lot of action on Lincoln's side. We got a full grip from Steven, and I see red cards.
Yes.
I think we're having an ambitious brew here. There's a Prophetic
Ooh.
Prism. Perhaps Steven trying to channel Sam Black, channel the energy of Sam Black, make this multicolored deck sing. That is a
Feed the Swarm.
Feed the Swarm. Let's just make sure we don't take any damage off that Gutter Snipe. Now, interestingly, you could choose, if you wanted to cast down your own Gutter Snipe in response, get
For
some
sure.
damage off of it, but we're not at the point of the game where that makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
Keep your own cast down for later. Cast down, one of those instant speed removal spells that is so good with
Yes.
Toshiro.
Yeah.
So far, Steven seeming more afraid of the other threats out of Lincoln's deck than the Toshiro Umezawa. Who knows how much that has actually shined in previous matches.
Taking a lot of damage here.
Yeah, already at 9, though, so many cards in hand against not a whole lot on Lincoln's side. We know he has a removal spell. We know he has a Carries Zev's Expertise. That card will absolutely steal the game.
Yes, it will.
You tap out for a decent-sized
Threat.
blocker.
And especially if Steven's on 9, that could be enough to close out the game.
Absolutely.
Good chunk of mana here.
Here's a big blocker, maybe. That is a Somberwalled Stag going to punch that Toshiro Umezawa. But we do have
The cut down.
Cut down, not going to do it. Somberwalled Stag, too big to be hit by cut down. So I think Lincoln may be ruining the fact that that is not a disfigure or something else that would make this a trade. Instead, just going to lose your 3-drop. That's a clean 2-for-1 here out of Steven's opponent, Lincoln's opponent, which is Steven, I believe. There we go. Yeah, I got the card overlay covering the name there.
We're just going to take control of this stag and
Looks like we're just
punch
going
face.
to seize the opportunity. Goblin
And
Crater
Crater
Maker
Maker.
is the follow-up off of the free spell from Carries Zev's Expertise. Bash you for 4.
Yeah. This Crater Maker can, I believe Crater Maker destroys lands.
No, just colorless non-land permanents.
Oh,
so we
so
could
the-
take out the Prophetic Prism
Sure.
if we wanted to.
Probably not right now, but
I do know there is no interaction for lands in this cube because of how negative that play pattern can be against the Ravnica
Sure.
bounce lands, of which
Okay,
there
yeah.
are many floating around. I'm not sure. I love that play from Lincoln. Not sure what else is in his hand. Oh, it looks like just Swamp Cut Down.
yep.
You know, that threat in there did not end the game.
No.
And I feel like I'm going to hold that card until it's going to end the game if I can. And you're not under any pressure, really. You might have to take a couple hits from this deer.
You're on 19.
You're not 19 life. That's a resource.
You're in a very comfortable position right now.
But yeah, just imagine if you had, you know, a little more pressure and could threaten to turn a game around and just win in one turn.
Trying to see what else is in Steven's hand here.
I do still see that red card floating around. I desperately want to know what that red card is. Do you see any value to just taking Steven off that Prophetic Prism? I think Lincoln has more information than we
Yeah,
do based
for
on previous
sure.
games, but choosing not to cut Steven out of white or red mana. Not sure if we have any white spells in the deck, but we do see a couple red ones in
Yeah.
there.
Steve's in the tank here.
So many game threes in this cube, as you pointed out
Yeah,
before.
it's really good because it means more cube, more coverage, and more magic.
Really good, clean magic we're seeing. Steven playing those cards close to the chest. Hard for us to get any real perspective here at what
Yeah.
might be in his hand. That top card, I believe,
This
is
is
the Exert Land Untapper,
Yep.
which
So
I
this-
will pull the card name here.
Somber World Stag getting in. We also have a Thrashing Bronzodon. I'm not quite sure what the 2-mana card is. Believe it's a untapped land creature. Want to say it's from Amonkhet?
Yeah, it is. I'm finding the name here for us. Hope Tender is
There
the
we
one.
go. We got there. We got there.
Yeah, Hope Tender is the closest you get to ramp in this cube, and it doesn't ramp unless you are willing to exert it. So it's really a one-shot injection of ramp, though, in combination with that Simic Growth Chamber,
Of course, yeah.
it is going to be natural ramp. So Steven's saying, you know what? you don't put any ramp in this green section, I will figure out a way to ramp with these green
Yeah.
cards. Gosh darn it.
I'm channeling my inner Sam Black. Fortunately, Lincoln doesn't have much here either.
Is that a burst lightning we see in Steven's hand? No, I don't think so.
It's not Goblin Bushwhacker, is it?
Bushwhacker not in the cube.
Okay. This Prophetic Prism doing a lot of work in this game.
Something else I really wonder about this matchup that we don't have any information about because we didn't watch previous matches. How much burn does Lincoln have? Because how safe does Steven feel at 5 here and willing to start cracking back? Do we have haste creatures from Lincoln's deck? Do we have burn spells? We already saw one threaten effect in the red-black deck. The threaten plus sacrifice your thing, very common play pattern. And Claim the Firstborn, I think, is one of the key cards for that deck.
Sure.
Looks like just getting in for 6 here with the Hope Tender and the Somberwald Stag.
Keeping back this Thrashing Brontodon.
That's a Bone Shards in the top of the hand there.
Yep. See what else is going on. So I see a Legion Loyalist.
Yeah, Legion Loyalist. Legion Loyalist, the kind of card. It's got haste. The kind of thing maybe you could string together a turn where you Legion Loyalist off of your carries as expertise and have a sequence that can overcome the massive card advantage Steven has accrued. Instead, we're going to see
a Cemetery Reaper?
Yes.
I want to say.
That's exactly what it is.
Cool.
We're going to see the Hope Tender trade with that Goblin Crater Maker.
Cut down
your Zombie Lord. Let's make sure you don't have any zombies in that deck and that doesn't get out of hand.
Yep. Trying to be efficient with your mana here as well, in case you draw something bigger. So that's a Magma Jet, I believe.
Yeah, we got Legion Loyalist, Magma Jet Swamp. Not a good hand for Lincoln right here.
Not exciting.
It must be said.
Not exciting in the face of this 3/4 Thrashing Brontodon.
Or this 4/3 Somberwald Stag.
That too.
Some beefy creatures here that, if I may start looking into the future through my crystal ball, should Steven pull this out of the hat here, Somberwald Stag, Thrashing Brontodon, those are going to be big problems for Reed Duke.
They will be. Reed will have to trade up on those creatures for sure.
Might as well deploy the Legion Loyalist. This decision has to be based on what you know you can draw. If your deck is super low curving and you know you can't draw ways to spend all of your mana, you probably hold that in hand so you have the surprise factor. That card does have haste. But if Lincoln knows he's got 3-4 drops in his hand, if he's got card draw, if he can draw off the top, then you're going to want to get this in place so you can use all of your mana on future turns if you draw the cards you need.
So it looks like Steven's going to keep rumbling in with this Somberwald Stag, maybe?
Yeah, again, I think
Lincoln is on 15, so he can take probably another hit and be fine.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like this many-colored deck here is likely to win explosively. I think this is going to be a grindy value deck.
So it feels like a very mid-range deck.
Lincoln looking like maybe having one of the more aggressive versions of this red-black deck, which can definitely be more mid-rangey and value-oriented. There's a whole spectrum of what this deck can look like in this cube.
Here comes a Magma Jet.
Magma Jet U.
Oof.
That's some of that burn we talked about. That's Scry 2, also huge here.
Yes.
Is that a Perilous Mirror?
Could be. Hard to tell.
Both on top. Didn't see the first card. The second one may have been a Perilous Mirror. We chose to put whatever that second card was, keep it second.
It's
we
definitely
didn't change
not
the order.
Perilous Mirror. It's a
oh my gosh, Sling Gang Lieutenant.
Lieutenant.
If those top two cards, we even have the Legion Loyalist. We're just dead here.
Yeah.
We're just dead here if this sticks.
So there's going to be some responses.
Okay, that's a Volt Surge, but that's not going to do it. We can just sacrifice. Oh, we can do it in response to the end of the battlefield ability, so those tokens don't hit until after it's gone. In response, we'll see both those goblins sacked. That'll be 2 damage. Drain for 2.
Yep.
You go to 1. Is that top card Perilous Mirror, Emma? If that top card is
any
Perilous
form
Mirror,
of burn. Any form of burn to the face.
any form of burn definitely gets there. I'm pretty sure it was a colorless card. Another card it could be is Mortarpod.
Sure,
Mortarpod also just ends this game on the spot unless Steven has some life gain.
Also, Mortarpod's really nice in these aggressive Rakdos like sacrifice style decks
That's
too.
a card I definitely want in this kind of deck, so it would not be surprising at all to see out of Lincoln. Oh, no, the Mortarpod's on the other side of the battlefield. Steven's got the Mortarpod, so we know it's not what's on top of Lincoln's deck, but is it a Perilous Mirror? Let's find out. If so, that Perilous Mirror will essentially end this game.
I have never killed anyone with killed an opponent with a Perilous Mirror.
Well, I have done it quite a few times in this cube.
True.
This comes up quite a bit.
I
Put the Mortar Pod on the Somber Walled Stag.
think you just take this, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a world where you're like winning a race. You just need to find that 1 point of damage anywhere you can find it.
Yeah.
And maybe you can find it by somehow clearing blockers and getting him with this Goblin token. But not with the Mortar Pod in play. But
Maybe even a removal spell for this Bronzodon as well, so this 1/1 Goblin can just get in and finish the game. What is on the top of Lincoln's deck?
the Mortar Pod would prevent that because you can do that instant speed.
Oh, it's a Scrapwork
okay.
Mutt.
Scrapwork Mutt, a little different, but that will allow Lincoln to discard the card. Is that a burn spell? It's red.
Yeah, it's Fiery Temper.
Soak,
Yeah.
Fiery Temper, and that is going to be game. Steven didn't hit second land drop on turn 2, put up a valiant effort, stemmed the bleeding from Lincoln, but Lincoln found the burn he needed to pull that game out.
So it looks like we're going to have what I assume is a Rakdos Sacrifice deck against Boris Aggro.
Yeah, our finals is going to be Lincoln Davidson playing red-black aggro with a sacrifice theme of some sort against the one and only Reed Duke, who we have watched handily dispatch the first 2 rounds of opponents. Not in blowouts. These games were close, but Reed demonstrating that he knows how to pilot a deck like this and is willing to go the distance. So going to be a tall order for Lincoln here. Before we get to that, we got one more sponsor to thank here at CUBECON for helping us put this fantastic event on, and that sponsor is Magic the Gathering Online, which is like Magic the Gathering in paper, except on your computer at home. You can play all kinds of Magic on Magic Online. I know you are a big fan, Emma.
Yes, I'm a big fan. You can play Cube online, which is great.
I like Cube.
I like Cube. Another cool thing about Magic Online is that you can qualify for the Pro Tour.
Yeah, from the comfort of your home.
From the comfort of your own home. Even in your pajamas, in bed, you can be like, yep, I just want to qualify for a Pro Tour today.
You can play at some of the highest competitive levels without having to get on a plane, get in a car, go to a convention center. Just do it from the comfort of your own home. Yeah, I don't know what else is there to say. I mean, I think...
Daybreaker Awesome, who runs the whole Magic Online thing, they've done a fantastic job in... looking after Magic Online, taking that responsibility. They've also curated the Vintage Cube quite a bit to the point where the changes made. A lot of people, including people who are here today, think this iteration of Vintage Cube is probably one of the best.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people. So we're going to see that version of the Vintage Cube tomorrow afternoon in our top 8 draft that has been so lovingly curated by Daybreak Games and Ryan Spain, who they've brought in to help. Yeah, Magic the Gathering Online. Check out mtgo.com for more details if you, viewer at home, happen to not know about Magic the Gathering Online, which I certainly hope you do. So.
We've got an exciting final.
Such an exciting final. Hit that follow button, too, on this stream. And big thank you to NRG for running the stream. Huge help to us here. Great channel to follow if you're into Magic of all kinds. You got their NRG series, which is another kind of fun competitive Magic you can watch.
Yep.
I will do anything to support paper Magic coverage, I'll tell you that much. I love watching paper play, and it is harder and harder to come by these days. So big thanks to NRG for helping make this happen. Couldn't do it without them. Red-white aggro versus red-black something. Definitely aggro, at least. We saw Legion Loyalists.
I would say like aggro with a sack theme, just based on seeing like the Kari Zev and the Slingan Commander.
Yeah, I think for sure. We saw...
Excuse me.
We saw Kari Zev's expertise.
Yep.
If we also have Claim the Firstborn and some other free sack outlets running around.
You also have Judith as well, which is just a nice aggressive option too.
Absolutely. So this is going to be a really interesting match. I do think these are 2 of the best decks in this cube. Red, I think, a really strong color here and showing its mettle, not just in our top 2 drafters, but also in Jake's deck previously. So going to be really interesting to see if the red-white deck with very minimal interaction can prevail over the red-black deck with just in that small snippet we saw of that deck, more removal than we saw in all of Reed Duke's pool. Yeah. So very different takes on what aggro could or should be. Are we threat dense and just trying to get your opponent dead, or are we also going to play some form of answers? And we're going to find out which one prevails here in the regular cube.
And will Reed Duke lose a game this weekend?
Will Reed Duke ever lose a game of Magic? It's hard to say. We're going to answer that question and more when we come back here at CUBECON. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome back to Madison, Wisconsin. Andy Mangold here in the booth with Emma Partlow. We are ready to get started on our very last match of the day and our very last match of the main event, Reed Duke. Going the distance. We watched him draft. We watched him play round 1. We watched him play round 2, rise above 2 different styles of decks, and now he's coming up against Lincoln Davidson playing red-black aggro sacrifice in the finals.
It's going to be a really interesting match because, as we talked about before in the previous rounds, it seems like these 2 decks are some of the best archetypes you can draft in this cube.
Yeah, I think these 2 decks, if you can draft them, if the lane is open, these are 2 of the best things you can be doing in this cube. And we know Reed Duke's deck is great.
Yes.
We have to presume Lincoln's deck is also great to have made it this far. We only saw a brief glimpse of it when we broke to our second match in the last round, but you know it's going to be good. The main difference between these 2 decks is going to be the density of removal, I think. We saw a lot of removal spells out of Lincoln's deck, even in just the small glimpse we got of it. Meanwhile, Reed Duke leaning on a portable hole in a dream. And so far,
and some
it's worked
combat
for him.
tricks.
Yeah, that's true. Combat tricks can serve as removal for sure. Can we get good 7s here? Looks like a pretty good opening hand there for Lincoln. I see an Echoing Decay. I see a Sulphurous Springs.
See a Gut Snipe as well.
Importantly, looks like Reed is on the play. Makes a big difference.
Playing the best Magic card ever printed. And the best token in Magic card ever printed.
In case you wondered where Emma's alliances lie, it is on whoever is casting Thraben Inspector.
See, Legion Loyalist is really interesting here because there's a piece of text on Legion Loyalist that people might not quite understand. It also is unblockable if they're tokens, and Reed's deck makes a lot of tokens, so that Legion Loyalist may be able to get in.
And I actually know for a fact that card is in this cube specifically because there are so many good token decks, and having a way for the aggro decks to get past them is valuable. Emma Partlow getting into the red zone here, chipping away at Lincoln's life total. 2 pain lands from these aggro decks on the opening turns of the game, which really matters, I think.
Yes.
We see Kitesail Freebooter, Abbot of Carol Keep, Gutter Snipe, all in Lincoln's hand.
Some good
Echoing
cards
Decay,
here. We've got
Magma
Magma
Jet.
Jet.
Like we said, already, more removal spell in Lincoln's hand right now than in the entirety of Reed Duke's deck. So we're going to test the question. What's better? First, we're going to see Echoing Decay on this 2-3.
Yep.
You're going to bounce your land. I'm going to remove your threat. Did we see that after blocks again?
I think so.
A lot of players using the removal spells after blocks when I would not expect them to.
No.
Did we? No, see, Reed is on the play, so we have not had a missed land drop yet.
Nope. Yeah, we'll have a World of, not World of Virtuoso, I keep saying that.
Illuminator Virtuoso coming down here.
Magic cards are hard.
This is the kind of card
Also, Reed has missed his land drop for the turn as well, which
is true.
Can be relevant.
Yeah, it's not going to matter as much in this deck as almost any other, but eventually someone's got to go over the top here.
Right.
Now, this is exactly where Illuminator Virtuoso, so good in so many matchups, but the removal is going to be the difference maker here. We have a Magma Jet to deal with this. Easy peasy. Get it off the board before you untap it. Could possibly protect it. If we don't see that here, I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another removal spell in hand. If we don't see a removal spell here, I'd be very surprised.
Agreed.
Gonna crack that Prismatic Vista for a mountain. Mana's all set up, assuming we are just red-black, which I believe we are.
Yeah. Don't have to take any damage from the Sulphurous Springs unless needed.
Abbott, Gutter Snipe. Yeah, hopefully we don't see Lincoln get greedy and try and play the Gutter Snipe here, and then, no, Lincoln, no. Lincoln, no. Lincoln, oh my goodness. Now, you can see the temptation, right?
Yes.
Lincoln wanted to use all of his mana this turn.
Yeah.
And he wanted to get triggers on his Gutter Snipe when he cast that removal spell on that Illuminator Virtuoso. But now we're playing a game of chicken.
Yes.
Who's going to blink first? That Magma Jet is instant speed, so if Lincoln can untap, and we have 2 players with untapped mana staring down Illuminator Virtuoso, whoever blinks first is likely going to be the one who's going to get blown out.
Yeah.
And if there's anything I know about Reed Duke, he's going to navigate that situation as well as anybody can. Here comes a 1-1 with first strike. Gutter Snipe could trade with this, maybe, but against all that open mana seems pretty unlikely. And you are tapped out right now, so this is a free opportunity for
some damage.
Reed to get a bunch of damage in and get some connives. And in fact, here comes a Borrowed Hostility. Why did we tap 2 mana for that Borrowed Hostility?
It's because it's a Rugged Prairie, so you need to...
Oh, right. So we're floating a mana because we needed to tap the Rugged Prairie. Thank you. Good catch, Emma. So if we connive away, once again, if we connive away a non-land card, I assume we've already said no blocks.
Yes.
Taken 10.
And
that's if we don't have another combat stroke with that Battlefield Forge.
And the thing is, even if this Virtuoso is removed next turn, it's already been done.
Done.
You've done 10 damage, and here's a Valorous stance in the
Valorous
bin.
stance, discarded, take 10 at least, or
Oh,
more.
no.
Or more. Are you dead? Are you dead? You're dead.
Oh my days.
That's going to be, so we're at 4, 5, 6, 7. Not actually dead, but you're going to take
close to
14, and
go to
Duke is going
3.
to gain 14.
Oh my days. It goes back to 31.
Lincoln Davidson really regretting not magma-jetting that Illuminator Virtuoso when he had the chance.
Getting punished.
Even more. No, so that's 16 because we connived away a non-land card.
Yep.
Go to 1.
Oh my god.
I gained 16 from 17. I can't even do the math in my head. What is that number? 30-something? It's a lot.
Well, it's knocked out the Sulphurous Springs at least.
It's even
Oh, there we go. Oh my days.
All I can hope, Emma, is that
Wow.
Lincoln has learned his lesson about respecting Illuminator Virtuoso in this cube. You let him untap with it. You had the removal. You let Reed Duke, Pro Tour champion, untap with that, and you died.
Yeah.
You died on the spot. You took 17.
I can understand the
16, going one.
the process of I want to deploy this gut snipe and do all this stuff, but if you have like a 1/1 with double strike, that just gets better with all the spells. Like you have an idea of what Reed's playing, right?
Well, you certainly know
You
now.
should know now,
I mean,
right?
if you see that Illuminator Virtuoso, this is where knowledge of the environment, I think, comes into play. You heard me. I've played this cube a lot.
Yeah.
I was screaming no. I was saying, no, don't go in that door. You got to make sure you kill that Illuminator Virtuoso. And I think we're not going to see that mistake again from Lincoln. I cannot imagine we're going to see any amount of disrespect for that Illuminator Virtuoso. Being mana efficient doesn't always matter.
Right.
Reed Duke's deck says your life total matters. That's what's going to matter in this matchup.
Crikey.
Well, that was a fast one.
That was a very fast, as expected, it was a very fast one.
While we are in between our matches, we are going to talk about our last sponsor for the night, which is, we've done Card Castle, Card Conduit, MTGO. Which one haven't we done?
Cubehead? We did Cubeheads.
We did Cubeheads.
I think we're good.
Did we do all 4 already?
Yeah.
Look, it's been a long day here at CubeCon. Em and I are on very little sleep. Check out Card Castle, Cubeheads, Card Conduit, and MTGO. I think we did all of those.
I
remember doing them all with you. I don't know how that happened.
Let's talk about how great CubeCon is.
CubeCon is fantastic.
It is fantastic.
We've had so much fun. Do you have a favorite moment from one of your own drafts this weekend?
I did do something kind of gross, something that I really enjoy doing. So I was playing this white aggro deck, and I had a Flicker Wisp, and I targeted my opponent's bounce land.
Oh, that's rude. To put a Flicker Wisp in a cube with bounce lands is a rude thing to do because that just might happen, and that's like a plow one.
I'm a degenerate. What can I say?
What can you say? You pretend like you like Thrabid Inspector. Nice, honest magic. But then when you get down to it, you just want to Flicker Wisp your opponent's bounce land. Let's go back down to the action and see game 2. I don't know if we've seen much sideboarding, but I know for sure we have seen a change in strategy from Lincoln Davidson here.
So we have a cut down here. We have a Fiery Temper, or Relevant.
Looks like a great opening hand
Ooh,
from
a
Lincoln
Duress
Davidson.
is nice here.
Duress into cut down, into Fiery Temper, into a Abbot of Carol Keep to refill later. There's that Virtuoso. There's Annex and Cymede. There's Heroic Reinforcements. You are forced to take either the Ancestral Blade or the Heroic Reinforcements here.
This is a pretty good hand from Reed. There's no turn 1 play, but it's still pretty strong.
It's not the fastest hand.
No.
And I think it's really relevant that Lincoln gets this information.
Yes.
That is the challenge, right? Lincoln has the additional hoop to jump through of how am I going to use my removal? And we see that stumbling on how to use your removal is going to cost you the whole game in this matchup.
And the reinforcement goes.
Taking that reinforcements, I mean, we already have a great 2-drop in Illuminator.
Yep.
We know we have an answer to that. You're already kind of stuck on 2 with Reed Duke. You're not going to be super mana efficient. Taking that top end there, I think, is really important. Lincoln's not going to have an answer to Heroic Reinforcements. Choosing to do the turn 2 Abbot of Carol Keep here, it's a tough play because you can play lands with Abbot of Carol Keep when it enters the battlefield. So
top deck and a Precinct Captain is a nice one.
Just another 2-drop for you.
Yep.
You typically want to wait with Abbot of Carol Keep until you have not played land for turn.
Yep.
So bare minimum, you can hit a land and play it off the top. But Lincoln making the assessment that
with
wants to get on board
as
early.
Well here.
Just going to be racing here. We're going to get in for 4 right now, which is not nothing.
Trigger on Bowmat Courier. Put a
Don't
card
forget that
underneath.
trigger. There we go.
Yep.
And Bomac Courier, a great card in this cube.
Yes.
One of the rare ways to really generate a ton of card advantage if it goes unanswered.
Absolutely.
If you can empty your hand. So we have Fiery Temper left. And that Fiery Temper, I believe, has Illuminator Virtuoso's name written across it in
Yeah.
big, bold, bright letters. But that's not the only problem you have. You now have to deal with Annex and Siamede as well. So all of a sudden, I mean, even in just the we got another removal spell. That's exactly what we needed, actually. It's exactly what we needed. Now, which one do you spend here? It looks like we're going to spend the Echoing Decay.
Yeah. Trigger on Abbot Keep. Number 4, another card underneath. This is what Lincoln needed to do last game.
And remember, the Fiery Temper has Madness, so we can sacrifice a Bomac Courier, discard that Fiery Temper into Madness, and essentially have an empty hand when we draw those cards off the Courier, which, if we see Illuminator Virtuoso here, we don't. So, this message that I think this sends,
We're going to
unless
play
we
it
see
now.
it followed up right now,
Yeah.
which we do, okay. I was going to say, if we don't see Virtuoso come down, you could imagine that Reduke might be waiting to have a chance to protect it.
Yes.
So, land, Bomac Courier,
You can just hard
attack.
cast this Temper if needed.
I wouldn't hard cast it. Land, attack with Bomac Courier, cast the Fiery Temper.
Take
It's
out
likely to
this.
get blocked by the 2/2. You're going to take out the Virtuoso for sure.
You have to.
Then you draw 3 cards.
That seems
And you
pretty
have
good.
4 mana available to you. Pretty darn good turn if you ask me. Looks like Lincoln agrees, and here we go into the red zone. Gonna let Reed go to blocks, which again, not sure I love this. I mean, is there any world where you're not... I guess Lincoln wants to take the chance that the Bomac Courier goes unblocked and you get to do this again another turn, but there's a 2/2 sitting right there.
Yeah.
I don't see how there's a world where this doesn't get blocked. I think I like actually sacrificing the Bomac Courier before damage, because you would have gotten into some damage here.
Reed just goes, wow.
My mistake. Update with untap with 3 mana, not 4. I forgot about actually paying for the madness cost on there. It's also going to give you that prowess trigger, but no damage because we did wait till blocks to do that.
So we have a Heartfire Immolator in hand.
Looks like maybe also the Legion Loyalist and a black card back there somewhere. Not Legion Loyalist. What is that
No,
one?
it is a Legion. It's a...
No, Battalion. Oh, and Nested Shambler is that last card.
Yeah.
That's the Iron Fire Fist Battalion something. Let me get to the actual card names here. Fire Fist Striker is the card. It has the ability Battalion. I got there eventually.
All the Gatekeeper Boros cards have Battalion.
There's a lot of words on these cards, and you know, some of them are names, some of them are keyword abilities. We got there eventually.
Yeah.
So choosing to just dump their hand on the board after that refill from the Bomac Courier, definitely a strong turn, but I gotta think we could have gotten a little more damage through there.
I think Lincoln got a little too excited there.
There is a Core Skyfisher bouncing the Ancestral Blade, making another token. Some of that value we talked about.
Gumming up this board.
Yeah, just making tokens.
However, Battalion can be hit if Lincoln decides to attack all these creatures. Swiss Spears and also a great top deck.
Yeah, Swiss Spear's a great top deck, though. Can we actually swing here? The Battalion trigger on Fire Fist Striker is going to make target creature unable to block.
So you target the Skyfisher here.
The thing is, if you do swing with that many creatures, you're throwing something away into that equipped soldier token.
Yeah.
And it looks like Lincoln has made the assessment that that is what we need to do. Not willing to throw away that Abbot of Carol Keep, but willing to sacrifice a Monastery Swift Spear or a Nested Shambler. A lot of mana, though, makes it hard to block this Monastery Swift Spear comfortably. We know that there's another creature in hand, so we're not going to be able to get that prowess trigger.
Yeah.
And in fact, Reed not willing to risk it.
Yeah.
Just going to eat the Nested Shambler, trade with the Fire Fist Striker, take 1.
Yep.
Not a lot of damage.
Go to 9.
And we're back at parity here. We do get a Squirrel token off the Nested Shambler. Nested Shambler, another card that is great with combat tricks here.
Yes. And here's Heartfire Immolator, I believe.
Yep, there's our Heartfire Immolator. We got 2 creatures of prowess, 3 creatures of prowess. We would love to draw
a removal
an
spell.
Expedite, maybe? An
Expedite
into a removal spell. That would be pretty sick. I got to start wondering, did Lincoln Davidson end up with that Arc Lightning that was going around?
Sure.
That is going to be
a
blowout in this situation, a card like that.
So Reed is in the tank.
Reed.
Which you don't see often, let's be honest.
Well, yeah, you don't see him visibly in the
Yeah.
tank often. I think he's pretty much lives in the tank, but here we're actually seeing it represented emotionally on his face, trying to figure out how to get out of this one. And also, it must be said, Reed Duke has done 3 back-to-back cube drafts
He
today
has.
under very high stakes on coverage for quite a few of them. He just this afternoon got out of a draft of a purely Jund cube
Yes.
that the organizers here intentionally stacked with some of the best players so somebody could try and actually pose a challenge, pose a threat to Reed Duke.
Yep.
That's a Phalanx leader. This is a card we saw absolutely turn around a game in round 1. And the follow-up, using all of our mana this turn.
Taking a lot of damage here. Or taking 1.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Launch the fleet, targeting everything.
Oh, boy.
That's going to be a +1/+1 counter from Phalanx Leader's ability. That's also going to be a 1/1 white soldier token for every creature that decides to attack, which is going to be the 2 that don't have summoning sickness. Here come 2 more creature tokens tapped and attacking. Reed saying, even though you're at 20, I'm still willing to make this race.
Yep.
Although, maybe not. Maybe rethinking things a little bit here.
Back in the tank once again.
Maybe a judge interaction. Oh, I guess maybe Lincoln is asking to have stopped Reed in response to that.
Okay.
Just sacrificing, yeah. So, again, this is the reaction we see, right? Choosing to sacrifice the Hardfire Immolator to do 2 damage to the Phalanx Leader.
Yes.
Stemming the bleeding a little bit. Now, we got pretty much all her value off our Phalanx Leader.
Right.
We just got 2 +1/+1 counters and 2 additional creature tokens in play, partially because of that. We're going to see a double block here. Double block.
Taking 5?
What? Yeah, I guess we just had to get that 3/3 off the board is Lincoln's estimation. Really interesting to me here that Lincoln is opting to block instead of try and race. I mean,
Yeah.
this is
Reed is only on 8.
Reed is on 8 life. We know Lincoln has burn spells in his deck. This really, I think, highlights this fundamental question in Magic, which is who's the beatdown, right?
Yes.
And for both players to be trying to be racing is one thing, and for the decision to be racing or not to change so much from turn to turn, I mean, you're a couple spells away from just ending this game.
Can't quite see what Lincoln drew there.
Is that... I believe that's Flowstone Infusion.
Okay.
That is basically a red copy of Lash of Malice. Actually predates Lash of Malice, I believe. Now I'm losing confidence in my... Now, Flowstone's Infusion going to
Target the Swift Spear.
target the Swift Spear. So that's going to be 1, 2,
3,
3,
4,
4, 5, 6, 7. 1 short of lethal.
Yeah.
Turning off Sunbaked Canyon for mana.
Turning off Battlefield Force.
Well, just
for
imagine
color
if we
mana.
hadn't blocked last turn.
Yeah,
Just
right.
imagine if we hadn't blocked. Just use our
Right.
life total as a resource. That would have been easy game.
No doubt Reed will cash in the Sunbaked Canyon for a card.
Yep, that land is doing nothing. Although we do have Prepare Fight in our deck,
Sure.
which is an opportunity to gain life. Though I gotta imagine you don't really need your 5th land anyway in this deck, especially when you already have red. And here we see it,
Here we
as you
go.
predicted, cashed in for another card. I love the design of the
I love the
Horizon
Horizons.
lands.
I really hope we see the rest of those in Modern Horizons 3.
I think you and a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
Oh,
Figure of Destiny.
if you're gonna top deck a one drop, you got 2 really good choices. One's Figure of Destiny, the other's Thraben Inspector.
Yeah.
This Figure of Destiny threatening to be a 4/4 next turn. Now, if you're Reed, I think you have to try and limit Lincoln's draw steps as much as possible.
Yes.
You got to know there's burn in that deck. You got to know that you are just 1 removal spell, 1 burn spell away from losing this game.
Yeah.
But with every attack, you also make more draws live
Yeah.
in terms of removal. Really difficult calculus here for Reed to try and survive at 1 life against a red aggressive deck. What does the clock even look like? So right now you have attacks for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's if you swing out, which you can't afford to do.
Yep.
We're hellbent. We're at 1. We need to keep at least 2 blockers, and that assumes our opponent doesn't draw a removal spell, doesn't draw.
Something like a Judith, maybe. That will
Judith
make
would also
blocks
end
make
this
really
game
awkward.
immediately. Sling Gang Lieutenant ends this game immediately if
Yes.
drawn.
Maybe Kari's had expertise as well.
Reed opting to
Attack.
go what is effectively all in here because we have left exactly as many blockers as our opponent has attackers. Reed making the assessment that I cannot afford to play around a removal spell.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I mean, I of course think it's true because Reed made the decision, but
yeah.
but I definitely agree with that
Oh,
decision.
there's a gutter
That's
snipe.
a gutter snipe. A
Not
little bit of a heartbreaker
not
because
quite what you need here, but
that's going to present another potentially lethal clock. But I don't think the problem here is lack of dangerous top decks. We have so many dangerous top decks already. Gutter Snipe turning on a couple more.
yeah.
Got to imagine that a lot of those cards that would trigger Gutter Snipe are already going to be burn spells in the first place.
Exactly, exactly.
So right now, it might just be another blocker.
Would love to see that lifelink spell from Reed.
Reed would love to see that too. Probably the pivotal turn in this game.
Yes.
Lincoln's good top decks have further expanded. We are one land drop away from fully leveling up that Figure of Destiny over the next 2 turns. And that
would be an achievement unlock.
That's a game ender. Not just an achievement unlocked, but that will end this game in a very short fashion because that is going to make an 8/8 flyer with first strike. And there are no flyers on the other side of the battlefield.
So we're equipping the Ancestral Blade onto Core Skyfisher.
Looks like going to put Lincoln in a position to be forced to block.
Yes.
You can't afford to leave this. You're going to take the damage from the Core Skyfisher no matter what.
Yeah.
You can't afford to leave this Figure of Destiny unblocked because that threat of activation is effectively lethal. So just going to hit you with the Abyss.
Yes.
This makes a lot of sense from Reed. It's consistent with what we did last turn. And that Figure of Destiny is really going to change the calculus here.
And depending on what's in Reed's hand, we could very well have a nice little combat trick.
You may have my 1/2. That's fine. I gotta say, I think I like blocking with the Abbot there, at least forcing Reed
Rugged
to
Prairie
level up
was
that thing.
draw.
Turns out the last card was Rugged Prairie. Doesn't matter either way. But we've got 4 mana. We're going to see that Figure of Destiny leveled up, and then Reed is going to untap with enough mana
It all,
turn that
all
into an
depends
8/8
on what
flyer.
Lincoln draw here.
It for
Lincoln-
sure comes down
Lincoln
to this
has a
draw
lot of
set.
life
Can we draw a
draws.
spell? It's Judith. It's
Oh, no.
Judith.
Oh, mate.
Yep. Any attacker dies. Can't
Yeah,
afford to
that is
block.
a hell
Can't
of a
afford
top
not to
deck.
block. We've seen so many games come down to the last wire
Sure.
here. Are we missing something, Emma? Is there another
No.
card in hand for Reed? What's
No.
happening here? Because this is going to kill both creatures.
Yep.
2 damage right at Reed's face. Reed checking
Yep.
his life total. Oh, yes, I'm dead. All right. You know,
Another
there's
game
nothing
3.
I love more than a game 3. This has been a thrill. This cube has really
Been really great.
putting on a show for us here at CubeCon. Nothing we could ask for more out of our last match of the day. Well, we saw the removal matter in that game, and we saw Lincoln use it much more conservatively than in game 1. It does make me wonder, is this matchup actually really good for Lincoln? Because that game 1 was kind of stolen.
It was kind of stolen, but also Lincoln had that turn 1 duress, so he knew what Reed had and knew which removal that Lincoln had in hand that he could apply to Reed's threats.
Right, what I'm wondering is if we had just Magma Jetted that Illuminated Virtuoso, did we just waltz to an easy win in game 1, too? Because it may be that this red-black deck is just simply favored against the white aggro deck with basically no removal.
Yep.
I mean, Judith is an enormous problem.
A massive threat.
You can't put Judith in a hole. That's the old saying. Judith don't fit in that portable hole. And when Judith comes down, so many of those pings are either going to kill Reed directly or start picking off creatures.
Yep.
It's going to be a giant problem. So there's definitely some key cards in Lincoln's deck. I do got to say, I think a little bit favored in this matchup.
Yes.
That does not mean a whole lot because we have a fantastic pilot across the table, an aggro deck that's going to be on the play in round 3, and just variance. We got to draw the good cards. We got to make sure that we deploy them at the right times. This is what Magic's all about.
Yes.
And we're not going to dilly-dally any longer. You don't want to hear us talking. You want to watch some Magic, some of the best Cube paper coverage you're ever going to find here at CubeCon in Madison, Wisconsin. Let's get some good opening 7s. I'm going to get that tattooed on me for coverage just so I can hold up my arm and say, let's get some good opening 7s. I just want to see some good Magic.
Yes. So it looks like from Lincoln's side, we have a Half-Life Immolator, we have a Scrapwork Mutt, a couple of lands, but we do have a turn 1 play from Reed
and a
here.
Heartfire in the back there. We do have 2 keeps on 7. Law Rune Enforcer is the opening play. Not the most intimidating 1-drop, but a 1-drop nonetheless. Also a Scrapwork Mutt in hand here.
It's one of my favorite commons in recent times, from recent
Such
sets.
a beautiful, elegant design.
Right.
Leading off here on Blink Moth
Moth
Nexus.
Nexus.
Blink Moth Nexus, the one that doesn't have Infect. Let me get the exact
The
name.
other one.
It is Blink Moth Nexus, the one with
Yeah.
that Infect.
Yeah.
Interesting choice. I mean, leading on the creature land
Yep.
would imply that you intend to maybe attack with it next turn.
There is a Judith in hand as well.
Are we going to see the Scrapwork Mutt come down
Yes,
right
we
now?
are, I
We
believe.
are looking to get rid of one of these extra lands, draw some more action, get rid of the swamp, maybe draw something good. That's a Grim Lavamancer.
That's a nice
That is
one.
a card that could absolutely take over this whole game. The only answer Reed has to Grim Lavamancer in his deck is
Is a
either
portable hole
or applying so much pressure that you are forced to block with
Yeah.
it or just can't keep up. But you can be trading off, chump blocking with things,
Yep.
turning all of your dead creatures into shocks, and just chewing apart Reed's board.
Yeah.
I see chat asking for confirmation that Reed Duke has not, in fact, lost a match. On the scoreboard, Reed has lost a match on account of skipping a match to go to an event, accepting a match loss. When Reed sits down at a table at CubeCon, though, this weekend, he has not lost a match.
Yeah.
Here we see the Launch the Fleet, launching your Bird and Law Rune Enforcer, getting into the red zone. An aggressive start here, for sure, out
Absolutely.
of Reed Duke. And this is the kind of start that could potentially stifle. What is that? That's a duress in Lincoln's hand
Yeah.
there. You'd much rather that duress be any kind of removal spell at this point.
Love that to be a cast down. Or not cast down,
Absolutely.
no cut down.
This is also the kind of game that Fledgling could solo.
Yes.
That can get out of range of Lincoln's removal in a turn or two if we're not careful, and it's going to have evasion.
Looks
That
like
we
we're
see
going
that.
to play this Judith.
Gotta imagine we see Judith coming down here.
Yeah.
The question is, do we see an attack? No.
No.
Lincoln says, I'm on the defensive here, and Judith is going to make it that much harder for you to attack.
And block as well with the extra power that
Yeah.
Judith brings.
So what we could see here is Law Rune Enforcer tapping down the Scrapwork Mutt.
Because it's now a free one.
Well, yeah, more so, that's the thing that Lincoln wants to block with. Lincoln
Yeah.
does not want to block with Judith.
Yeah.
Judith is a valuable engine once in play. If we spend our 2 mana on the Law Rune Enforcer, tap down the blockers that Lincoln wants to throw under the bus, then we offer some difficult trades for
Yeah.
more relevant creatures. Or just keep playing lands and flying over the top
Yeah.
with Fledgling, which
Fledgling does give some inevitability here, especially if Lincoln isn't able to draw any removal.
up to a 3/3.
So a Magma Jet range, that's for sure.
Oh, we are just going to Lightning Helix your Judith. No messing around here. That 1 damage is going to pick off a soldier token when Judith goes away.
Yep.
The life gain feels pretty relevant here.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's only 3 life, but we saw how close the margins were in the last game.
Yeah.
It came down to the last couple points of life on both sides of the board. Back into the red zone. We're coming at you for 4. Seems like a sensible trade here.
Indeed.
Scrapwork Mutt has that on Earth, so later on in the game, if you really need to get rid of a card and draw another one, we saw a couple Madness spells out of Lincoln,
Yep.
perhaps. And this Bowmat Courier looking pretty rough here.
Yep.
That
And
card,
the Grim Lava Monster's looking fine, but it needs a turn to stick around and not be blocking to start chipping away
yeah,
threats.
it's not going to stabilize
It's
this
a little
turn,
too slow.
and we already have the Fledgling out of Grim Lavamancer range,
Yeah.
unless it teams up with something else. That Heartfire might be on Fledgling duty,
Yes.
which is not what you want to see. You got to
No.
sacrifice. That's a 2-for-1ing yourself to get rid of that Fledgling, but better than losing a game of Magic. Here comes Grim Lavamancer from Lincoln Davidson.
a
Want to
great
get this
magic
thing?
card.
Want to get this thing untapped without summoning sickness as soon as you can.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
And here, sacrificing the land to Heartfire the Fierce Fledgling, just like we suspected.
Yeah. A lot of resources used here just to get rid of this fly.
Yeah. Now Lincoln actually in a pretty good spot. Reed Duke down to 2 cards in hand. Lincoln live Grim Lavamancer, which can chew through that Law Rune Enforcer, chew through the next small thing that Reed plays, and then that Bowmat Courier can start looking pretty good again.
Yes.
Once we start swinging in for combat here, and honestly, that Lavamancer can clear the way for Bowmat Courier for quite a while.
Indeed. Yeah. 2 damage is relevant given, how low toughness many of Reed's creatures are.
So what does Reed want here? There's really not a lot in all of... Oh,
Ooh,
my
Pop,
goodness
what a hell of a
gracious.
draw.
That is what Reed wants.
Yeah.
The one removal spell for the one threat. Here is a big combat trick. Borrowed Hostility on the Law Rune Enforcer, saying while you're tapped out, you have no blockers, I'm going to get good while the getting's good. Turn this into a Lava Spike.
It does. This Bowmat Courier is free to attack now as well.
Yep, of course, Reed does not know about the Bowmat Courier in Lincoln's hand. We are probably going to see that.
Oh, okay.
Duress taking heroic reinforcements.
That was a good pick.
Reed shaking his head in despair, taking probably one of the best cards in this spot and in this matchup.
Yeah.
Now, Bowmat Courier gets to eat, as the kids say.
Lincoln going down to 6. Surprised he hasn't unearthed this scrapwork mark yet.
We might see that right now. I think it depends on how much Lincoln wants to discard a card and draw a card. That 2 damage when Reed's at 23.
It's a sulfur spraying when you're valuable. On 6. I'd probably want to trade that away for a threat.
That's true, yeah. I don't really want to use my sulfur springs on 6. All right, so we are in top deck mode. It's Law Rune Enforcer versus Bowmat Courier. 22 life to 6.
Battle of the Ages at CUBECon. Oh,
and importantly, Law Rune Enforcer cannot tap Bowmat Courier, but it can block it.
Yes.
1-2. What we draw off the top, we drew Flowstone Infusion. Clear your blocker. Get in with Bowmat Courier again. This removal spell basically cantrips because that's going to allow your Bowmat Courier to draw you another card in the future. Reed.
On the back
looking a little dejected on the back foot. Still plenty of live draws. We did not see what Reed's draw was last turn. We didn't see a land, though, so presumably if it is a land, that's a Blood Chief's Thirst. Here comes the Scrapwork Mutt. Now we're going to see how Sulphur Springs hit the bin. Bowmat Courier in.
Did we draw and discard with Scrapwork Mutt?
Looks like we chose not to draw and discard with Scrapwork Mutt. Is that a May?
I believe it's a May.
It's discard and draw, not draw and discard.
Sure.
But yeah, maybe just choosing not to do that. Just turn that into 2 damage. Bowmat Courier plus removal is a really strong combo.
Yep.
Playing the Sulphur Springs at this point, getting a little cheeky, a little confident. 4 cards under this Bowmat Courier now. The worst thing Lincoln Davidson could do is tap out of red mana.
Here comes a Creator Maker.
We actually know that Reed Duke has no removal left in his deck for his Bowmat Courier, so Lincoln doesn't even have to worry about tapping out of red mana. But Lincoln doesn't know that. Lincoln should be very careful to keep that red mana up.
Yep.
Creator Maker, no targets, just a 2-2 right now. No targets really in Reed's deck. We have not seen the train. I wonder if the Untethered Express isn't even main decked in Reed's deck. That would be one of the only targets. Yeah, we talk so much about that killer train, but either Reed has never drawn it or Reed did not choose to main deck it. With this fierce of a curve, I would not be surprised to see Reed just saying, you know what,
agree.
4 mana, that card's going to be dead in my hand for too long. I just want to deploy all of my threats as fast as possible. Now, Reed needs a little bit of a miracle, just because those 4 cards under Bowmat Courier.
And the Blood Chief's First.
Yeah, the Blood Chief's First to remove the next threat, whatever it is. Reed could try and sandbag for a little bit, draw Illuminated Virtuoso, and draw Shelter. So you have a protection. I mean, you got to expect that between the cards in Lincoln's hand and the cards under that Bowmat Courier, you're going to have removal for the next couple threats that you have. Seemed like the answer to Grim Lavamancer was maybe a Shred of Light. 2 mana from Reed Duke.
What is he going to play?
Core Skyfisher.
This is going to be Bloodthirsted.
This is definitely going to be Bloodthirsted. We're going to pick up that Rugged Prairie, play it again. 1 mana, 2/3 flyer. Not bad in a vacuum, but not going to work so well in this board state.
Yeah.
And there's no reason, there's no reason not to use that Blood Chief's Thirst here in my mind, because again, it basically cantrips. Every time you can remove a threat to get in with Bowmat Courier, you're turning your removal spell into a cantrip. So even if in a vacuum you say, I'm not that worried about this Core Skyfisher, which actually, Lincoln should be at 6.
Yeah.
Even if your assessment as a player was, this card doesn't matter, the fact that it cantrips means that you should remove basically literally anything that Reed plays, you should just get it in and remove.
Yep.
Right now, the clock is very slow. We're getting in for 3. Reed has 4 or 5 turns to kind of draw out of this. So many more lands. Get rid of that Sunbaked Canyon. We don't want that.
And I believe Lincoln has a land in hand.
Swift Blade Vindicator.
Does have double strike.
Now that will need to be removed if we want to keep getting in. We drew...
Trying to see what the card
something
was.
red. Do I misunderstand? Oh, you can also just deal 2 damage to something. I always forget about that mode on Goblin Crater Maker. That's just a live shock. In addition to being able to destroy a colorless permanent, that's a pump spell of sorts, I believe. And again, you're going to draw all these cards back anyway. No reason. Yeah, that's the pump spell that Exalt. It also impulsive draws a card till end of your turn. We'll probably see that Firefist Battalion coming down. And Lincoln opting to very bravely tap out of red mana. Now, we know this is not going to backfire because Reed does not have removal, but this could have been a critical error.
Yeah.
You're essentially giving up all those cards under
Looks like
Bowmat
Reed is
Courier
flooding,
if you tap out of that red
unfortunately.
mana. A lot of lands on Reed Duke's side of the battlefield. You hate to see it.
Yeah. At what point do you just cash in this Bowmat Courier? It's got like 8 cards underneath it.
I will never cash this Bowmat Courier until I have to.
There's a Gutter Snipe.
There's no reason to cash that Bowmat Courier in while you are still
Here's
disadvantaged.
a Precinct Captain. That's not going to do a lot.
Yeah, just the combat trick we saw that exiled a card at the end of turn is Blazing Crescendo. Got him for 3 damage. Also gave an impulsive draw, which found us that Fire Fist Striker. First strike is oh no.
Here comes, and everything's going to trigger Battalion. This Precinct Captain won't block.
That is 1, 2, 3, 4.
I think
5,
that might be
6. It is not literally lethal, but
it's pretty close.
it is so close. And to think that those 6 cards under Bowmat Courier contain no burn, almost unthinkable at this point.
Exactly.
Is that Reed actually reminding Lincoln Davidson of,
Oh,
and
there we go.
get the handshake.
Handshake.
Reed Duke losing his first match on the whole weekend. We're going to be live in the booth here with Lincoln Davidson to talk about this amazing win in a second here. But wow, really some great magic. You know, you do hate to see a match decided, but it seems like a lot of flood at the end there for Reed Duke. White-red, not known for its ability to control its draws that much. Did seem to draw a few too many lands, but really incredible magic nonetheless. And we saw what that red-black deck with that removal is capable of.
What you mentioned at the start of the show.
Yes, and Bowmat Courier absolutely proving its worth there. I mean, we didn't even have to crack it, right?
No.
But that Bowmat Courier was like 2 treasure cruises at that point, basically.
It's Red Treasure Cruise. Let's go.
I mean, that's not that wrong.
Yeah.
We're going to have a quick break. Then we're going to be back in the booth with Lincoln Davidson to talk to the man who just gave Reed Duke his first L this whole weekend. Don't miss it.
Back soon.
Welcome back to CUBECon. It's the end of the day here, the end of the last main event day, and Emma and I are in the booth with Lincoln Davidson, who handed Reed Duke the first true L of the entire CUBECon weekend.
It's also my first trophy, so
Amazing.
big swing all around.
Congratulations. I got to ask the obvious question. How does it feel?
It feels good. I mean, I came to CUBECon last year, didn't trophy any events. Came here this year, did not trophy any events until now. So pretty wild to
if
do
you're
it
gonna
then.
if you're gonna trophy one, I think
Do it against
I
Reed?
think you chose a pretty good one to do. Now we saw you playing this red-black aggressive sacrifice deck. How'd you get into red-black at the draft?
Yeah, so my first pick was cut down. Second pick then was Abbot Carol Keep.
Okay.
And from then, I probably did not do the smart thing and stay open and whatever. I was just like hard forcing red removal the whole way through. Came around to pack 2, get past pick 8, Judith.
Ooh,
So,
okay.
open
That's
lane.
fine.
It's like the lane is open.
Open
Let's
lane.
just go all in. And then I find out after the draft, Reed's sitting to my left, so I've been passing left hand this whole time. I've been cutting him off red the whole time. So
Yeah, Reed barely playing any red in the deck. Basically just the red, white, gold cards.
Right,
and
right.
I think a Dragon's Rage Channeler and that one combat trick Borrowed Hostility. Beyond that, more or
But
less
the heroic
mono-white.
reinforcements was like the kind of the star thing I think there.
Yes, exactly. And that duress on that heroic reinforcement
Ooh,
may
yeah.
very
It
well
was
have won that
clutch.
entire
It
game.
was clutch, yeah.
These games were so close. You could look at any one sequence, any one decision, and say that could have been the thing that won the game. How does it feel to be attacking with a Bowmat Courier with 5, 6, 7 cards under it, knowing that you can crack it at any
It's an
time?
insurance policy,
Right.
right? It's like my house
Yeah.
burns down, I can crack that. I looked afterwards. The Fiery Temper and the deal 2 Sky
Magma
2
Jet.
Magma Jet.
Jet was underneath there. It was just insurance.
I got to ask one more question. This is a tough question,
Yeah.
though. I noticed you tapped out of red mana in the second to last turn of the game there.
I realized the moment I did it was a misplay.
So, fun fact, it actually wasn't because the only removal in all of Reed Duke's deck was that portable hole for Bomat Courier.
No way.
Not a single
Yeah.
other removal spell.
No
so
way.
we were talking in the booth how you were actually safe to tap out if you wanted, but it would be really risky to do so without knowing what Reed decks do.
The reason I did it is I misread the card, and I didn't realize it exiled until the end of the next turn. I thought it was just that turn.
Gotcha.
Oh, sure,
And
sure.
I just wasn't even thinking about it. I was like, oh, cast the card. And then as soon as I played it, I was like, that was wrong. That was wrong. So, but I managed to fade the portable hole that was already on the battlefield, so we're good there.
Really incredible
Yeah.
performance. It takes a lot to play under these hot lights and against some of the best players in the world, Pro Tour champion Reed Duke. Really great spell casting up there. You love to see it. Do you have any other highlights from the weekend? Favorite draft moments from other drafts?
So I will say my biggest highlight from the weekend was I had a cube in the main event, the Penrose cube. Go check it out on Cube Cobra, and just getting to talk to the players afterwards, hear from them what they were liking, what they weren't liking. I heard at least 6 different people tell me that a certain card was too strong, and then I come back later and they say, oh, it was too strong. Hogak was too strong. Goblin Barn was too strong, and then you say, oh, did that person 3-0 the pod? And they say, oh no, they went 2-1. Like, okay, so Hogak's not too strong for the cube.
Yeah,
So,
this event is really one of a kind for Cube curators.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have the system that is collecting all the deck pools, all the records, allowing us to see.
get all that data afterwards. I'm so excited to come
I
back
am
and see.
so excited too.
Get some real tuning. You get feedback from your players at home, but it's not, no one's ever kind of consistently giving you all the pictures, giving you all the feedback there. So getting all that kind of hard data is going to be really, really good.
Yeah, fantastic. So, are you in top 64? Do you know?
I don't actually know. I know it was borderline.
You were on
if
the
I
bubble,
Could,
but
if I could trophy. I honestly, and I haven't looked yet. So
Yeah, so you're going to find out. You're on the bubble. You just did everything you needed to do to
Yeah.
make top 64 and
Yeah.
give yourself a chance tomorrow. Tomorrow, we will be covering top 64 starting first thing in the morning here Central Time. Tune in, 9:30 a.m. We're going to be covering the draft of Emma Partlow's Peasant Cube.
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's gonna be great.
That is one of 8 drafts that will be running simultaneously, featuring our top 64 players. The winner of each of those pods is going to go on to the top 8, and that's going to be the Magic Online Vintage Cube starting tomorrow afternoon Central Time, probably around 1 o'clock. Depends how things go. We got to actually play out the games in top 64 because we can't have any draws. So that'll come on tomorrow afternoon. That's going to be something you don't want to miss. And then we're going to crown a CubeCon champion for this year, and that person will have just won 6 back-to-back matches in 2 separate cubes against, I think, the fiercest competition in terms of cube draft you could find anywhere in the world.
100%.
Yeah.
This room is stacked right now. Reed Duke's going to be there. Lincoln Davidson might be there if we make it in top 64.
Probably not, but fingers crossed.
Whether you're there or not, I think you have a nice highlight for the weekend to hang your hat on here with your great performance on this stream. Anything else, Emma?
No, I've got nothing. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for tuning in. Like I said, tune back in tomorrow, 9 a.m. Central. That's one of the weird time zones. So if you're East Coast, West Coast, do the math, figure it out. We're going to be here in Madison, Wisconsin, playing more Paper Cube, some of the highest stakes, most competitive Paper Cube play you could ever going to find. Can't wait to see you there.
Yeah.
This has
we
been
got-
Andy Mangold, Emma Partlow from the booth, and Lincoln Davidson, your champion from the Regular Cube this evening. Thanks for tuning in.